Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. The cover photo is not mine. Credit goes to the owner. FGO, 16. Thank you for the kind offer, goddess, but I must decline. I already belong to a familia and have no intention of switching, Ryu replied calmly. Is that so? What a pity. Loki squinted her eyes but didn't press further. She was not like that obsessive Freya who would stop at nothing to snatch people away. Loki had her pride. Since he ignored her goodwill, Loki refrained from saying anything else. Joining the Loki familia wasn't a good choice for Ryu. Ryu wasn't an ordinary adventurer. He had too many secrets, making it almost impossible for him to join any familia. Maintaining the status quo was the best option for him. If not for some unexpected changes, he wouldn't even want to interact with the Loki familia. After all, with so many strong individuals in the Loki familia, his secrets would be easily exposed. Unfortunately, not everyone thought the same. The werewolf bat already had a grudge against Ryu because of Ice. Now that Ryu had refused Loki's invitation, and Ice's eyes clearly showed some disappointment and regret, the fire of jealousy in Bet's heart flared up like fuel had been poured on it. Coupled with the effects of alcohol, Bet immediately stood up with a hostile expression and walked towards Ryu. Hey, you bastard, being invited to join the Loki familia is an honor. You're just a cook who makes tasty food. Don't be so shameless, you idiot. Hearing this, the members of the Loki familia were stunned. The main members at the same table as Bet also realized something was wrong and began to dissuade him. Bet, you're drunk. Idiot Bet, come back. Ice's eyes clearly showed displeasure. The three leaders nearby also had serious expressions, but perhaps out of a desire to test the situation, they didn't stop Bet's actions. As the person involved, Ryu naturally looked cold, put the dining knife back in place, and picked up a towel to wipe his hands. However, Ryu's silence seemed to make Bet mistake it for weakness. Don't think that just because you can cook and have won over my princess, you can dream of being with her. In this world, strength is what matters. Only strong males like me are worthy of standing by her side. Isn't that right, Ice? If you had to choose, you'd pick me over this cook, right? Bet shouted as he walked up to Ryu and poked his chest with his finger. The stupid wolf didn't notice that his beloved's eyes had shifted from displeasure to disgust. Feeling both angry and amused, Ryu couldn't help but find it funny. This stupid wolf seemed to be the epitome of a single dog, not knowing what women liked or disliked, only knowing how to show off his muscles and belittle other males in a childish attempt to attract female attention. He was destined to be single for life. Amusing as it was, Ryu was no saint who wouldn't retaliate. He swiftly grabbed Bet's outstretched wrist with one hand and his shoulder with the other. A flash of magical energy surged through his arm, dramatically increasing his strength. Bastard, let go of me. Bet tried to resist, but Ryu's grip was like iron clamps, rendering him immobile. Only then did Ryu leisurely say, I'm just a cook, but cooking a stupid dog into roast dog meat is not a problem for me. With that, Ryu ignored Bet's curses, forcefully pushed him back to his seat, and pressed him back into the chair. Then, facing Bet's glare, Ryu calmly said, you can be jealous if you want, but let me remind you, this is a tavern. If you're in heat and want to mate, go find somewhere else. Bet used all his strength to try to break free, causing the chair beneath him to creak as if it might snap, but he was still firmly held in place by Ryu, unable to move. Enough, Bet, aren't you embarrassed enough? Finn couldn't stand it any longer and finally spoke up. The leader's authority finally made Bet quiet down, but his eyes were still fixed on Ryu, ready to fight him at any moment. Seeing that Bet had stopped struggling, Ryu released his grip. Remember this, one day, I'll make you pay, Bet threatened viciously. Is that so? But you already look quite impressive now, Ryu replied calmly. Damn you. Bet shouted in anger, ready to leap up again. Tiona, this stupid wolf has had too much to drink. Tie him up to sober him up. Reveria angrily slammed the table. Sorry, Bet, it's the deputy leader's orders. Only the leader can order me. Aw, forget it. The Amazon sisters immediately grabbed Bet from both sides and hoisted him up to the ceiling. And so, the farce seemed to come to an end. The members of the Loki familia continued drinking and laughing as if nothing had happened, with the only difference being a werewolf tied up and swinging from the ceiling with his mouth gagged. Shaking his head, Ryu returned to the bar. He didn't notice that the three top members exchanged glances, their expressions serious as they watched his back. After a while, the banquet ended, and the members of the Loki familia left in pairs and groups, supporting each other. Out of courtesy, Ryu and the female staff stood at the door, watching them leave. At this moment, Ryu suddenly felt a burning gaze fixed on his back. Stare. The gaze was so blatant it was impossible to ignore. Ryu showed a helpless smile. How could he not notice such an obvious look? Sword Princess, aren't you going back with them? Ryu turned to look at the beautiful blonde girl behind him. Ice nodded, then shook her head. What exactly do you want? Ice didn't speak, just stared at him intently. Ryu sighed, saying, do you want to see the status on my back? Ice's golden eyes brightened, and she nodded eagerly, looking incredibly cute. However, matters concerning his life were not something he could be swayed by. I refused. Without even thinking, Ryu immediately refused. A look of slight displeasure appeared on Ice's face. After a moment of hesitation, she softly said, then, I'll let you see mine. She even started to turn around. Ryu was instantly frustrated. This girl was too straightforward. This was like a child saying, I'll show you my naked body, and then you show me yours. Even so, it's still not okay. Hearing Ryu's firm refusal, Ice's cheeks puffed up. Just go back, Ryu gently pushed her shoulder forward. Your name. Just call me Gudao. Ice Wallenstein, that's my name. Ice glanced back at him with a look of lingering affection, then reluctantly followed the Loki familia team, turning back every few steps. Having finally sent off this stubborn girl, another person was unhappy. Our chef is popular with the girls, Seer said, her shadow looming ominously. Exactly. Hestia chimed in, adding fuel to the fire. Ryu immediately sighed and rubbed his forehead. Should I say, what bad luck. That guy is amazing. The Amazon sister Tiona patted her bloated belly. Well, his cooking is indeed good, but don't expect that alone to win me over. My heart will always belong to the captain, her sister Tione said with feigned indifference, though her equally bloated belly betrayed her true feelings. What's wrong, Lefia? Did you eat something bad? Tiona turned to the gloomy-faced elf girl. Unexpectedly, her question seemed to flip a switch, and the elf girl burst into tears. Boo-hoo Tilda, Miss Ice is going to be taken away. The Amazon sisters began to sweat. Lefia continued, ignoring them. When I left, I saw Miss Ice flirting with that guy. The worst part is, even I was captivated by his cooking. A mischievous smile appeared on Tiona's face. She chuckled and said, isn't that great? You can marry him together with Ice, and then you'll get to eat delicious food every day and be with Ice. Hey, Tiona. Tione, annoyed by her sister's loose tongue, scolded her. All three together Tilda. The elf girl, her imagination running wild, began to fantasize. Fortunately, Lefia's thoughts were pure, and she only imagined scenes of the three of them feeding each other. That doesn't sound so bad Tilda hee Tilda. Drool began to drip from the love-struck Lefia's mouth. This is all your fault, Tiona. Lefia is lost in her fantasies again. Tione shook Lefia while scolding Tiona, who pretended to be innocent. How is this my fault, sister? Tiona protested immediately. Thus, the large Loki familia castle rang with the laughter and playful shouts of the girls. In the leader's office at the top of the castle, Reveria watched the girls playing in the courtyard with a slight frown. What a troublesome time, Finn said, standing with his hands behind his back in front of a goddess portrait, sounding like an old man reminiscing. At this moment, not only were the three top members gathered in the leader's office, but even the usually hands-off goddess Loki was present. Every time I see those outstanding young people, I feel a sense of nostalgia, realizing that I'm truly getting old. Gareth, the stoutest shield of the Loki familia, sat on the sofa with a cup of wine, making an elderly person lament. Oh my, Gareth, are you thinking of retiring? Loki teased. That won't do. The young ones in the familia haven't grown up yet. They still need Gareth's care, Finn countered with a smile. Haha, I have no plans to retire now. Let this old body of mine continue to shine within the familia. The dwarf laughed heartily. After some idle chatter, Finn sat behind his desk, adopting a classic commander pose. What do you all think? Although the increase wasn't huge, I could feel a clear enhancement in attributes, Gareth said seriously. And you, Reveria? Though it's hard to believe, even the magic attribute was enhanced, the elf mage answered from her seat on the sofa. I told you, that man's cooking skills have reached a divine level. That deliciousness is truly unforgettable, Loki interjected. It's a pity that the guy rejected my invitation. Damn it, such an outstanding talent was already recruited, Loki said, still somewhat resentful. What are you thinking? Reveria asked, seeing Finn deep in thought. I'm considering asking him to join us on the next expedition. Finn's words brought a sudden silence to the room. The current situation was entirely orchestrated by Ryu. Once Ryu used ingredients from the dungeon that contained magic, such as monster meat or plants imbued with magical power, and his cooking reached a certain level of completion, it would produce various miraculous effects. These effects included enhancing attributes, healing injuries, and dispelling negative statuses. This all started a few days ago when Ryu's magic attribute reached 20 points, and a new skill called Item Creation appeared in his skill list. According to the system, Ryu could now create items imbued with magic. In the Fate series, this skill is a common ability for the caster class, but its effects vary from person to person. For example, the witch Medea can create magical potions and scrolls from the Age of Gods, while Kojiro Sasaki can make cigars in ancient times. However, for Ryu, it seemed to mutate into the ability to infuse delicious food made from magical ingredients with magical power. If it was just that, it wouldn't be a big deal. The key point was that these magical foods did not develop resistance like potions and their effects could stack infinitely, as long as one could keep eating them. This was precisely Ryu's bargaining chip to attract the Loki familia. After all, as Bat had said, if he were just a good cook, the Loki familia, the largest faction in Orario, wouldn't have paid him any attention. The reason he attracted the Loki familia was obvious to anyone who has played RPG games, the importance of buffing up before fighting a boss. Just as his basic attributes all broke past 20 points, the system provided him with a special piece of information. Ding. Discovered the source of this world's magical corruption. Closing square bracket. Please head to the 59th floor of the dungeon and kill the fallen fairy's avatar. Time, within 1 month. Closing square bracket. Despite easily suppressing the level 5 werewolf bat by cleverly using a magic skill, Ryu's attributes were roughly equivalent to those of a level 3 adventurer. Even though his combat capability was quite strong, he was certainly no match for the demi-spirit. That was a terrifying boss that nearly wiped out the high-ranking members of the Loki familia in the original story. In the original story, the Loki familia dispatched 4 level 6 adventurers, 3 level 5 adventurers, an elf mage equivalent to level 4 or 5, and 2 minor characters. They only managed to defeat the enemy by leveraging a berserk state. Even with a double experience buff, Ryu couldn't possibly reach level 5 in just 1 month to fight the demi-spirit. That would be like serving himself up on a platter. Unable to join the Loki familia directly and needing to team up with them, Ryu had to use this roundabout strategy to get them to invite him. The bait was set, and the Loki familia had taken it. Are you serious? Reveria asked with a stern expression. Of course, it's better to have someone like him as a friend rather than an enemy. Moreover, Finn paused, the attribute enhancements from his cooking haven't faded yet, which shows how beneficial his cooking is for expeditions. But I think we should consider this carefully, Reveria expressed a differing opinion. Reveria's objection took Finn by surprise. Reveria, what are you thinking? Finn, do you remember the information we received a month ago before we set out on our expedition? Reveria brought up a seemingly unrelated topic. You mean? Finn began to ponder. About the underground arena that the Ishtar familia built. Reveria showed evident disgust as she spoke. To elves, who loved nature and had a strong sense of cleanliness, the bloodthirsty and brutal nature of arenas was utterly repulsive. Conversely, such places were favorites for beastmen, Amazons, and dwarves. Are you talking about the arena that was destroyed overnight by the Freya familia? Too bad, I was planning to sneak a look, Gareth said, showing a hint of regret. You're such a brute. Is your brain only filled with these things? Reveria's displeasure was evident after Gareth's comment. TCH tilde annoying elf, Gareth retorted, equally unyielding. All right, let's get back to business. Reveria, please continue. Finn hastily played mediator, used to manage the tensions between the dwarf and the elf. Reveria shot a cold glare at Gareth before continuing. I heard that during the festival, there was a gladiator who had never received a blessing but managed to slay a mutant minotaur. Could it be a mistake? Maybe it was a rampaging monster, and one of the Amazons from the Ishtar familia stepped in to kill it, Finn said, unconsciously biting his thumb. No, even though it was an underground arena, there were at least 1,000 spectators. People saw that young man kill it with their own eyes, and he practically did it single-handedly. If this is true, then that guy must have the bloodline of a hero, or perhaps even. Loki chimed in, leaving her sentence unfinished. Everyone present understood. Only bloodline above that of a hero would be that of the gods. While this conclusion was shocking, it wasn't entirely unbelievable. Many ancient heroes had heroic bloodlines. Now that gods openly descended to the mortal world, some indulged in pleasures and formed relationships with mortals. Leaving behind a few offspring was not unusual. Taking in such a child would certainly boost Ishtar, that madam of a brothel, Loki remarked disdainfully. After all, anyone with a normal sense of morality would naturally despise someone who treated their familia members as prostitutes. The problem lies here. That night, the Freya familia destroyed that underground arena and it seems the young man escaped. Reveria, what are you implying? Finn's eyes grew serious. The elven mage wouldn't bring up unrelated matters without reason. I suspect that young man is the chef at the Hostess of Fertility. Reveria's words were astonishing, plunging the office into silence, with only the sound of breathing audible. Support me at patreon.com/absolutecode. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Ri. Zero no game no life Fate series. The cover photo is not mine. Credit goes to the owner. FGO, 17. This news is truly surprising. Is it your speculation? Finn instinctively sat up straight. Yes, because that chef also appeared around that time, and you all saw it. He was able to overpower Bet. Reveria's words immediately made their expression serious. Bet was an LV5 adventurer, and he specialized in strength. In Orario, the strength of adventurers formed a pyramid structure. There were very few who could overpower Bet in terms of strength, and Ryu was clearly not among them. The most crucial point is that I noticed traces of magical disguise on him. His appearance is likely disguised by a magic item. Reveria added another key point, which was the most critical piece of evidence. Unknown origins and strong abilities, and using an item to disguise his appearance. Everyone's faces changed instantly. Loki, is there any way for an ordinary person to reach a level of LV5? Finn turned to Loki, who was acting indifferent. There are many ways, Loki replied nonchalantly. For a moment, the three leaders even found their breathing slightly more rapid. But 99% of those methods require divine assistance, and they all have significant side effects, Loki said as if to tease them, speaking only halfway. Indeed, shortcuts to power are tempting, even for me, Finn said with a self-mocking smile. There's no need to feel ashamed. Without the ambition to keep getting stronger, we wouldn't be where we are today, Reveria consoled. For once, I agree with Reveria, Gareth nodded with a smile. Although Loki squinted her eyes, a satisfied smile was evident on her face. As expected from the heroes chosen by me, even without Freya's cheating eyes, they are just as impressive. After a moment of self-indulgence, Loki continued, most of those methods can be dismissed. Mortal bodies have limited capacity and can't handle sudden increases in power. Forcing it would result in a boom, an explosion. That's why the gods found that blessings are the safest way, gradually unlocking mortals' potential while expanding their capacity. The three leaders nodded at this explanation. It made sense. If you want something, you have to give up something. If you want to rise quickly, you have to pay the price. But there is one type of person who transcends common sense. The three leaders, who had just relaxed, were on edge again. And that would be those you call heroes. Since they are heroes, their capacity is naturally far greater than ordinary people. Rapidly becoming stronger in a short time is not impossible. Loki's words made the three leaders fall into deep thought. Loki, are you suggesting that this young man might not be a descendant of a hero, but is a hero himself? I didn't say that. This is all your speculation, Loki said with a mischievous smile. Finn resisted the urge to punch and said to Reveria, in any case, investigate his background, especially when he appeared at Hostess of Fertility. Before Finn could finish, Loki suddenly said, aren't you guys overthinking this, acting like old people? It's not about that. As leaders, we must be responsible for the whole familia. Reveria immediately retorted. Since he has shown his ability, he has no ill intentions. As for unknown backgrounds, who doesn't have a few secrets? Loki said with a dismissive expression. Reveria was momentarily speechless. Loki does have a point. We might be overly cautious, Finn suddenly laughed. This expedition is extremely important. The 59th floor, this is an area even the Zeus and Hera familias never reached. I've decided to invite that young man to join this expedition. I'll take full responsibility for any consequences. Finn stood up abruptly. But, Reveria was about to say something. Finn immediately waved his hand to stop Reveria. Reveria, I know what you're going to say, but you also need to trust our familia's companions. Those young people have grown up completely. Even if he has ill intentions, we are fully capable of dealing with it. Because we are the strongest familia in all of Orario, the Loki familia. A powerful leader's charisma surged from that small figure. Indeed, choosing you as the captain was the right decision, Loki praised. Such a small body carries such great spirit. It's never boring following you, Finn, Gareth laughed heartily. If anything goes wrong, I won't take responsibility. With two of the three leaders and the familia's goddess agreeing, Reveria naturally had no grounds for opposition. Also, until we can fully trust him, I'll have Ice keep an eye on him. Ice, with her, it will indeed be reliable. Then it's settled. Captain Finn made the decision firmly. Ryu was naturally unaware that his plan had succeeded, but at the same time, the Loki familia had begun to suspect his identity. He had more important matters to attend to now. What is this? Ryu looked at the book in Mamma Mia's hand. The book seemed quite old and thick, with pages made of high-quality parchment. The title boldly read, Modern Magic Even Goblins Can Learn. No way. Seeing that humorous and familiar title, Ryu broke out in a cold sweat. This is a gift, from the goddess herself. Here, take it, Mia said grumpily as she shoved the book into his hands. Tilda, please thank Goddess Freya for me. Ryu accepted the book with both hands. Ryu's magic attribute had just risen to 20, and Goddess Freya had sent this magic book that could make someone learn magic instantly. The timing was too perfect. Could that goddess be watching his every move from Babel Tower every day? Recalling the original work and the obsessive behavior of this goddess, Ryu felt conflicted. If it were some pervert doing this, he would find a way to destroy them. But if it were a peerless beauty. Indeed, in this world, looks are justice. Moreover, the value of such a magic book was nearly immeasurable. Buying it could bankrupt a small familia. Now I owe another huge favor. The more I owe to beauties, the more sinful a man I become. Ryu mocked himself inwardly. As he held the magic book and flipped through it, Ryu did not notice Mia looking at him with a complex expression, occasionally glancing at Seer in the distance. Back in his dormitory, Ryu quickly tidied up his things, then climbed into bed, finding a comfortable position to open the magic book. According to the original work, one would fall into a deep sleep after reading this book. Ryu didn't want to wake up in the morning to find himself forced into some kind of performance art. Just as Ryu was feeling delighted and about to touch the book's cover, without even opening it, a delicate hand swiftly snatched the magic book away. Ryu was furious. He looked up to see who dared to snatch food from a tiger's mouth, only to find Scathach looking at him with an amused expression, the magic book flipping in her hands. Seeing Ryu look over, Scathach raised an eyebrow. Do you have a problem? Ryu instantly understood the meaning in his Shisho's eyes. If he dared to say yes, he would immediately receive a severe beating under the guise of teaching. Ryu decisively shook his head, giving in. Scathach nodded in satisfaction. Reading this fast-track magic book won't do you any good. From today, I'll teach you the original runes. Ryu immediately tossed the priceless fast-track magic book to the back of his mind. The original runes, according to Norse mythology, was an ancient universal language obtained by the god King Odin at the cost of one of his eyes. Once he fully mastered these nearly omnipotent runes, Ryu could instantly transition into a super mage, comparable to a mage from the Age of Gods, akin to the 5 great magics in the Type Moon universe. What you can't have is always the best. Just as every mage has a heart for close combat, every close combat profession dreams of becoming a mage. Mages are so cool. With a wave of their hand, enemies turn to dust. They're so powerful that when they act, it's on a large scale. Moreover, what Scathach is teaching him is the original runes, which is like transitioning into a hidden class among mages, the Archmage. Learn it. Not learning it would be unthinkable. Shisho, I want to learn. Ryu shouted without any hesitation, fearing that Scathach might change her mind. Shisho? Ryu just realized that he was so excited that he accidentally called Scathach by her affectionate nickname. But that didn't faze Ryo. He said earnestly, since you're teaching me the original runes now, you're my Shisho. Calling you Shisho isn't wrong. Although Ryu's reasoning was logical and convincing, Scathach's top-tier warrior intuition sensed something amiss. However, the queen of the land of shadows never cared about such things. Shisho it is, then. After all, it's just a title. Then, Shisho, let's begin. Ryu immediately assumed a proper seated posture. He was fully expecting Scathach to either pull out a room full of magic books for him to memorize, construct a massive magical illusion for self-study, or even transport him to the outer side of the world to comprehend directly from the root. But to his surprise, Scathach simply extended a jade-like finger and pressed it against his forehead. So simple, so straightforward. He then lost consciousness. Ryu had a dream. In his dream, he seemed to see the world in its primordial state, shrouded in mist. He saw the progenitor of the frost giants, born between ice and fire, covering the sky. He saw the gods battling this giant, using its defeated body to shape the world. He saw the world tree growing and supporting the world. He saw Odin losing his right eye to drink from the well of wisdom. He saw Odin hanging upside down from the world tree for 9 days and nights to obtain the primordial world language. And finally, he saw Ragnarok. Then Ryu understood. Seeing him fall asleep, Scathach laid him on the bed, picked up the magic book, and leapt out of the window. Even under the night sky, Orario was still brightly lit, looking like a sleepless city from above. Located in the center of the city, atop the tall Babel Tower, was the base of one of Orario's strongest familias, the Freya familia. The lady of the familia, Goddess Freya, was wearing a highly revealing dress, holding a glass of red wine, savoring it while admiring the labyrinthine city under the night sky. Behind her, Orario's ultimate weapon, the only level 7 adventurer Otter, stood like an iron statue, motionless in his duty to protect her. Freya swirled her wine glass, seeming somewhat absent-minded, her gaze frequently sweeping over a certain direction, her eyes filled with a mix of anticipation and regret. It's useless to keep looking. I've already set up a bounded field in his room. A cold voice suddenly echoed in the room. Freya was startled, and Otter instantly sprang into action, his calloused hand gripping the hilt of his massive sword behind him. However, as fast as he was, the intruder was faster. A silver flash streaked by, and Otter's massive figure was pinned to the wall as if struck by a dragon, rendered completely powerless. The object pinning him was nothing more than an ordinary silver candlestick. It's you. Freya barely had time to react before a purple-black silhouette appeared before her, seemingly teleporting. It was Scathach. Scathach reached out with one hand, gripping Freya's slender neck, lifting her effortlessly with a single hand. Seeing his beloved goddess captured, Otter struggled frantically and shouted, "Help!" His voice was so loud that the glass windows shook. However, it was as if the room was isolated from the world. No matter how much Otter shouted, no one came to check. Stop wasting your strength. I've already set a bounded field around this room, the Queen of the Land of Shadows said coldly. Let her go. Otter tried to break free from the grip of the silver candlestick, but what he could usually crush with one hand now felt as unbreakable as orichalcum. Scathach ignored him and turned her sharp gaze to Freya in her grip. What do you want? Freya's face turned red as an unfamiliar sense of suffocation surged through her. Smack. The priceless magic book was thrown onto the carpet like trash. I warned you not to do anything unnecessary, Scathach said coldly. With a slight wave of her hand, a blood-red magic spear appeared in her grip. Scathach pointed the spear's tip at Freya's heaving chest and slowly, yet steadily, pushed it forward. Wait. Begging for mercy? The iron-blooded Queen of the Land of Shadows showed a rare, mocking smile. I'm just unwilling. We have the same goal, to help that child grow quickly, so why exclude me? Scathach's expression turned slightly contemptuous, clearly implying, because we have the strength. What do you have, that piece of flesh between your legs? But I have resources. You should know that some things can't be achieved by strength alone. The spear's tip halted against Freya's chest. You don't seem afraid of death? Seeing the stubbornness and determination in Freya's eyes, Scathach couldn't help but ask. Afraid, of course, I'm afraid, but if I can't get what I want, I might as well be dead. Freya's madness moved even the iron-blooded Queen of the Land of Shadows. After a moment's contemplation, Scathach slowly placed Freya back in her seat. I'm starting to like you a bit. Scathach's lips curled slightly as if she were smiling. Cough. Well, that is an honor, Freya said with a bitter smile. Stop meddling in his growth. Just keep arranging suitable opponents for him. As Scathach said this, she made a few gestures in the air. Boom. A portal the size of a round plate opened in the void, exuding an aura of curses and death. You should know, sometimes death is not the end but the beginning of suffering. Feeling the curses and resentment of countless dead gods emanating from the portal, Freya's face turned pale. Snap. With a snap of her fingers, Scathach made the terrifying portal disappear. Without another word, she vanished as quietly as she had come. As soon as Scathach disappeared, Otter immediately noticed the candlestick lost its power. Despite his injuries, he pulled it out and knelt on one knee by Freya's throne. I've been acknowledged. Freya murmured to herself. Only then did she realize her clothes were soaked with cold sweat. Seeing Otter standing silently beside her, his face full of guilt, Freya sighed and gently stroked his chin with her slender hand. Stand up, Otter. You must understand, there exist opponents in this world that even gods cannot defeat. Ryu naturally had no idea that the iron-blooded queen had gone to severely threaten the infatuated goddess for his sake. Ding. You have mastered primordial rune E level. Closing square bracket. Ryu slept soundly through the night, and when he awoke, the system dutifully delivered a message. Ryu's mood brightened immediately. That sleep was worth it. After checking the detailed information, he began to ponder. The system was clear. Although he had mastered the primordial rune, the extent of its power depended on his exploration. Simply put, his proficiency was not yet sufficient. Since the primordial rune was one of the original world scripts, its maximum power could only be unleashed when combined. A single primordial rune was only marginally stronger than a modern rune, but combining two would double the power. Each additional character would double the power again, and naturally, the complexity and mana consumption would also double. Moreover, the effects he could achieve depended entirely on his experimentation and combinations. Primordial rune was a highly flexible and versatile magic system. Indeed, to Ryu, it was a system. It felt like learning a new skill in a game. Naturally, he wanted to test its power. Ryu quickly got up and headed to the base of the Tower of Babel. From a distance, he saw Lily already waiting there with a large backpack. Gudao-sama seems particularly happy today. Perhaps Ryu's mood was too obvious, even Lily noticed. Do I? Ryu smiled and, almost involuntarily, reached out to pat Lily's little head, making her pout playfully. By the way, Gudao-sama, these are the Valis from yesterday's Magic Stone exchange, a total of 80,000 Valis. Lily's eyes flickered slightly as she pulled out two equally sized pouches from her bosom. Is that so? You've worked hard, you can keep half of it. Ryu's expression didn't change. He directly took one of the pouches filled with gold coins and put it into his bosom. Seeing Ryu's lack of suspicion, Lily secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't notice the fleeting coldness in Ryu's eyes. Her little tricks might fool someone as naive as Belle. Ryu didn't care about the gold coins but found them useful for testing character. Let's go, Ryu said, leading Lily toward the dungeon without making a scene. They went straight down to the 7th floor. Facing the man-eating ant that had just emerged from the wall, Ryu didn't approach as usual. To Lily's astonishment, Ryu raised his hand and drew a symbol resembling an uppercase F in the air. A blue magical glow flickered in the air like a malfunctioning light bulb, struggling briefly before dissipating. TCH tilde failed, huh. It was expected. Even with Scathach's wisdom of Dunscape skills, this was his first practical application. Success on the first try would be a miracle, not a cheat. Gudao-sama. Seeing the man-eating ant charging towards them with its 6 long legs, and Ryu seemingly drawing in the air like a madman, Lily shouted nervously. Don't rush. Ryu continued drawing symbols, ignoring her. After failing 4 or 5 times in a row, he still hadn't succeeded, and the ant was now right in front of him. Ryu's eyebrows twitched with impatience. He kicked the ant 10 meters away and resumed his previous actions. Thus, a comical scene unfolded before Lily. The adventurer Sama she resented so much didn't draw his weapon to kill the monster. Instead, he kept drawing symbols in the air as if drawing circles could kill the creature. When the monster got close, he kicked it back and repeated the process. Support me at patreon.com/absolutecode. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO 18. Just as Lily was marveling at Ryu's increasingly efficient monster slaying speed, 3 figures appeared in the distance, catching her eye. The group was led by Kanu, her old comrade. Kanu subtly made a gesture, and Lily's pupils contracted slightly. She nodded imperceptibly in response. With a smile, Lily bid farewell to Ryu. Gudao-sama, my companions from the Familia have come to pick me up. Please allow me to leave first. Ryu patted Lily's small head naturally. Go ahead. Yes, then, Gudao-sama, see you tomorrow. Lily said with a cheerful, innocent smile. One would never guess that this child's hands were stained with quite a bit of blood. Just as Lily turned around and only took a few steps, Ryu's voice suddenly called out. Lily, if you have any difficulties, remember to tell me. I will help you. Lily's small body paused. She then turned her head, still wearing a sunny smile on her face. Yes, if something comes up, I will seek Gudeo's help. Thank you for your concern. Polite yet distant. Watching as Lily walked away and reunited with a trio led by a raccoon person, Ryu's gaze turned icy. The second time. Then Ryu turned around and headed toward the tavern without looking back. Just as Ryu was passing by the tavern on his way to the dormitory, a clear voice called out to him. Hey, stop right there. Hestia, who had been busy inside the tavern, came running out. Hestia, puffing with anger, grabbed Ryu's cloak. How dare you deceive a goddess? This is a grave sin. Beware, I might cast divine punishment on you. If it were anyone else making threats, it would only disgust Ryu. But when a petite, twin-tailed, black-haired goddess pretended to be fierce while threatening him, Ryu found it somewhat amusing. Indeed, beauty is justice. How did I deceive you, my goddess? Hestia hesitated for a moment, then said, I asked Seer and Ryu. No deity has ever sought you out. Plus, I've observed that your daily routine is very regular. You go directly into the dungeon in the morning and return straight to the dormitory in the evening. Normally, someone as diligent as you would visit their familia's main god to update their status every few days, but you haven't. You lied. You haven't joined a familia, nor do you have a main god. As she spoke, Hestia adopted a, I'm a great detective. You can't fool me, look. Little did she know, the more she spoke, the more Ryu's expression became strange. Soon, Hestia realized that even gods could court death. So, you're saying you've been stalking me like a lovesick pervert these past few days? Ryu's voice sounded like a bucket of cold water. How rude. Can you call a god's actions perverted? I was just, Before Hestia could finish, Ryu swiftly reached out and flicked her forehead hard. A red mark immediately appeared on Hestia's fair forehead, and she hugged her head with tears in her eyes. You dare. You've desecrated a goddess. You will be punished. Ryu pretended to flicker again, and Hestia instantly backed down. So, even if you prove that I haven't joined a familia or have a main god, what then? Ryu asked, both amused and annoyed. Of course, it's to make you join my familia. Hestia instantly perked up, patting her chest. Oh pie Lily. Ryu muttered under his breath. What did you say? Hestia looked puzzled. Ahem, nothing, don't mind it. So why do you want me to join your familia? Ryu turned his head slightly, feeling a bit guilty as he quickly changed the subject. Of course, it's so you can support me and I can enjoy delicious food every day. Hestia declared, looking as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Ryu almost lost his balance and nearly fell to the ground. It's amazing how you can say such a freeloading statement with a straight face, Ryu said with a bitter smile. Of course, being straightforward is one of my virtues. Hestia proudly puffed out her chest. I can see that, Ryu said, unsure of where to look. But since she wasn't going to stop him, he might as well look. Hestia didn't notice the odd angle of Ryu's gaze. She said, so, how about it? Join my familia, and I'll take care of you like a mother. Peeved. Ryu laughed, then stretched out his hand to measure the height difference between him and Hestia. How rude. If you keep this up, I'll get angry. Hestia's pigtails almost stood on end in her rage. All right, I'll stop. Ryu wiped away the tears from his eyes. Have you ever thought that even if I don't join your familia, I can still support you? Before Ryu could finish his sentence, Hestia quickly took several steps back, crossing her arms over her chest and looking at him warily. I must have misjudged you. Are you trying to take advantage of me? Ryu's face instantly darkened, almost losing his temper. He stepped forward, grabbed Hestia's cheeks, and pulled them apart. Did this mouth just say that? I'm sorry. After a while, Ryu let go of Hestia, ignoring her resentful look as she rubbed her red cheeks, and began to explain his plan. Recently, Ryu had earned quite a bit of valise by defeating monsters. Since he had a system and didn't need the expensive and impractical magic equipment of Orario, he hadn't spent much of his money. He had overheard Mamma Mia complaining recently that the tavern's expansion still didn't provide enough seating, and the staff dorms were also overcrowded. An idea struck Ryu. Instead of letting the money sit unused, he could invest in the tavern and turn it into a unique brand in Orario. After all, Ryu believed in doing things to the extreme or not at all. So, he discussed with Mamma Mia about investing part of his funds to buy into the tavern. They planned to buy the surrounding land and expand both the tavern and the dormitories. For example, the tavern would retain its mid to low-end pricing but would also build a VIP building to cater to high-level customers, completely separating the two areas. The tavern's prices would become more affordable, while the VIP building would be luxuriously decorated and priced high to match Ryu's unique culinary skills. The staff dormitories would also see significant expansion. The original 4-person rooms were already cramped, and with more people, they had to squeeze even more in. Having suffered through 8-person college dorms, Ryu knew how inconvenient it was despite the lively atmosphere. According to his plan, 2 female employees would share a room over 100 square meters with a private bathroom, and the dorm would even have a small hot spring bathhouse. As for special privileges, he and Mamma Mia would each have a larger single room. But this raised a problem. As a single person, no one would be there to wash his clothes, make his bed, or tidy his room. So, you want to hire me as your maid? Hestia raised an eyebrow. No, it's personal life assistant. Ryu corrected her immediately. Isn't that the same thing? Hestia looked at him with a strange expression. Of course not. A personal maid has to warm the bed, but a personal assistant doesn't, Ryu said, though he added silently in his heart, a personal assistant does have that duty too. Seeing Hestia still hesitating, Ryu tempted her like a cunning wolf. Think about it, you won't have to do much dirty work. I'll pay you triple the salary. Where else can you find a job this good? All right, fine, I agree. Hestia reluctantly agreed after thinking it over for a while, frowning. However, don't think you can do anything strange to me. Otherwise, even if it means being sent back to the divine realm, I'll break the seal and teach you a lesson. Hestia warned again, still uneasy. Yes, my goddess. But I never expected you to be so good to your employees as a boss, Hestia said, somewhat surprised. To support a vast empire, it's not something I can do alone. If you don't treat your subjects well, how can you expect them to be loyal to you? Ryu replied as if it were obvious. Only a fool would exploit their employees for a bit of profit. Talents are the cornerstone of an empire, whether it be a commercial empire or a military one. Only by attracting talents can an empire continue to grow, becoming a towering tree. Moreover, some of the female employees, due to their dark pasts, have hidden their identities, and among them are some powerful adventurers at levels 4 and 5. They deserve this treatment. Bringing them onto his team is nothing but beneficial. Otherwise, why would Mamma Mia agree to his seemingly absurd request? It was because she deeply understood the bloody pasts of those girls, and perhaps she, too, had a similar experience. Out of compensation and pity, she agreed. Additionally, many of them were on the guild's blacklist, unable to earn a living through normal adventuring means. With this in mind, Mamma Mia agreed to Ryu's plan, just to give these homeless girls a warm place to belong. And Ryu's idea was simpler. If that's the case, why not make this home bigger, stronger, and more comfortable? As for making Hestia his maid, it can be said that half of it was his perverse interest, and the other half was perhaps a form of compensation for her. Since Ryu had sent Belle to Freya Familia, Hestia clearly could no longer find someone who matched her heart. It looks like I must give up on having you join my familia, Hestia suddenly said. Facing Ryu's puzzled gaze, Hestia's expression suddenly became serious. The familia in my heart is like a family, where everyone is family. But you are different. Your ambition surpasses even that of ancient heroes, belonging to a king. Not just my familia, even Loki's and Freya's familia can't contain you. Hestia stared at him intently, her eyes seemingly able to see through his heart. I see in your eyes an ambition to constantly climb higher and never settle beneath others. After returning to his quarters, Ryu checked his system panel. It seemed that because all his basic attributes had increased to 20 points, now in a day, his basic attributes could only increase by 0.1 or 0.2. Moreover, today he discovered a phenomenon. It appeared that the primordial runes did not increase in proficiency the more they were used, unlike other skills. After he could proficiently use the character that resembled an F, the proficiency was fixed at 4%. Ryu had obtained 24 primordial runes plus one blank character from Scathach, totaling 25. Dividing 100 into equal parts, each part was precisely 4. So, he had a bold idea. His proficiency would only increase with each character he mastered, otherwise, he would be stuck there forever. Quite a challenge indeed, Ryu suddenly smiled. The primordial runes seemed to have already somewhat broken through the system's set rules. From this alone, one could see the unparalleled potential of the primordial runes. With a hopeful outlook on the future, Ryu peacefully fell asleep. At the same time, in a dark corner of Orario, Kanu and his men surrounded Lily. Lead that guy to the old place on the 9th floor tomorrow, Kanu commanded. At that moment, a flicker of hesitation flashed through Lily's eyes. Finish this job, and you'll be free. Isn't that what you've always dreamed of, Ard? Kanu whispered temptingly into Lily's ear, like a devil's murmur. Freedom. These words held an almost supreme power over Lily, who instantly cast aside her conscience and morals. Yes, Kanu-sama. Excellent, excellent. Kanu left with his subordinates in high spirits. Lily remained standing there for a long time, seemingly trying to convince herself. She muttered quietly, sorry, Gudao-sama, this is all for Lily's freedom. Besides, you are an adventurer Lily hates the most. The next morning, unusually rainy weather descended upon the bustling labyrinth city. When Ryu arrived at the fountain in front of Babel Tower, wearing a thick waterproof cloak, Lily was already there waiting. However, she seemed preoccupied and didn't notice him immediately. Lily, what are you thinking about? Ryu asked curiously. Startled, Lily quickly looked up at Ryu, smiling. Nothing, Gudao-sama. Lily was just getting a bit bored from waiting. Is that so? Then let's go inside quickly. Ryu habitually patted Lily's head. The feel of her dog ears was incredibly pleasing, almost like they were real. Unfortunately, fake is fake. Just like Ryu, Lily had been using a false appearance from the start, and her words were filled with lies. Don't touch it, Gudao-sama, it's ticklish tilde. Lily made a cute sound involuntarily. Ryu sighed inwardly. These leisurely days were likely coming to an end. And so, the two figures, one big and one small, headed towards Babel Tower. They fought their way to the 7th floor without much resistance. A hint of guilt flashed across Lily's face, quickly replaced by determination. Gudao-sama, now that you have new magic, why don't we venture to the lower floors? Sure, I also feel that this floor lacks challenge, Ryu agreed readily, seemingly unaware of her ulterior motives. Although the monster refresh rate on the 9th floor was faster, it was meaningless to him, who could already venture to the 15th or 16th floors. Following behind Ryu, Lily pretended to struggle to keep up, deliberately widening the distance between them. Every time she picked up a magic stone, she would discreetly glance at Ryu. If he was facing forward, a tiny bit of glowing powder would slip from Lily's sleeve, leaving a fingertip-sized fluorescent mark on the ground. At a fork in the path, Lily's eyes sharpened momentarily before she nonchalantly suggested, Gudao-sama, let's go that way. I remember there's a gathering place for man-eating ants over there. Ryu looked at her deeply and said, all right. Lily breathed a sigh of relief. Although she had left marks, it was best to guide Ryu to the designated spot. After they had walked some distance away, a new group of visitors arrived at the fork. Kanu picked up a bit of the faintly glowing powder in the dark, grinning. Excellent. It seems the little one didn't play any tricks and led the prize to the old place. A subordinate suddenly laughed. Boss has quite the twisted sense of humor. I wonder what look Ard will have if she finds out you never intended to set her free. Another subordinate had the same schadenfreude smile on his face. Isn't it common sense for supporters to give everything for adventurers? After this job, we can kill her, and no one will know it was us. After all, the familia that can produce such magical items is not one we can afford to provoke. You two, stop talking so much, Kanu reprimanded, though his face clearly showed a hint of an undisguised smug smile. Yes, yes, Tilda, the two subordinates reluctantly replied. Meanwhile, following the path Lily pointed out and walking a long distance, the two arrived in a huge space with no road ahead. Huh? Looks like I remembered the wrong path. Sorry, Gudao-sama, Lily said with a guilty, sycophantic smile. Ryu suddenly turned around, staring directly into Lily's eyes. Lily, is there nothing you want to tell me? Huh? What is Gudao-sama talking about? Lily doesn't quite understand. Lily turned her head away, not daring to meet Ryu's gaze. The third time. Ryu's voice was extremely cold. I have already given you a chance. Gudao-sam, Lily was about to speak, but suddenly, in a blur, Ryu's figure appeared right in front of her. Ryu reached out and grabbed Lily's delicate neck. Lily was shocked and knew she was exposed. Instinctively, she raised her right hand, aiming the hidden wrist crossbow on her arm at Ryu's head. And Ryu surprisingly did not stop Lily's action, allowing her to shoot the tiny bolt at his forehead. Clang. The bolt bounced off like it had hit solid steel, leaving only a faint white mark, much to Lily's horrified gaze. Not bad, I felt that, Ryu mocked as he touched the spot where the bolt hit. Lily's wrist crossbow was designed for its compact and flexible nature, but its lethality was severely lacking. Even hitting a vital point might not be fatal. Now, with Ryu's endurance attribute reaching 20 points, his body's defense was comparable to some light iron armor. On top of that, he had secretly inscribed a protection rune on himself, making his body's defense almost indistinguishable from full heavy armor. Lily's wrist crossbow couldn't penetrate his body defense at all. After teasing Lily for a bit, Ryu unceremoniously disarmed her. The wrist crossbow was crushed into pieces, the dagger was snapped in two, and all the potions were shattered. Finally, Ryu found two petrified, round organs from Lily's large bag. Seeing these items being taken out, Lily showed a look of horror. These are tools to attract monsters, right? Lily quickly shook her head, but Ryu smiled. Lily, you are not being good. At this point, you still want to lie? Gudao-sama, I didn't. Lily hurriedly tried to explain. But Ryu slightly tightened his grip, locking Lily's words back into her throat. I should have snapped your neck directly. Ryu said with a faint smile. But in Lily's eyes, it was like the Grim Reaper inviting her, and she quickly shook her head, her eyes filled with pleading. So, I decided to play a game with you and let fate decide your destiny. That sounds a bit weird, but don't mind. Ryu said, smiling as he dragged Lily to a corner, then revealed an exquisite ring in his hand. A dark magical light glowed from the ring, transforming into a dense black mist that enveloped Ryu and Lily, whom he was gripping by the neck. In the blink of an eye, the two living people vanished into the shadows. This ring is precisely the purple quality magical ring Shadow of Stealth that Ryu got from his first 10 draws. It allows the wearer to reduce their presence, cast the stealth skill 3 times a day, and increase agility by 1 point. Although the concealment effect has significantly decreased due to Lily joining him, Ryu is not at all worried about being discovered by that group of weaklings. Thus, the open space fell silent again, with only the sound of water droplets falling from the stalactites and hitting the ground. After a while, 3 figures appeared at the entrance of the open space. It was Kanu and his 2 companions. Damn, where are they? Kanu walked into the trap they had set with great anticipation, only to find it empty. The 3 of them immediately panicked and rushed into the open space, frantically searching around. But the open space was only the size of half a basketball court, and they quickly searched every corner, yet still couldn't find any trace of Ryu and Lily. Damn little girl, how dare she trick me? When I catch her, I'll make her pay. Kanu punched the stone pillar hard. Oh Tilda, and how will you make her pay? Support me at patreon.com/absolutecode. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolute code. FGO, 19. A mischievous voice echoed. Who's there? Canoe and his two henchmen instantly stood back to back, forming a triangular stance. Who's pretending to be a ghost? Come out. Canoe shouted menacingly. Suddenly, two figures, one big and one small, emerged from the shadows. Surprised? Didn't expect this, did you? Ryu said with a teasing expression. How dare you trick me? Canoe immediately pointed his double-edged short sword at Ryu. Don't be hasty, old man, there's an even bigger surprise and shock waiting for you. As he spoke, he threw Lily towards them. Caught off guard, the three were knocked to the ground. Canoe quickly got up and grabbed Lily's hair. Damn it, how dare you conspire with outsiders against me? Canoe-sama, I didn't. Lily was about to explain, but Ryu clapped his hands. Congratulations, you got it right. She made a deal with me to lure you three idiots here so we could finish you off, and then she'd be completely free. You despicable human, how dare you? Canoe, not waiting for Lily to defend herself, slammed her to the ground, stepping on her chest, and aimed his short sword at her heart. I advise you, instead of dealing with her, you'd better take care of yourself. Ryu said, pulling out two monster-attracting devices and throwing them in front of them. This is. Canoe's face changed as he looked at the two objects. It seemed these two devices had been exposed to the air for a while, so the nearby monsters were surely rushing over. Just as an ominous thought flashed through Canoe's mind, it turned into reality. Squeak, squeak. With a piercing noise, fiery red man-eating ants crawled in from the clearing entrance. 1, 2, 8, 9. The man-eating ants kept crawling in, seemingly endless. In just a few seconds, over a dozen man-eating ants had already crawled in, emitting that piercing noise as if calling their distant companions. To make matters worse, cracks appeared in the stone walls, and more man-eating ants crawled out. Are you crazy? Do you know what you're doing? Do you want to die together? Canoe shouted in terror. No, old man, only you will die here. Facing the endless sea of man-eating ants, Ryu remained extremely relaxed. Well, I'll be going now. Good luck. Ryu smiled and waved at Canoe and his men in the clearings area. Then Ryu protected his head and face with his hands, leaned forward, and stomped hard. Boom. The ground cracked, and he charged towards the entrance like a heavy tank. Countless man-eating ants tried to stop him, but their sharp pincers, which could easily cut through leather armor, couldn't harm Ryu's skin. They only left white marks without breaking the skin. Just like that, he charged out the entrance, brushing off the man-eating ants' attacks. Canoe and his men were stunned by this reckless move. Damn it, he's not a rookie adventurer. Canoe furiously kicked Lily lying on the ground. Boss, forget about her. Think of a way out. Canoe's henchmen cried out in panic. Among them, only Canoe was LV2, making it nearly impossible to break through the encirclement of so many man-eating ants. Damn it. Canoe considered using Lily as bait, but with only one entrance, the bait would be useless. We're charging through. He decided almost instantly. Boss, how are we supposed to charge through so many man-eating ants? Canoe's henchman, seeing the dense swarm of ants, was trembling. If you want to die, stay here. Canoe cursed and led the charge, with his henchmen reluctantly following him in a desperate charge against the ant horde. Perhaps it was the dire situation that triggered Canoe's potential, or maybe it was the advantage of his LV2 attributes, or possibly a stroke of fate's favor. Amazingly, Canoe broke through. Though he was covered in blood, had lost his left eye, and had his right wrist severed, he miraculously escaped from the sea of ants. As for his two henchmen, they were torn to pieces by the man-eating ants halfway through. Damn you, bastard, just wait, when I get back, you'll pay. The surviving Canoe cursed as he walked away. However, his luck seemed to have run out. As he turned a corner, a massive shadow instantly enveloped him. Why is there a floor boss here? No. Accompanied by the sound of flesh being torn apart, Canoe's scream was abruptly cut off. Meanwhile, Lily lay on the ground, unable to move, covered in wounds. Seeing the man-eating ants slowly surrounding her, Lily's face showed a look of despair. Her life flashed before her eyes like a revolving lantern. Becoming an orphan, being forced to become a supporter, constantly exploited by adventurers, finally escaping only to be taken in by an elderly couple, only for adventurers to find her, destroy the couple's shop, and plunge her back into darkness. Dear gods, since you allowed Lily to be born in this world, why won't you bestow even a tiny bit of blessing upon her? Lily didn't want to become such a dirty person. Lily tried, but even that small bit of happiness was snatched away in an instant. Dear gods, what did Lily do wrong to deserve this? To become someone she despises yet is powerless to change? Lily lay on the ground, lamenting and complaining about her tragic and unfortunate life. However, although the man-eating ants surrounded her, they did not attack. Instead, it seemed as though they were waiting for something. Thud. Suddenly, the ground vibrated violently, as if some colossal being had appeared. Even Lily, lying on the ground waiting to die, couldn't help but turn her head slightly. A terrifying figure instantly came into her view. It was 3 times the size of a regular man-eating ant, larger than a warhorse. Its lower body was that of a man-eating ant, but its upper body resembled a human female. The floor boss, the ant queen. To die at the hands of a floor boss, is this the god's way of favoring me, letting me die more gloriously? Lily smiled bitterly. With the arrival of the ant queen, the man-eating ants made their way, allowing the queen to walk unimpeded to Lily's side. Ryu had naturally encountered this ant queen as well, but he used the stealth effect of his ring to evade it instantly. Though he could kill the ant queen with some effort since it was a grand gift for Canoe and his men, how could Ryu take away their prize? Smelling the sour stench, Lily slowly closed her eyes, a relieved smile appearing on her face. It's all about to end soon. Lily is going to die here. At that moment, a commotion interrupted the ant queen, who was preparing to feast. Boom. A crescent-shaped white light slashed through, instantly turning the man-eating ants at the clearing's entrance into ashes, with magic stones clattering to the ground. Lily instinctively opened her eyes. She saw 2 unfamiliar figures at the entrance. One was a pigman warrior, about 2 meters tall, with a giant sword on his back, resembling an iron statue. The other was a white-haired boy in black heavy armor, also wielding a giant sword. An ant queen? This floor boss may be LV3, but it specializes in healing and summoning, making it a perfect opponent, the pigman said, turning to look at the white-haired boy beside him. Belle, I'll leave it to you. I won't interfere. Show your worth to the goddess. The pigman warrior crossed his arms and stood by, watching coldly. Yes, teacher. The white-haired boy charged at the ant queen. Seeing the figure in black armor, Lily, who had fallen into despair, suddenly felt a ray of light shine into her heart. Ha! With a shout, the white-haired boy spun his giant sword like a wheel. As he moved, the man-eating ants died upon contact, wounded upon touch. Seemingly provoked by the boy's actions, the ant queen let out a piercing roar, and then abandoned Lily. Its 6 long limbs moved swiftly as it rushed at the white-haired boy. Belle faced the ant queen head-on and attacked. They clashed like thunder and lightning, entangling each other immediately. Belle's attacks were wild yet precise, blocking most of the ant queen's strikes with his giant sword. After a fierce battle, Belle was covered in wounds, though mostly superficial. The ant queen, however, had 3 of its 6 legs severed, and a massive wound stretched from its humanoid upper body's shoulder to its abdomen, nearly splitting it in 2. The ant queen retreated suddenly, emitting a sharp cry. The remaining man-eating ants charged at him in a suicidal frenzy. Momentarily, the boy was held back by the ants. Taking advantage of this, the Ant Queen began using healing magic, with its wounds starting to heal visibly. It seemed the effort might be in vain. Not a chance. Bell suddenly threw his giant sword like a spear at the Ant Queen. Squeak. Caught off guard, the Ant Queen was pierced through the chest by the sword. With a shrill scream, it turned to ashes. Thud. A massive magic stone fell from the air. Teacher, I did it. Bell excitedly shouted to the pigman warrior. Wham. The pigman warrior rewarded him with a punch. Idiot, how can a warrior casually discard his weapon? Sorry. He immediately bowed in apology. He didn't notice the fleeting smile on the pigman warrior's face. The pigman warrior and the white-haired boy were none other than Otter and Bell. The goddess had entrusted this boy to him for training, and initially, Otter had refused. Cowardly, timid, and habitually apologizing at the slightest issue, Bell was like a rabbit. He didn't resemble a warrior at all. That was Otter's initial assessment. If it weren't for his absolute loyalty to the goddess Freya, Otter might have only given a half-hearted effort. However, over time, Bell's virtues began to shine through. Setting aside his terrifyingly strong talent, he lacked the arrogance typical of prodigies, being humble and polite instead. He was so kind-hearted it bordered on stubbornness, often considered a pushover. While not a perfect warrior, he was undoubtedly the best teammate. You could trust your back to him completely. This was extremely rare within Freya's familia. Most adventurers who joined Freya did so for her unparalleled beauty. They saw all their familia members as rivals, wishing for their demise. It was uncommon to find someone who wouldn't stab you in the back, let alone protect it or cooperate as a team. Even Otter himself was like this. He had almost always been a solo adventurer from LV1 to LV7. The feeling of entrusting his back to someone else was novel to him. Gradually, Otter changed his opinion of Bell. Though immature, he was dependable. That was his new evaluation, and he almost poured everything he had into teaching Bell, including dungeon exploration, monster fighting techniques, and even combat skills. Do not underestimate these seemingly trivial details. Sometimes, they could save your life in a critical moment. Especially since this knowledge came from the only LV7 in Orario, the King, Otter. If he compiled it into a book and auctioned it, it would fetch an astronomical price. Under Otter's meticulous guidance and with Bell's extraordinary talent, Bell grew rapidly, almost as if riding a rocket. By now, he could independently defeat a floor boss like the LV3 Ant Queen. When we get back, let the goddess update your status. You should have reached LV2 by now, Otter said, patting Bell on the shoulder. Yes, teacher, thank you for your guidance. The sincere white-haired boy seemed greatly encouraged, standing tall and bowing deeply. Collect the magic stone and bring it back. As for that Palom. Otter glanced coldly at Lily, about to tell Bell to leave her be. But Bell ran over to Lily. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Can you stand? Bell asked, extending a hand. Otter swallowed his words and shook his head helplessly. Lily grabbed Bell's hand and stood up, surprising him with her next action. She hugged his waist tightly, and tears poured out like a waterfall. Thank you so much. Lily cried and thanked him repeatedly as if she was grateful not only for saving her life but also her soul. Don't cry, don't cry. Bell, who had never been this close to a girl, blushed furiously and flailed awkwardly. At that moment, Otter's eyes suddenly turned sharp. Who's there? He drew his giant sword with a reverse grip and dashed like a black lightning bolt towards a corner, sweeping his sword at the seemingly empty spot. Clang. A loud clash echoed, and sparks flew. In the shadows, a figure suddenly appeared. Ryu had returned. His hands were crossed blocking Oda's enormous sword. Sparks continually flew from the blue-quality gauntlets issued by the system he wore. Upon closer inspection, a significant crack had already marred the gauntlet's toughest part, evidence of damage from Otter's casual strike. It's you, Otter said, withdrawing his sword with an expressionless face, though surprise flickered in his eyes. Don't misunderstand. I lured that floor master here as prey, Ryu said with a smile, seemingly unfazed by Otter's earlier attack. Kid, let's go, Otter said, giving Ryu a deep look before turning to summon Bell to depart. Yes, teacher. Bell quickly supported Lily and followed Otter out. As he passed Ryu, he bowed deeply. Thank you for your help. I'll never forget this kindness. To Bell, Ryu was the benefactor who had pulled him from the abyss in his darkest moment and the figure he tirelessly pursued. However, Lily trembled beside him, avoiding Ryu's gaze as she clung tightly to Bell's clothing. Ryu's actions had left a profound psychological impact on her. As the three figures gradually faded, Ryu's smile faded too, replaced by a serious expression as he retrieved a healing potion from the system and drank it. As expected of Orario's only level 7, the power gap between level 5 is immense. Unbeknownst to him, a cold sweat covered his forehead. His hands were fractured from Otter's casual strike. Despite using magic and the pre-drawn guardian rune, he was severely injured. My preparations were correct, Ryu mused. The Loki Familia had dispatched 3 level 6 adventurers to match Otter's level 7 prowess, and the Demi-Spirit's avatar on the 59th floor had nearly wiped out Loki Familia's elite team, indicating its strength far exceeded Otter's. After undergoing demonic transformation, how much stronger would the avatar become? The thought sent chills down his spine. Life seemed normal again, with only sporadic news reminding Ryu that the world kept turning. For instance, the biggest news was the upcoming Monster Festival, celebrating humans' expulsion of monsters from the surface. Hosted by the Ganesha Familia and supported by the Guild and major familias, the festival aimed to boost mortal morale. Another news piece, though less influential, caused a stir among adventure-focused familias. The Freya Familia had recruited Bell Cornell, who had risen from level 1 to 2 in under a month, a feat previously unheard of. Familias initially disbelieved, accusing Bell of cheating. Yet, unlike the original story, Bell had joined the prestigious Freya Familia, under level 7 Otter's tutelage. Despite jealousy and doubt, familias hypocritically offered their congratulations. Support me at patreon.com/absolutecode. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO 20. The Hostess of Fertility has undergone an extensive renovation and is scheduled to reopen on the day of the Monster Festival. The reopening will feature a one-day trial operation in the newly constructed VIP building, Gudako, in the form of a banquet. Almost all high-ranking organizations in Orario have received invitations. These include the adventurer factions led by Freya and Loki Familia, the guild that represents the Order of Orario, the presidents of major merchant associations, and others. To understand when this so-called VIP building was erected, we need to start from the beginning. After Ryu handed over the billions of Valis he had saved to Mamma Mia, she quickly utilized her connections, gained from her previous status as the captain of Freya Familia and a top-tier adventurer, to purchase the land around the tavern. She then commissioned a familia specializing in construction to handle the expansion. Remarkably, they cleared and leveled the land, including the Hostess of Fertility, within just 3 days. Following this, they built the most crucial part of Ryu's blueprint, the VIP building Gudako, as well as a massive employee dormitory, all within a week. It's worth noting that in Orario, having magic and gods skilled in construction makes things incredibly efficient. Otherwise, how could the Babel Tower, which soars several times higher than any Earth skyscraper, have been built? Don't assume that this world is technologically inferior just because it seems to be in an ancient civilization. Some of its advanced technologies surpass Earth by hundreds of years. For instance, there are holy elixirs that can heal all wounds in a short time and weapons with an unbreakable attribute similar to vibranium metal. Thus, Ryu witnessed what could be called super demolition and rapid construction. The newly built VIP building stands 6 stories high, with most of its design coming from Ryu, an amateur. His insights, however, surpass this world's understanding. Luckily, the professional construction team managed to turn his rudimentary sketches into a final product that closely matched his vision. The first floor lobby was designed to be extremely luxurious, highlighting grandeur and elegance. From the second floor upwards, it became a world expo. The second floor featured Gothic style, the third floor Greek stone carvings, the fourth floor an ice palace, the fifth floor a nature-themed area filled with various plants, and the top floor a blend of opulent and grand classical Japanese style. Following the principle of doing the best, all decorations and materials used were of the highest quality. Fortunately, in this world, as long as magic isn't involved, prices are relatively cheaper. Additionally, Ryu's plan included transforming all the acquired land into a complex similar to Loki Familia's castle, surrounded by tall and sturdy walls. This not only elevated the prestige but also significantly enhanced security, achieving a dual purpose. Ryu's trial operation aims to lay the foundation for attracting high-end customers. For Orario, where commerce is still in its early stages, this unprecedented business model immediately drew a lot of attention. Especially after Freya and Loki Familia announced their participation in the trial operation's opening ceremony, Ryu and the hostess of fertility were thrust into the spotlight. Thanks to Mamma Mia's deep connections, most organizations chose to observe quietly from the shadows. However, many gods accepted the invitations privately. Hearing this, Ryu secretly smirked. Indeed, even a pig would become wise after living for billions of years, let alone the gods who stand at the top of the world. Anyone who thinks gods are just pleasure-seeking fools is the real fool. Of course, this excludes a certain blue ribbon-wearing goddess known for her cuteness. It's worth mentioning that after Mamma Mia announced the large expansion of the employee dormitory at Ryu's suggestion, many female staff members couldn't help but look at him with admiration and respect. When a new dormitory, vastly larger than the old one, was built, Ryu felt as though he heard a system prompt in his mind. His influence and reputation with the hostess of fertility had reached the highest level. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, the day of the monster festival arrived. On this day, the entire city of Orario seemed to be immersed in a sea of joy. The buildings on both sides of the streets were adorned with various colorful ribbons. The number of food stalls had surged, and the number of people on the streets had also increased dramatically. Not only did most adventurers choose to take the day off, but even ordinary people put down their work to enjoy this moment of festivity. The newly constructed Budako also welcomed its first batch of guests. The first to arrive was the Loki Familia. It seemed that the goddess Loki had plenty of free time, as she was always seen wandering around. Today, she was accompanied only by her favorite sword princess, Ice. Next to arrive was the elegantly dressed goddess Freya, but instead of her steadfast daughter, she was accompanied by a white-haired boy. It seemed there was a mutual understanding among the gods attending the ceremony. They all brought the member they favored most from their familias. When many gods saw Belle next to the goddess Freya, they looked surprised and some even started whispering in the corners. However, their discussions soon shifted to the unique decorations of Budako and the clothing of the female staff. Apart from the receptionists on the first floor, whose attire was solemn and resembled ancient priestesses, the outfits of the female staff on each floor were designed to match the respective themes. For example, the second floor's Gothic style had maids in unique maid outfits, the third floor's Greek temple featured classical Greek robes, the fourth floor's ice palace had fur clothing, and the top floor's Japanese style showcased figure-flattering kimonos. Ryu chose to debut on the fifth floor, which was filled with a nature theme. The tables and chairs were either polished smooth from raw wood or were swings hung with evergreen vines, and the floor was covered with grass instead of carpet. Oh, if my Reverio were here, she would be delighted, the goddess Loki said as she swung on a swing, evaluating the surroundings. But Freya, your child seems quite nervous, Loki continued, using her signature squinting eyes to scrutinize Belle, who was standing behind Freya. Belle, already somewhat timid by nature, felt extraordinarily nervous being stared at by so many people and gods, especially since it was his first time attending such a large banquet. Under Loki's gaze, he couldn't help but shiver. As for Ice, who stood behind Loki, she stared at Belle's back without any attempt to conceal it, as if trying to see something unusual. Eratilda Loki, don't be so mean and bully my child, the goddess Freya said, her eyes twinkling. The goddess of beauty seemed to be in a particularly good mood today, having meticulously dressed up, and her extraordinary beauty attracted numerous admiring glances from the men around. Oh, here comes the main event. Loki was about to say something when she suddenly opened her squinting eyes slightly and looked towards the kitchen. A figure in a pristine chef's uniform appeared before everyone. It was the absolute star of today's event, Nguyen Ryu. Because Loki's attention shifted to Ryu, she didn't notice the intense gaze from the goddess of beauty beside her, whose eyes seemed to emit a burning intensity as soon as Ryu appeared. The gaze was so scorching that Ryu, several meters away, felt as if he was being burned. However, when he instinctively looked towards the source of the gaze, he saw the two major figures of Orario sitting there. Loki waved at him, while the silver-haired goddess beside her merely smiled reservedly. Ryu smiled and nodded at them, casting aside his doubts. The performance today was crucial for his future expansion plans and had to be flawless. Ryu had prepared teppanyaki for the occasion, but not the kind where street vendors use a blackened iron plate to cook a random mix of ingredients with two spatulas. Instead, it was the high-end cuisine invented by the Spanish and spread worldwide. The reason for choosing this dish was that teppanyaki is a high-end live cooking method, allowing Ryu to showcase his skills while also highlighting the freshness of the ingredients. The 10 seats closest to the cooking station were naturally reserved for Orario's top figures. Besides Loki and Freya, the guild also sent a middle-aged half-elf in a tailcoat as their representative. Notable attendees included Hephaestus and Goivanu, who were instrumental in Orario's weapon forging and logistics. Although the Ganesha Familia was busy hosting the monster festival, nearly all the main gods of Orario's major familias were present. Boom! A burst of flame shot into the sky. With the ingredients ready and the preliminary preparations complete, Ryu first delivered a big surprise. After preheating, he threw a chunk of the finest butter onto the now red-hot iron plate. Instantly, flames roared and surged. With a flick of his hand, a piece of translucent fish slid into the flames, and within seconds, the aroma of fish mixed with the butter wafted through the air. Grilled rock fish. Ryu then seemed to transform into a multi-armed deity, simultaneously cooking over a dozen different ingredients. There were the finest wild beefsteaks from the polar highlands, colossal sea emperor crabs the size of washbasins from thousands of miles away, rare Yolande oysters with an annual global yield of only 100 tons, and even bioluminescent shrimp from the underground lakes on the 30th floor of the dungeon. All the finest ingredients this world had to offer. Ryu's cooking style was also exceptionally bold, using an iron plate stove heated to its maximum with magic stones as fuel. The iron plate glowed red-hot, cooking the ingredients from raw to ready in just a few seconds. Any slight misstep would turn them into charcoal. However, this high-temperature cooking show was incredibly captivating. In the eyes of the gods, Ryu transformed into the most skilled flame magician, with fierce flames like dragons dancing at his command. Each ingredient was cooked to perfection, showcasing its unique qualities, and pushing the limits of teppanyaki chef skills. Moreover, Ryu's efficiency was astounding, working at a pace 10 times faster than ordinary chefs. It's a pity this wasn't a world that revered gourmet food above all else, nor was there a complete rating system for dishes due to the average ancient level technology. The gods evaluated a dish by comparing it to those made by culinary skilled deities, roughly categorizing it as approaching, matching, or surpassing divine works. Ryu's unprecedented cooking methods and extraordinary culinary skills completely impressed all the attending gods. Titles such as Flame Magician and King of Cuisine began to circulate in Orario after the event. If the gods knew that Ryu had held back, refraining from making dishes that could enhance attributes, one wonders what their reactions would be. Nevertheless, Ryu's cuisine was still fervently celebrated, to the point of causing a frenzy. Initially, the gods maintained their decorum, but after tasting his food and drinking various specialty fruit wines, they abandoned all pretense and rushed forward. Even godly couples, in their eagerness to taste more of Ryu's dishes, completely ignored each other's feelings. Thus, a single banquet resulted in countless newly single gods. A resounding success. This first trial run exceeded Ryu's expectations, achieving tremendous success. From today onwards, the names Gudako and Gudao will spread throughout all of Orario and even the entire world. After the banquet, one god after another approached Ryu to shake hands, either openly or subtly suggesting that he switch allegiances. Male gods were relatively restrained, with only a few exceptions. Most of them expressed their admiration for Ryu in a gentlemanly manner. The goddesses, on the other hand, were far more aggressive, using their bodies as bargaining chips. They crowded around him, eager to press themselves close to him, giving him a taste of what it meant to be surrounded by beauty and indulgence. Ryu couldn't help but wonder whether he was the one taking advantage or being taken advantage of. Despite the notoriously chaotic private lives of many goddesses in Orario, their flawless appearances remained unblemished, making them ideal partners. Your skills are really impressive. I almost want to tie you to our familia. Loki, her face red from drinking, slapped Ryu's shoulder heartily, acting as if they were a close buddy. But when she leaned closer to him, her usual squinty-eyed expression turned sharp. She whispered in his ear, "We need to talk. Find time to visit our familia." Her words were soon interrupted. "That won't do, Loki. I have my eyes on this one too, and I won't let you have him." The stunningly beautiful goddess Freya, her cheeks flushed from either the wine or the excitement of Ryu's food, added another layer of allure with her rosy blush. "Thank you for the feast, Tilda. It was truly delicious, Tilda," Freya said, unconsciously licking her enticing red lips. Her seductive gesture made Ryu instinctively bow slightly, while internally he was frantically complaining. "Little soldier, get down. Goddess, please don't make such misleading gestures. We're friends, after all. This makes it look like I've taken advantage of you." Outwardly, Ryu maintained his gentlemanly demeanor, humbly lifting Freya's delicate hand and giving it a light kiss. "It is my utmost honor to receive your praise, Lady Freya." "Ah, that's not fair. I'm a goddess too. Why don't you treat me like that?" Loki shouted from the side. Ryu couldn't help but roll his eyes internally. "Do you have no self-awareness about your looks? It's a pity, but we must go. Belle, let's leave." Freya, maintaining her graceful demeanor, smiled at Ryu and called for Belle. No one noticed that as Ryu performed the hand-kissing gesture, Freya's legs involuntarily squeezed together under her gown. "Yes, Lady Freya." A blushing Belle quickly ran over. For the goddesses, someone with Belle's submissive face was especially beloved. Combined with the effects of alcohol, the goddesses were even more uninhibited. If not for Belle being under Freya's protection, he would have been thoroughly taken advantage of, rather than just verbally teased. As he passed by Ryu, Belle bowed deeply as usual. "Mr. Gudao, see you next time." "Well then, we should go too. Ice-chan, Tilda." Loki hurriedly called out, but Ice, who was engrossed in eating a small plate of Ryu's special red bean cream pudding, seemed reluctant to leave. Ice's obsession with becoming stronger had turned into an almost demonic fixation. "Stare, Tilda." Since Ryu appeared, her gaze had shifted from Belle to Ryu, especially his back, as if wanting to burn a hole through it with her eyes. Seeing no other option, Loki whispered something in Ice's ear. Ice's eyes suddenly lit up, and she quickly nodded, obediently following Loki. Perhaps because Ryu was present, a certain infatuated goddess didn't release any monsters to cause trouble. Thus, the monster festival hosted by Ganesha outside also concluded successfully. It seemed that everything in Orario had returned to a peaceful and harmonious track. Only those with a keen eye know how turbulent the hidden shadows truly are. The Gudako banquet lasted from noon until 7 in the evening. Afterward, to reward the exhausted waitresses, Ryu personally prepared a teppanyaki feast for them of equal caliber. As a result, the waitresses, who already held him in high regard, were utterly smitten. Many of them became his ardent admirers. Among them, the most exaggerated reactions came from the cat girls Chloe and Anya. They seemed completely captivated by Ryu's various seafood dishes. With some alcohol in the mix, they clung to him like octopuses. Even Ryu, after being served a special vegan lemon herb tofu steak, greatly changed her attitude towards him. Her disdain seemed to have upgraded to mere indifference. As for Seer and Hestia, they were both fiercely jealous, bickering over Ryu. However, Hestia, the adorable one, was no match for the cunning Seer, who toyed with her effortlessly. Late at night, the Loki familia's castle welcomed a guest. In the castle's reception hall, the familia's goddess Loki and Captain Finn were hosting this guest. "You arrived quickly," Loki said, sitting cross-legged on the sofa like a man. Ryu, seated across the table, raised an eyebrow slightly. "Swift action is my principle. So, what business does the renowned Loki familia have with me?" Ryu's straightforward approach and direct entry into the topic made Loki and Finn exchange glances. Finn then smiled and said, "Actually, I was the one who called you." Ryu opened one hand, gesturing for him to continue. "I wonder if Mr. Gudao is interested in participating in the next expedition of the Loki familia." Since Ryu cut to the chase, Finn didn't beat around the bush either. Little did Finn know, Ryu simply didn't want to waste brainpower on verbal sparring with these negotiation experts. If action can be taken, words are unnecessary. This has always been Ryu's life principle. To be honest, being part of a Loki familia expedition is an honor that would drive many people crazy. Ryu's praise brought a modest and gentle smile to Finn's face. At that moment, Ryu didn't see Finn's childlike appearance but rather the face of a shrewd and cunning middle-aged politician in his 40s or 50s. "You flatter me. But what does that have to do with me?" Ryu spread his hands. "I'm only interested in benefits, and I believe that only with mutual benefits can two parties with no trust bind closely together. What do you think, Captain Finn?" Such bluntness made Finn a bit uncomfortable, as he was more accustomed to engaging in verbal duels to secure every bit of interest. Now, Ryu's clear stance of not acting without benefits left Finn somewhat at a loss. Support me at patreon.com/absolutecode. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Ri. Zero No Game No Life Fate series. The cover photo is not mine. Credit goes to the owner. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO, 21. The midnight bell tolled. Draped in a black cloak, Ryu stepped out of the Loki familia's castle at a leisurely pace. Looking back at the still-lit captain's office, Ryu's face showed a satisfied smile. One had to admit, dealing with the Loki familia, which exuded a positive and upward atmosphere, was quite pleasant. The ultimate goal of the Loki familia was to reach the 59th floor, a feat never before achieved, for the sake of glory. Beyond this ultimate objective, they were open to negotiating other interests as long as they didn't interfere with their main goal. Thus, Ryu joined their team, offering to prepare attribute-boosting dishes for them for free, in exchange for all the rare ingredients found in the dungeon along the way. Next, all that was needed was for the Loki familia to complete their preliminary preparations, and then the expedition team could set off. However, Finn also requested that Ryu join their vanguard team the next day for preliminary integration. After all, battle was not a game. There were no save points, and any coordination issues could lead to fatalities. Ryu, for his reasons, readily agreed to Finn's request. After this, all that was left was. Returning to his new dormitory, he found the entire dorm already dark. Ryu quietly walked to his room's door when suddenly a sharp glint flashed in his eyes. There was an uninvited guest in his room. Due to his many secrets and his insufficient strength, he always remained somewhat vigilant. Thus, after learning the original runes from his Shisho, one of the first he began to study and understand was rune 14, Perdo. Its shape resembled a cup used for dice rolls, turned 90 degrees to the left. It represented hidden, or secret. By using this rune, one could uncover various hidden secrets or a concealed fortune. Once fully mastered, it could be used to find hidden treasures, making it an excellent tool for amassing wealth. With Ryu's comprehension, he could only grasp its superficial effects, but it sufficed as a warning rune. And now, Ryu gently infused magic into the door lock. As a faint black mist dispersed, it revealed a broken rune in 2 segments, slowly fading in the air. The meaning was clear. His secret had been discovered. The rune had been opened. With a composed demeanor, Ryu retrieved his gauntlets from the storage space and then quickly drew runes 2, Uruz, 3, Tharasaz, and 6, Kanaz, on himself. These were all the runes he currently mastered that could enhance his attributes. Quietly unlocking the door, Ryu slipped inside noiselessly. To his surprise, the large bed, which should have been empty, was covered, revealing the shape of a person. So audacious. Ryu frowned slightly, tiptoed to the bedside, and then suddenly lifted the blanket. Eek tilde tilde. At that moment, Ryu felt his heart nearly stop. It wasn't fear of an enemy, but rather. A sensuous figure lay naked on his bed, with short black hair, black cat ears, and a black cat tail. She lay on her side, showcasing her curvaceous body. Her chest was moderately sized, just enough for a hand to grasp, but the most alluring part was her long, toned legs, clearly honed through rigorous training. At that moment, Ryu deeply understood the phrase, thick thigh saves lives. The cat girl lying on his bed in a suggestive pose was none other than Chloe, one of the veteran shop assistants. Due to her black furred cat ears and tail, coupled with her black hair, Ryu often jokingly referred to her as Black Cat. Incidentally, there was another girl with orange hair, orange ears, and an orange tail named Anya, who had a habit of ending her sentences with meow. Ryu had nicknamed her Orange Cat. Perhaps because Ryu had suddenly lifted the blanket, causing the temperature to drop, Chloe grumbled something in displeasure while reaching out and groping around. Due to her movements, the previously slightly covered curves of her body were now fully visible to Ryu. Ryu was neither a saint nor a useless harem anime protagonist. With beauty in front of him, he wasn't going to miss the chance to appreciate it. Cultural appreciation? Peeved. If given the chance, who wouldn't want to get hands-on? Ryu took his fill of the view, and as Chloe seemed to be waking up, he asked, Chloe, why did you come to my room? I was afraid the chef would be lonely and empty at night, so I came to keep you company tilde. Chloe's tone was a mix of sleepy laziness and enticing allure. However, Ryu keenly noticed a fleeting smile in Chloe's eyes. He immediately felt a cold laugh in his heart. This little girl, thinking just because he was a homebody, he was a herbivore? Suddenly, Ryu leaned over her body, one hand propped near her ear, while the other hand started to undo his clothes. Really? That's perfect. I was getting bored sleeping alone. You came at just the right time, Chloe. You're such an understanding girl, Ryu said in an extremely serious tone. His actions, however, startled Chloe, causing her to stammer. What are you doing taking off your clothes? Didn't you say you'd keep me company? We're all adults here. I don't need to explain what this means, right? Hurry up, it's still early. We can do it a few more times and avoid delaying tomorrow's work. Ryu spoke with a straight face, as if he wasn't discussing something inappropriate, but rather something as mundane as eating or drinking. Do it, a few times? The composure on Chloe's face vanished, replaced by a deep blush. Pervert, degenerate, shameless, she exclaimed, pushing Ryu away, snatching the blanket from his hands, and running out of the room without looking back. Watching Chloe flee, Ryu showed a satisfied smile. See if you dare tease me again, just because you've grown some fur, you think you can play with fire, huh? Ryu lay on the still warm and fragrant bed for a moment before suddenly getting up. Damn, I almost let this girl mess up something important. Ryu hurried to the window and gently pushed it open. At this hour, Orario was completely immersed in the night. Apart from the bright lights of the pleasure district, most of the city was shrouded in darkness. Ryu remained silent for a moment, then activated his magic, using his fingers to draw in the air. He traced a rune resembling an inverted E. This was the 19th rune, Awaz, representing meanings such as horse, change, and transmission. Currently, he has only grasped one usage, sending information. Unfortunately, due to his limited understanding and his inability to utilize the combination of original runes, he couldn't precisely target the information to a specific person or even lock onto a general area. Ryu could only broadcast the message, letting it spread in the wind. And who was he looking for? Naturally, the elusive queen of the Shadow Country, Scathach. Shisho, please respond if you hear this. Ryu sent out the message every 10 minutes. However, a full hour passed without any response. Just as Ryu was dozing off by the window, a cold voice reached his ears. You are the worst disciple I have ever taught. A purple figure appeared silently beside Ryu. It was none other than the mysterious queen of the land of shadow, Scathach. Ryu's pupils involuntarily contracted. Before she spoke, he hadn't sensed anything. Fortunately, Scathach wasn't an enemy. Otherwise, she could have easily sent him to the underworld with a single, effortless strike. Speak. What do you need? Scathach asked calmly. Shisho, didn't you use the wisdom of Dunscape to take a look? Ryu asked with a strange expression. If one knows everything in advance, where's the fun in life? Ryu chuckled awkwardly, remembering that despite her godlike abilities, the queen of the land of shadow rarely used them, especially concerning prophecy and future vision. What do you want? Don't waste my time. Ahem, here's the situation. Ryu quickly explained his upcoming expedition to subdue the avatar of the fallen fairy on the 59th floor. In short, I want you, Shisho, to secretly follow us. If we fail, please save us. Ryu spoke cautiously, all the while stealing glances at Scathach's expression. To his surprise, her expression didn't change at all by the time he finished. A month ago, I left you alone in the arena without any guidance, and now you want me to be your last line of defense. At this, a playful look flashed in Scathach's eyes. Do you think I will agree? Even if I did, would you trust me? I will, you will agree, and I will trust you. Ryu declared resolutely. Oh, tell me your reasons. Scathach raised an eyebrow slightly. You threw me into the arena because you believed my talent would allow me to escape on my own. And now, even with the information we have, I don't have absolute confidence in surviving. Moreover, the so-called demonized mutation adds another significant variable, making my chances of survival even slimmer. I have a feeling that you don't want me dead. You just want me to grow stronger as quickly as possible. Perhaps it's because I'm your master, even though you don't outwardly acknowledge this relationship. As Ryu said this, he kept his eyes fixed on Scathach's, especially when he mentioned the last part. For a moment, a ripple appeared in her usually calm eyes. Ryu felt a sudden clarity in his heart. Scathach suddenly sighed. All my previous disciples were muscleheads who only knew how to practice martial arts. Taking you in, someone who uses their brain has been quite a novel experience. However, I'm curious. You should know that I admire brave warriors. Given that, why are you so confident that I will help you? Scathach's eyes shone with a probing light. Bravery does not equate to recklessness. I can't force myself to advance knowing there's no hope of winning. You and that fool Cuchulain are completely different. If he had half your brains, it would have been better. Mentioning a certain name, a tinge of sadness appeared in Scathach's eyes. A sudden flame ignited in Ryu's heart, making him blurt out, it truly is a pity. He is a dead hero, but I will be a strong one who survives to the end. Scathach's eyes showed a complex expression, a mix of surprise and displeasure. Ryu steeled his resolve and said coldly, also, Shisho, please don't mention other male disciples in front of me. Even if I lack a hero's glory, I am still a man. And one day, I will make you acknowledge that the most outstanding disciple you, Scathach, have ever taught is none other than me, Nguyen Ryu. Ryu declared firmly. Scathach ultimately not only agreed to his request but also consented to a small additional favor. Now, everything was ready. All that was needed was the fate of destiny. The next day, Ryu arrived at the fountain plaza in front of the Tower of Babel, waiting for the vanguard team of the Loki Familia to arrive. Hey. Before long, a lively voice called out. The Amazonian girl, Tiona, was waving her arms from a distance. It's the Loki Familia. Passers-by adventurers immediately began whispering to each other, and covert glances started scrutinizing Ryu's magically disguised face. Who's that guy? I haven't seen him before. Wait, I think I've seen him. Isn't he the head chef at the Hostess of Fertility? I've heard of that tavern. I heard it's been expanding recently. My familia's main god went there and couldn't stop praising it, saying the chef's culinary skills have reached a divine level. Really? I'll have to try it someday. Forget it. After the expansion, he only worked at the Gudako, and it was by reservation only. A meal there costs at least several $100,000 valis. Can you afford that? The person immediately quieted down. As an adventurer, any extra money would naturally go towards upgrading equipment. Who would spend tens of thousands of gold coins on a meal when that money could buy decent gear? Not every familia could navigate the floors below the 40th as easily as the Loki familia. It's safe to say that the specialties of the dungeon below the 40th floor were almost monopolized by the Loki and Freya familias. Ryu had initially set his sights on the upper echelon of Orario's market, aiming for the top-tier route. As for individual adventurers, sorry, but you'll have to humble yourselves to the newly renovated tavern. Since his culinary skills were unique in all of Orario, he couldn't afford to sell them cheaply. But isn't he a chef? Why is he heading into the dungeon? Who knows, maybe he's scouting for ingredients. Anyway, he's got the Loki familia's protection. True. Nobody believed that a chef could possess significant combat power, especially one about to join the Loki familia's expedition to the previously uncharted 59th floor of the dungeon. Hey, have you been waiting long? Tiona, familiar as always, slapped Ryu on the shoulder. Not really, I just got here. Ryu politely smiled and nodded. At that moment, Ryu suddenly felt three gazes directed at him. One was naturally from the emotionless Ice Wallenstein. The second, filled with blatant hostility, came from the silver-haired werewolf, Bet Loga. Why do we have to practice team coordination with this guy? Bet's face was the epitome of dissatisfaction. This is an order from me, the captain. Do you have any objections, Bet? Though Finn's face bore a gentle smile, Bet couldn't help but turn his head away, avoiding eye contact. TCH tilde. As for the third gaze, it came from the Yuri-leaning elf girl, Lefia Voridis. Her look at Ryu was more complex, a mix of animosity towards a rival, a hint of admiration, and a touch of shyness. But considering that this girl was best known for her wild imagination, it wasn't surprising at all. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's head into the dungeon now. First, we'll aim to reach the 18th floor in one go. Finn greeted Ryu and then announced the plan. Yeah. The childlike Tiona and the Finn-obsessed Tion immediately responded enthusiastically to Finn's call. The entire vanguard team was almost fully assembled, except for the dwarf shield warrior Gareth. As for that dwarf warrior, it was said that dwarves also worked as part-time blacksmiths, so it made the most sense for him to handle the expedition preparations. Even so, up until the 17th floor, the monsters they encountered were swept away by the Loki familia, leaving Ryu with hardly any opportunity to act. Until they reached the 17th floor. Ryu followed the team into a massive space. This space was over 10 meters high and about the size of a football field. To their left was a huge ice wall, and directly opposite the entrance they came through was the entrance to the 18th floor. Perhaps due to the ice wall, the originally dimly lit dungeon suddenly became brighter here. Strangely enough, such a vast and open space was devoid of any monsters. Ryu couldn't tell if it was his imagination, but as soon as they stepped into this space, the atmosphere around them seemed to tense up involuntarily. Even the Loki familia, who had been playing around as if on a picnic, became alert as if facing a formidable enemy. Finn, we've reached the Wall of Lamentation, Reveria reminded solemnly. I know, everyone, don't hold back. Let's finish this quickly, Finn decided promptly. As if responding to their presence, the entire space began to change. The frost-covered area started to emit a faint steam. Crack. A loud noise resounded as a massive fissure appeared on the smooth ice wall. It's here. Reveria reminded once again. Everyone, be on guard. Finn shouted, positioning his dual spears behind him for maximum leverage. Wait. Ryu, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. Huh? What the hell are you trying to do, you bastard? The werewolf Bet questioned irritably. Ryu ignored him and turned directly to Finn. How about letting me handle the Goliath? Are you serious? Finn's eyes narrowed. After all, I want to stretch my muscles a bit too. Plus, isn't this a good opportunity to understand each other better? Once you've seen my abilities, we'll trust each other more. Besides, a mere Goliath shouldn't be much of a concern for the Loki familia, right? Finn bit his thumb in thought for a moment before agreeing to Ryu's proposal. All right, you handle the Goliath alone. Ice, Tion, you two provide cover but don't interfere. In just that short time, the ice wall had been completely torn apart from within. A giant over 10 meters tall, naked and genderless, emerged from the ice wall. Its entire body was covered in purplish black skin, resembling an enlarged zombie. Its eye sockets were pitch black, with only red hollow circles where the pupils should be. Its head sported dry, straw-like white hair, and its entire body exuded a foul stench. As soon as it broke free from the ice, it raised its giant hand, which was twice the size of a person, and slammed it down towards the team. Scatter, move to the corners and clear the battlefield. Finn immediately commanded. Almost as soon as he gave the order, the years of teamwork allowed the Loki familia members to act instantly, spreading out. Except for Lefia, who lacked combat experience and stood frozen for a moment, only to be quickly pulled aside by Tiona. Ryu accelerated, dodging the Goliath's massive hand, and then swiftly began drawing in the air. Suddenly, flashes of magical light appeared, and the primordial runes were swiftly cast upon him. What kind of magic is that? From a distance, Reveria's eyes narrowed. Even as the foremost magician in Orario, she had never seen such magic before. Moreover, this magic seemed to be more inclined towards self-enhancement. It was fast and difficult to interrupt, almost as if it was tailor-made for adventurers. As a master magician, she immediately recognized the value of this magic. She could also clearly see that Ryu was using at least 4 different types of magic. This was impossible according to common sense. Humans are not like elves, who are naturally magical beings. Even with a blessing, each person could only have a maximum of 3 magic slots, meaning they could only learn 3 different types of magic. This defied all common logic. Could it be? Reveria exchanged a glance with Finn, instantly thinking of the possibility that Loki had mentioned. The awakened bloodline of a hero. Beside them, Ice watched as Ryu cast one spell after another on himself, her pale golden eyes shining brilliantly. As a user of enhancement magic herself, she naturally understood the boost this kind of magic could give to one's strength. Ignoring the odd looks from everyone around, Ryu finished casting the rune spells on himself, and then forcefully leapt into the air. He aimed a punch at Goliath's ugly, giant face. Ryu's fist was no bigger than a needle compared to Goliath's head, yet this needle struck Goliath's face with immense force, causing the giant to reel to the side. Roar. Goliath let out a roar mixed with pain and anger. A large part of its face was visibly sunken, clearly indicating that its facial bones were broken. Ryu, relentless, drew a rune with the meaning of fire in midair, aiming at Goliath's eyes. Boom. A scorching flame erupted out of nowhere, burning fiercely around Goliath's eyes. Goliath howled in agony, instinctively covering its eyes with its massive hands, its huge body crashing around like an out-of-control train. Large chunks of ice and stone shattered, making the entire space feel as if it was raining hail. The members of the Loki familia had to scatter to avoid the debris. Ryu, relentless, aimed another punch at Goliath's knee. Crack. With a loud noise, Goliath's leg bent into a strange shape. Seeing the floor boss being beaten almost helplessly, the members of the Loki familia wore complex expressions. That guy is amazing, Tiona exclaimed in awe. TCH tilde. The werewolf Bet grumbled unhappily. Ice, though silent, had a noticeably more intense gaze. Watching her, Lefia, who was hiding nearby, had teary eyes, feeling as though her beloved toy had been taken away. With the strength of the Loki Familia, it was easy to find out when Ryu appeared at the Hostess of Fertility. They had almost confirmed Ryu's identity but had tacitly agreed not to publicize it. However, as core members of the Loki Familia, Ryu's secret had already spread among them. This was what made it so shocking. In just one short month, he had gone from an ordinary person without a blessing to now completely suppressing a level 4 floor boss, the giant Goliath. It was like a hero's tale straight out of a novel. At this moment, the battle situation also began to change. Support me at patreon.com/absolutekode. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutekode. FGO 22. It is not in a monster's nature to passively take a beating without retaliating. Just as Ryu continued his relentless attacks, Goliath suddenly turned to face him, mouth wide open, completely pausing its movements. Ryu was puzzled. Get out of the way, a frantic voice shouted. It was Reveria, urgently calling out to him. Finn also instinctively tightened his grip on his dual spears, his legs slightly bent, ready to rush in and assist at any moment. Not far away, Ice and Tion had already drawn their weapons and prepared for battle. Suddenly, a massive amount of visible air surged towards Goliath's gaping maw. What is that? Ryu suddenly recalled a scene from the original work. Before he could dodge, the air in Goliath's mouth compressed inward and then burst out, forming a white line that shot toward him in the light. An air cannon. This was the floor boss, the giant Goliath's unique magic. It inhaled a large volume of air in one breath, compressed it with magical power, and then blasted it at the target. Any fluid, when subjected to a certain level of pressure, becomes significantly more powerful. The air cannon worked on this principle. The compressed air projectile was as potent as any cannonball, and its invisibility made it even harder to dodge or defend against. Since he couldn't dodge, he wouldn't. Ryu's eyes turned serious. He pulled out a healing potion and gulped it down, then crossed his arms to protect his head, crouching low to the ground. Bang! A faint explosion echoed through the air, and the ground around him was instantly blasted into a 5-meter wide crater. Only the ground where Ryu stood remained intact, like an isolated island in the sea. A large amount of white steam rose from Ryu's body. Fortunately, his endurance attributes were high, and his body's defense was comparable to light iron armor. Additionally, he had preemptively drawn several defensive primordial runes. Apart from some redness on his exposed skin, he was unharmed. What incredible defense, Finn couldn't help but praise. Several of the girls' eyes widened, staring unblinkingly at Ryu, who seemed like an ancient hero challenging a giant alone. That was quite a hit. Powerful. Now it's my turn. Ryu wiped a bit of blood from the corner of his mouth. Though the air cannon hadn't broken through his defense, its powerful shock had caused significant internal injuries. However, he had foreseen this and drank a healing potion beforehand. Thanks to the system-produced healing potion, his internal organs were rapidly recovering. At that moment, Goliath seemed to have gotten a taste for it and aimed its mouth at Ryu again, clearly intending to launch another air cannon. You're addicted to this. Die. With his internal injuries mostly healed, Ryu stomped hard on the ground, causing it to crack, and shot toward Goliath's head like an arrow from a bow. With a rising uppercut, he sent Goliath's massive body reeling backward. He followed through, charging toward the stone ceiling and flipping to stand on it. Boom. Blood-red magical energy surged from his body. This was the vast magical power he had absorbed from the air cannon using the noble phantasm, crying warmonger. The excess magical power churned within Ryu, causing him intense pain as if he were about to explode. Some of his capillaries burst, spraying fine blood mist, turning him into a bloodied figure. Blood-red magic, a blood-covered man. He looked like a raging beast descending. Bang. Ryu's legs bent like springs, and the immense force created a large crater in the solid stone ceiling. Using the combined force of the recoil and gravity, he shot toward Goliath's head at a speed 3 to 4 times faster than when he had leapt up. While still in midair, a black magical aura began to emanate from Ryu's right arm. He clenched his fist and aimed it fiercely at Goliath's head. Boom. The midair strike hit Goliath's head squarely. With tremendous force and an abundance of magical energy, Goliath's enormous head, as big as a small house, was instantly blasted apart. As blood splattered, Goliath's massive body suddenly turned into a white ice mist, dissipating in all directions. Thud. A magic stone, about the size of a human, dropped to the ground, creating a large pit. However, a surprising scene unfolded. Instead of dispersing into the air and being absorbed by the dungeon, the mysterious energy that constituted Goliath was drawn into Ryu's body, much like swallows returning to their nest. To be precise, the vast energy was channeled by the powerful mysterious system within him. A reluctant roar full of resentment echoed faintly from the dungeon, but it retreated unwillingly before some external, powerful mysterious force. Apart from Finn and Reveria, the other members of the Loki Familia didn't pay much attention to this scene. Finn and Reveria exchanged glances, seeing the gravity in each other's eyes. That was amazing. You took down Goliath all by yourself, and that last move was especially cool. Tiona exclaimed, jumping around Ryu excitedly. TCH tilde I could have taken down a monster of that level by myself too, Bet muttered. Though he still found Ryu annoying, Bet's straightforward nature meant he couldn't deny Ryu's displayed strength, even if he wouldn't say it out loud. Ryu didn't mind Bet's blunt personality. At least he wasn't two-faced, unlike some people. However, Ryu's solo defeat of Goliath had the most impact on the airheaded Ice. Her usually expressionless, exquisite face showed rare signs of urgency. What do I need to do to become as strong as you, and so quickly? In her haste, she forgot to keep Ryu's identity a secret. Ice. Tiona quickly tried to signal her with her eyes and gestures. But Ice, stubborn as she was, ignored Tiona's hints and stared intently at Ryu with her pale golden eyes. Hearing Ice's question, Ryu realized his hidden identity might have been exposed. The Loki Familia was indeed formidable, discovering his secret so quickly. Fortunately, Ryu was prepared for this, and with his current strength, he no longer needed to fear the Ishtar Familia. As for Ice's question, Ryu couldn't possibly answer her truthfully. Should he say that his rapid growth in strength was all thanks to the system's cheats? Suddenly, Ryu thought of something, and a mischievous smile flashed across his face. Because I have a great shisho. Ice's eyes lit up instantly, her gaze filled with an unmistakable longing that anyone could understand. But Ryu deliberately kept her in suspense, unwilling to reveal any more. All right, Ice, don't pry into other people's privacy. Finn intervened to smooth things over. Ice's eyes showed a glimmer of disappointment, but the final look she gave Ryu was clear. I won't give up. What a stubborn young lady, Ryu thought, smiling wryly. I apologize for that child's rudeness. She meant no harm. She just doesn't know how to express her thoughts correctly. Finn approached with an apologetic smile. Don't worry about it. I find such straightforwardness quite likable, Ryu replied with a smile, waving his hand dismissively. Is that so? Unfortunately, that child is the treasure of our familia and won't be given away easily, Finn smiled back. I just don't get the friendship between men, Tiona interjected, looking bored as she placed her hands behind her head. Ah tilde, Captain, you're so manly tilde. Tion, who was obsessed with Finn, swooned habitually. Meanwhile, Lefia, who had a bit of a crush on Ice, looked even more conflicted as she glanced at Ryu. So impressive, he seems to be around my age. Miss Ice and him look so well matched. I'm completely out of the running, sobbed Tilda. And so, the group, full of laughter and banter, passed through the tunnels of the 17th floor and arrived at a wondrous new world. This was the 18th floor, a rare safe zone. The ceiling was adorned with countless crystals, refracting light from the surface layer by layer, making the entire 18th floor as bright as the surface. In the middle of the floor stood a towering tree, surrounded by a dense jungle. Amidst the jungle, a small town could be seen faintly. Ryu withdrew his gaze and focused on the system. As for the magic stone that had fallen earlier, since he couldn't use the system's storage space in front of the Loki Familia, he generously gifted it to them. Bet had already run off to personally deliver it back to the surface. After killing the giant Goliath, Ryu's attributes had all increased slightly. Name, Nguyen Ryu. Race, human. Class, none. Level, servant. Basic attributes. Strength, 20.5, E. Agility, 20.3, E. Endurance, 22.1, E. Magic, 20.3, E. For ordinary people, the average attribute is 10, except for magic. Below 10 is F, between 15 and 20 is E, and so on. Luck. Class skills. Item creation E, 2%. Personal skills. Beginner cold weapon mastery, 31%. Mana burst E, 37%. Primordial runes E, 4%. Noble phantasms. Crying warmonger, B rank, downgraded. With all of Ryu's basic attributes reaching E, his level had risen from unranked to servant. Level E is the minimum threshold for a servant. Moreover, after a long period of monster hunting, Ryu had accumulated over 70,000 energy points, enough to exchange for a better pair of gloves. But what concerned Ryu the most wasn't these things. Congratulations, you have obtained the Mystic Code, Goliath the Giant. Closing square bracket. The Mystic Code system is now officially activated. Closing square bracket. Name, Giant, Goliath. Rarity, 1 star. Attributes, increases strength by 3 points, endurance by 5 points. Skill, super speed regeneration. Utilizes magic to recover from injuries at an extremely fast rate. Closing square bracket. The Mystic Code equipment slot is now open. Your current level, servant, allowing you to equip up to 3 Mystic Codes. Closing square bracket. A bronze card appeared in the storage space. The front depicted a giant with gray-black skin roaring at the sky. The back showed a complex, mysterious magic circle. Ryu used his mind to open the so-called Mystic Code slot and immediately found 9 slots in total. Only 3 were lit up, while the other 6 had locked symbols. Following the system's guidance, Ryu used his mind to drag his only Mystic Code into one of the slots. Click. A light sound echoed in his mind. As soon as the Mystic Code card was installed, it began to shine with a bronze light. Ryu suddenly felt a surge of inexplicable power within him. Without even checking, he knew he had become stronger. The attribute enhancement was secondary. The key was the skill, super speed regeneration, which completely compensated for his weakness. With this skill, a perfect cycle was formed. Injured, under the effect of the noble phantasm, crying warmonger, magic would rapidly recover. With ample magic supply, super speed regeneration would take effect, quickly healing injuries, and enabling him to withstand more damage. It could be said that if the battle dragged into a war of attrition, Ryu feared no one. Finn, the atmosphere in the town feels strange. Riveria, with her keen senses, suddenly spoke up. Her words brought Ryu back to reality from the system. Indeed, the flow of people has significantly decreased, Finn responded, touching his chin thoughtfully. Finn, it looks like many people are heading that way, Tiona said, putting her hand to her forehead to shade her eyes as she looked. Let's go, we'll check it out, Finn decided promptly. The group walked through the streets, arriving at the end in front of a building that appeared to be an inn. At this moment, many adventurers were gathered outside the inn, peeking inside curiously. Finn spotted a familiar face and called out, Boars. A middle-aged man with an eye patch over one eye was hurrying towards the inn. Hearing Finn's call, he stopped and turned around. TCH tilde it's you guys, the Loki Familia. Of all times, you had to come during such a troublesome moment, the one-eyed man grumbled, scratching the back of his head irritably. What happened? Finn asked. Since you're here, you might as well see for yourselves, Boars replied, leading the way inside. The group exchanged puzzled glances at their conversation, except for Ryu, whose eyes flashed with a hint of realization. Indeed, the event that marked the beginning had occurred. Either the storm caused by his butterfly effect wasn't strong enough, or the worlds will forcibly pull events back on track. However, it's unfortunate. I'm the most rebellious. Don't expect me to follow anyone else's script. Last night, there was a murder in Villy's inn, Boars said as he led the way inside. What? Everyone was shocked. They never expected to encounter a murder on what was supposed to be a short trip. What are the details? Finn's expression turned serious. Last night, a woman and a man in full armor rented out the entire inn. When Villy returned in the morning, he found the man dead and the woman missing. Boars recounted as he led them forward. They arrived in front of a room with thick curtains hanging over the entrance. Even before they lifted the curtain, a strong stench of blood hit them. Luckily, none of them were novices who would be deterred by the sight of blood. Even the less experienced Lefia only furrowed her brows. Don't say I didn't warn you. The scene inside is quite gruesome, Boars said with a malicious grin, his gaze sweeping over the group and lingering a bit longer on the women, making his intentions clear. Without waiting for a response, Boars lifted the curtain. The other girls managed to keep their composure, but Lefia's eyes widened, and she let out a small gasp. Blood was sprayed in a radial pattern, staining a large area of the surroundings. The source of the blood was a headless, naked corpse lying face down on the floor, with only a white cloth covering the neck stump. A young dog man sat despondently on the bed, presumably the innkeeper Villy, whom Boars had mentioned. The inn was located on the 18th floor of the dungeon, catering exclusively to adventurers. Since adventurers were a superstitious lot, news of a murder in his inn would significantly impact his business. Do you know the identity of the deceased? Finn asked calmly, unaffected by the gruesome scene. No, we don't. Yesterday, the man was wearing full armor, Villy, the innkeeper, replied despondently, clutching his head. The blessing on his back is not visible. It seems to be sealed, Riveria analyzed. That's why I got this, Boars said, holding up a bottle of liquid that looked like red ink. Unlocking potion. Defiling a corpse is not an honorable act, Riveria, with her strong sense of justice, frowned. At a time like this, who cares about that? Boars, without any hesitation, uncorked the bottle and dripped some of the unlocking potions onto the back of the headless corpse. For a seasoned mercenary like him, everything was about practicality and profit. Honor? Justice? Can you eat those? As the light red liquid touched the corpse's back, it rippled like a stone thrown into calm water, revealing a pattern centered around an elephant's head. Hey, you're a royal elf, right? You should understand the divine script. Come take a look, Boars called out bluntly to Riveria. Since blessings were gifts from the gods, the text on them was written in divine script, which only a few knowledgeable mortals could read. Sigh. Riveria sighed but stepped forward to read the script carefully. Affiliation, Ganesha Familia, name, Hashana Drulia, level. Riveria paused in surprise, LV, 4. Impossible, an LV, 4 adventurer killed without any resistance. Boars exclaimed, and everyone else was equally shocked. An LV, 4 adventurer had his neck snapped without any signs of struggle, indicating that the attacker completely overpowered him. To achieve such a feat, the assailant must be at least LV, 5 or higher. Given that the primary suspect was the missing woman, this significantly narrowed down the list of suspects. And in all of Orario, the most likely suspect was. The atmosphere grew tense. The murderer is a woman. Boars' expression turned serious. And she was able to kill an LV, 4 adventurer. Villy swallowed hard. They both instinctively looked toward the members of the Loki Familia. Indeed, as one of the two largest factions in Orario, almost all the adventurers above LV5 were concentrated in the Loki and Freya familias. Moreover, the Freya familia did not accept female adventurers, whereas the Loki familia had several female adventurers above LV5. No matter how you looked at it, the members of the Loki familia were the most suspicious, especially since they happened to be present at the scene, which further increased the suspicion. There is only one truth. The Loki familia, the culprit must be one of you. Bors, channeling the spirit of a certain child detective, began to deduce, one of you must be hiding as the murderer, sneaking here last night to kill the victim, then escaping, and now pretending to have just arrived today. Ha, ha, ha. Lefia, unable to contain herself, shouted in shock and confusion. So the culprit is, you. Bors's sharp gaze swept over the girls of the Loki familia. However, when his gaze landed on the flat-chested Tiona, he immediately skipped over her, which made her furious. When his gaze landed on the well-endowed Tion, his expression suddenly became lewd. You are the most suspicious. Villy, standing next to him, also had a lewd look on his face. Yes, you must have used your charms to lure him, leaving him defenseless and then killing him. The two of them appeared to be righteous, but their lewd expressions revealed their ill intentions to anyone who looked. Bang! The ground cracked under Tion's foot, and she looked like an enraged mother dragon. If you keep looking at me with those perverted eyes, I'll tear your precious parts to shreds. Yikes. Bors and Villy instinctively covered their groins, faces full of fear. Ahem, if the murder involved seduction, then their suspicion would be reduced, Ryu, who had been observing the whole time, suddenly said. Huh, and who are you? Bors looked Ryu up and down, finding him unfamiliar. He didn't seem to be a member of the Loki familia, nor was he a high-level adventurer he recognized. Having lost face after Tion's intimidation, Bors wanted to regain some dignity and spoke arrogantly. Boom. Ryu casually shattered a nearby stone pedestal with his hand, then nonchalantly said, before you speak, let me remind you, to be careful with your words. Offend the wrong person, and you won't even know how you died. Please, go ahead. Bors immediately chose to back down. Ryu gave him a half smile. This guy was a seasoned rogue, with a thick skin to match. Ignoring such people, Ryu continued his analysis. If seduction was involved, then any female adventurer, no, even male adventurers who are more attractive than female adventurers could be suspects, regardless of their level. Support me at patreon.com/absolutecode. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO 23. After all, as adventurers, you should be familiar with poisons and narcotics. And look here. Ryu pointed to the disheveled backpack of the deceased. The backpack shows signs of being rummaged through, but nothing was taken. The killer was not after money. This murder was premeditated. Ryu's analysis immediately caught everyone's attention, eliciting looks of surprise and admiration directed at him. Inwardly, Ryu was secretly amused, knowing the plot does give authorization to anything. Amidst the respectful and admiring glances, Ryu continued his analysis. Let's return to the killer's actions. Since we all know about unlocking potions, destroying the victim's head does not serve to hide their identity. However, given the purposeful nature of the killer, how do we explain her actions? Ryu paused, giving everyone a moment to process and think before continuing. So, it's clear that the victim's head wasn't destroyed but was taken by the killer for some purpose. Confidence gleamed in Ryu's eyes. Why would she do that? Bors exclaimed in astonishment. Ryu's logical deductions earned him the crowd's respect, naturally aligning them with his pace. For instance, she might have skinned the victim's face to disguise herself as a man. Given that, as eyewitnesses, you all suspect the woman who came with the victim the most, it's highly likely that a search would be requested for female adventurers, leaving male adventurers in a blind spot. During this period, the killer, disguised as the victim, could blend in unnoticed. Moreover, considering that the killer chose to disguise and hide rather than flee after committing the murder, it's clear that her objective hasn't been achieved yet. What she's looking for hasn't been found, and her target might still be in town. Wow, that's amazing. Tiona exclaimed, wide-eyed and open-mouthed. Ice, though silent, looked at Ryu with admiration. Even Lefia, who usually saw him as a rival, couldn't help but gaze at him with deep respect. Finn and Riveria looked on in appreciation. Everywhere, a wise strategist is always more respected than a powerful warrior, and combining both traits garners even more admiration. So, what should we do? Bors instinctively asked. Since the opponent chose to hide, it's because she hasn't obtained what she wanted and is confident in her disguise. Let's use this to our advantage. First, we pretend not to see through her plan and assign 2 people to assist you in searching for female adventurers, while the rest secretly observe the male adventurers. Ryu then turned his gaze to the innkeeper Villy. The victim's armor is missing. You should remember its general appearance, right? Villy, meeting Ryu's sharp gaze, nodded repeatedly. Good, skin on the face isn't natural, so she's likely to cover her head and face. Focus on male adventurers wearing full armor, especially those covering their heads and faces. Ryu asserted confidently. Soon, everyone began acting according to Ryu's strategy. Bors immediately gathered the adventurers staying in town and lecherously proposed searching for female adventurers. While this gained him numerous accolades from male comrades, it also earned the hatred of female adventurers. Watching the lively scene, Ryu, hidden in the shadows, keenly observed every suspicious figure. With such a commotion, you must be getting uneasy, Revis. At this moment, Ryu was positioned beside the inn's second floor sign. Using the sign for cover, he could easily observe all the adventurers below. Almost all adventurers' attention was drawn to Bors at the entrance, making it the perfect time to observe. For added security, Ryu pulled Villy aside for immediate identification. Just then, a unique figure caught Ryu's eye. He was dressed in a full black suit of armor, his head wrapped like an Arab. Even among the bizarrely dressed adventurers, this outfit was exceedingly strange. It's her. Seeing that figure, Ryu immediately identified her. Dressed so oddly and wrapped so tightly, it was as if she had, I am the killer, written all over her. Is it her? To be sure, Ryu quickly grabbed Villy and whispered. Although Villy's eyesight wasn't as good as Ryu's, such a unique outfit was memorable. After a glance, he nodded immediately, yes, when that man came yesterday, he was wearing that armor. Upon confirmation, Ryu's gaze sharpened. Perhaps Revis, with her strong abilities, was extremely sensitive to being watched. When Ryu's gaze turned back to her, she immediately looked back. Their eyes met in midair. Seeing those non-human, dragon-like vertical pupils filled with indifference to life, Ryu couldn't help but be startled. This woman had stained her hands with blood countless times, was utterly ruthless, and had completely lost any human values. She was a beast in human skin. Acting decisively, Ryu immediately leapt out of the window. This action instantly drew countless eyes. While he was still in midair, the adventurers below all looked up. She's the killer, catch her. Seeing that he'd achieved his goal, Ryu immediately pointed directly at Revis. Countless eyes followed Ryu's gesture. Revis's outfit was indeed too suspicious. Coupled with Ryu's shout, a preconceived impression immediately formed. Many adventurers already had their hands on their weapons, eyes fixed on the figure wrapped in armor. TCH, exposed, huh? Though it was a man's face, a cold female voice came out, further confirming Ryu's accusation. Some impatient adventurers immediately drew their weapons, aiming at Revis. The members of the Loki familia had already surrounded her even before Ryu's signal. Revis, now the target of everyone and surrounded, showed no panic on her face. Instead, she calmly tore off the human skin mask, pulling out a piece of bamboo. Stop her. Ryu immediately warned. Perhaps because the killer was surrounded, everyone was somewhat relaxed. When she brought the bamboo to her lips, they hesitated before reacting and attacking. Unfortunately, they were a bit too late, and a sharp screech came from the bamboo. Having done this, Revis suddenly drew a massive sword from her lower back. Arrows, hidden weapons, and other long-range attacks were swept aside by the violent whirlwind. Finn and Ice, who had enhanced wind magic, attacked next. An experienced level 6 and an enhanced level 5 whose strength rivaled that of a level 6. These attacks couldn't be ignored by Revis. Her sword storm was forcibly stopped by their attacks. However, the few seconds of delay were enough. Suddenly, the water in the town's central lake began to churn, and a dozen giant, carnivorous plant-like monsters leapt out, attacking the crowd. These monsters had tough skin and tenacious vitality. Aside from their fear of fire, they had almost no weaknesses, and even handling them as level 5s was challenging. Not to mention, most of the adventurers gathered on the 18th floor were below level 4. Facing a group of terrifying carnivorous plants, the adventurers fell into chaos, each acting on their own. The excellent situation was ruined by a bunch of incompetent allies, and Ryu couldn't help but think, GG. Seeing Revis showing signs of escaping, Ryu, in a panic, shouted directly at the Loki Familia, Finn, Ice, and I will deal with this woman. Amazon sisters, protect the mages and handle those carnivorous plants. The members of the Loki Familia were startled and instinctively looked at Finn, who gave Ryu a meaningful glance and immediately said, do as he says. Thus, under the protection of the Amazon sisters, the two elven female mages immediately began chanting single-target spells, accurately sniping the man-eating plants one by one. The adventurers, regaining their composure, quickly joined the ranks of those besieging the man-eating plants. In no time, the dozen or so man-eating plants were eradicated one by one. Meanwhile, on another battlefield, under the combined efforts of Ice and Finn, Revis, fighting 1 against 2, surprisingly did not fall behind. She fought while retreating, eventually reaching a rocky area filled with crystal stones. Ryu, whose agility attribute was significantly lower, arrived at the battlefield to find the three of them in a triangular standoff. As Ryu arrived, all 3 pairs of eyes turned towards him. Ice and Finn greeted him with friendly nods, but Revis's eyes were filled with obvious cold-killing intent. Ryu's earlier act of exposing her had landed him on her must-kill list. This wins Aura. Revis faced Ice with a reminiscent expression. I see, so you are Arya. Who are you? How do you know that name? Ice's previously calm and serene face immediately showed extreme agitation. Finn, standing nearby, also furrowed his brows. Ice's background was a secret known only to the top 3 members of the Loki Familia and the goddess Loki herself. Revis did not answer Ice's question. Instead, as she began stripping off her armor, she coldly said, although I can't achieve my primary goal, taking Arya back with me will be just as good. As Revis removed her heavy armor, her well-toned and slender figure was revealed. Coupled with her short blood-red hair, heroic face, and dragon-like vertical pupils, she exuded a dangerous aura akin to that of a mother leopard. Seeing Ice somewhat losing her fighting spirit, Finn immediately prepared to launch a preemptive strike. At that moment, a sudden change occurred. Ah! From the crystal stone cluster not far away, a scream rang out. A slightly dark-skinned canine girl ran out, chased by a man-eating plant. Damn, I forgot about this. Ryu's face showed a look of annoyance. This canine girl, named Lulun Loi, had stolen a seed containing a part of the demi-spirit. The man-eating plant behind her was attracted by the seed, and she had unfortunately run straight into their battlefield. Ryu couldn't help but suspect she was deliberately causing trouble. As expected, Ryu's ominous premonition came true. Feeling the magical ore emanating from Ice, a transparent orb with a beast-like infant inside suddenly flew out of the canine girl's satchel. As soon as it flew out, the creature inside the orb emitted a sharp screech. Ryu and the others merely found it slightly ear-piercing, but for Ice, who shared a similar bloodline, the impact was much greater. Her pale golden pupils suddenly dilated, and she seemed unable to stand, swaying to one side. The cold-hearted Revis would not miss such a golden opportunity and immediately launched an attack on Ice. As Revis moved, Finn followed suit, meeting her in front of Ice, resulting in a fierce exchange once again. To make matters worse, the orb in midair suddenly began to expand and then exploded. The lizard-like creature inside flew out, latched onto the man-eating plant, and bit down hard. The spot where the man-eating plant was bitten immediately swelled up as if something was about to burst out. Eventually, from the flower's core grew a faceless, vaguely woman-shaped upper body monster. This monstrosity, which evolved from the man-eating plant, immediately launched an attack on Ryu and the others, particularly targeting the collapsed Ice. Ryu quickly dashed over and helped Ice up. Her faint fragrance and doll-like exquisite face would ordinarily be the best aphrodisiac for a man. However, with a formidable enemy at hand, Ryu couldn't afford any distractions, dodging left and right with Ice in tow. Knowing that prolonged defense leads to inevitable failure, Ryu steeled himself and shouted to Finn, who was still entangled with Revis, Finn, you deal with that monster. Leave this red-haired woman to me. Finn, after hearing this, swiftly kicked Revis away, and the two faced off once more. Can you handle it? Finn asked without turning his head, his eyes fixed on Revis. I have to, whether I can or not, Ryu replied in a brief moment. Seeing Finn hesitate, Ryu quickly persuaded him, I'm better at dealing with people than monsters, and Reveria and the others will be here to support us soon. I just need to hold on for a while. Finn only thought for a moment before agreeing to his suggestion. He left with just a hold on and charged toward the mutated man eating flower. Ryu then said to Ice beside him, Ice, if you don't pull yourself together, we're all going to die here today. Let go of me. Hearing this, Ice's stubbornness flared up. She immediately broke free from Ryu's hand and tried to stand firm. What a foolish decision. No matter how much you resist, it's useless, Ice. Even if I can only take your corpse, it doesn't matter, Rivisi said without even glancing at Ryu, her vertical pupils fixed on Ice. Ice glared back at her defiantly. Rivisi sneered, her figure flickered, and she instantly appeared in front of Ice, swinging her giant sword down at her. Ice immediately used her thin sword to block Rivisi's attack. Unfortunately, even in peak condition with her wind magic enhancement, Ice was no match for Rivisi, let alone in her current weakened state. Their struggle lasted less than 10 seconds before Ice was sent flying by Rivisi's powerful strike. Just as she was about to crash into the rock wall, a figure suddenly appeared behind her, firmly protecting her while crashing into the wall, leaving a human-shaped crater. It was Ryu, who was a step too late. Ryu felt as if all his bones were about to break. Ice quickly stood up from his embrace and gave him an apologetic look. Ryu struggled to pull himself out of the crater. Seeing Ice eager to attack Revis again, he quickly grabbed her small hand and dragged her behind him. Don't push yourself too hard. Sometimes you should learn to rely on others. But Ice hesitated. She knew she wasn't a match for Revis in her current state, but her stubborn nature was acting up. On the other side, Revis was preparing to attack again, aware that time was not on her side. To prevent Revis from targeting Ice again, Ryu had to talk trash to distract her. You brute, with such strength, aren't you afraid you won't get married? Revis remained indifferent. Having lost human values, she was driven solely by her obsessions, discarding everything else. Ryu had an idea and spoke again. Do you know why you were recognized? Your plan was seen through by me from the beginning. Such petty tricks, have you lost your mind? Ryu taunted Revis with a mocking tone. That's right, with such strength, you must have used the nutrients for brain development on building muscles. Is your brain full of muscles? Even a clay figurine has some temper, not to mention Ryu was hitting her sore spot, and he was the culprit who ruined her plan. Revis's expression did not change, having lost all human shame. However, her rising killing intent made it clear to Ryu that she was furious. Boom. With a loud noise, the crystal stone under Revis's feet shattered into pieces, and she appeared in front of Ryu as if she had teleported. The giant sword mercilessly pierced his chest. Ice, who was behind him, was instantly splattered with his blood. Judging by the position where the sword pierced, part of Ryu's heart was cut. In this situation, without a miraculous elixir, he was beyond saving. Moreover, even if there was a miraculous elixir, Revis would never allow him to drink it. That's all you've got. Revis's cold face showed a hint of mockery, thinking he was all talk but so weak. In Rivisi's eyes, Ryu was already a dead man. Not bad, that hit the spot. Who would have thought that the seemingly dead Ryu would suddenly reach out and grab her sword-wielding hand tightly? You. Revis looked at him in shock and uncertainty, but the young man before her showed no signs of being on the brink of death. Now it's my turn. Ryu didn't wait for her to pull back her arm. Blood-red magical energy surged wildly as he clenched his right fist and aimed a fierce punch at Revis's face. Bang. The spot where Revis's face was struck instantly caved in, and she was sent flying by the immense force, crashing through several crystal pillars. Only then did Ryu, enduring immense pain, pull out the giant sword embedded in his chest. His super speed regeneration combined with the crying warmonger was truly terrifying. As long as Ryu's head wasn't severed or his heart completely shattered, the immense magic power provided by the noble phantasm allowed him to rapidly recover using super speed regeneration. Ice, standing behind Ryu, watched his blood soak back without blinking. At that moment, his back seemed to merge with the image of the person who had sheltered her from storms in her memory. Dad. Ice called out softly. Unfortunately, Ryu didn't hear her, otherwise, he would have had something to say about it. Young lady, I haven't even married, where did I get a daughter as big as you? Crash. Revis pushed aside the pile of crystal stones and stood up, the cheek that Ryu had punched was only slightly swollen. Ah. Revis spat out a mouthful of blood, her cold eyes swept over Ryu's wounded chest, noticing it was healing at a visibly rapid pace. The gaping wound, originally the length of a palm, had shrunk to the size of a fingertip. Monster, Revis spat out the word coldly. You're not qualified to say that, thick-skinned lady, Ryu sneered, his right fist still trembling slightly. The moment he struck Revis's face, it felt like hitting a tank's armor. Even with the protection of his gauntlet, the powerful recoil made his fingers twitch uncontrollably. Sharp-tongued, I wonder if your mouth will still be so tough after I cut off your head. Revis's expression remained unchanged, but her tone carried a palpable anger. If you can do it, why not try? Ryu sneered, beckoning with his finger. Bang. Both sides attacked almost simultaneously. However, the disparity in their attributes quickly put Ryu at a severe disadvantage. It seems your strength doesn't match your mouth, Revis mocked as she swung her greatsword fiercely, each strike aiming for Ryu's neck, clearly intending to keep her earlier promise. While Revis still had the leisure to taunt during the fierce battle, Ryu was forced into a purely defensive position. What's wrong? Is this all the strength you have? Revis shouted as she swung her greatsword with all her might. Crack, crack. Two simultaneous cracking sounds rang out as both the greatsword and Ryu's gauntlet shattered in half. A huge wound was also carved into his left hand. The sudden turn of events caused even the battle-hardened Revis to pause momentarily. Ryu, however, was prepared. He flicked his left hand, sending a splash of blood onto Revis's face. With her eyes covered in blood, the experienced Revis didn't immediately wipe it off with both hands. Instead, she protected her chest with one hand while using the other to wipe the blood away, quickly retreating in small steps. But no matter how swift her reaction, she couldn't outpace Ryu's premeditated move. He swiftly extended his intact right hand and made a gesture in the air. Just as Revis wiped the blood from around her eyes, a large ball of flame engulfed her. The magical flames, ignited by the primordial rune, were far more powerful than ordinary magical flames, spreading over her body in an instant even without any accelerant. Support me at patreon.com/absolutecode. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Win Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO 24. As the flames gradually dissipated, they revealed Revis, whose body was covered in burns. However, to Ryu's surprise, even after taking a direct hit from a magical flame, Revis showed no sign of weakness. Instead, she became even more ferocious and terrifying, like a wounded beast. Just as Ryu was at a loss, a deafening scream erupted from a distance. The mutated man-eating plant had finally fallen under the siege of the Loki Familia. In no time, several figures rushed over, firmly protecting Ice and Ryu behind them. Is the situation unfavorable? It seems we have to wait until next time. Revis's gaze pierced through the crowd, landing on Ice. Ice, next time I will take you, even if it's your corpse. With that, Revis leapt backward, landing at the edge of the cliff by the lake. Just as Revis was about to escape using the lake water, Ryu suddenly shouted, "You think you can leave after showing off? Did you ask me first, Shisho?" The members of the Loki Familia looked at each other in confusion, while Revis, who was preparing to flee, felt a sudden and intense sense of foreboding. Her premonition soon came true. A purple-black figure abruptly appeared beside Revis, delivering a lightning-fast whip kick to her waist. The woman who had been invincible was instantly sent flying without any resistance, crashing heavily into the rock wall like a cannonball. As the dust settled, Revis's miserable form came into view. One arm hung limply, her legs twisted at odd angles, and her waist had a noticeable dent, turning ashen. Her exposed skin was covered in wounds, and she was drenched in blood. Despite her severe injuries, Revis did not utter a sound and continuously struggled to stand up again. But with 3 of her limbs broken, it was impossible. After several futile attempts, Revis finally gave up struggling, closed her eyes, and adopted a pose of heroic sacrifice. On the other side, Scathach, with a proud expression and graceful movements, slowly retracted her long, beautiful leg. She had defeated Revis, who had been a headache for the Loki Familia and Ryu, without even using her signature dual spears. The members of the Loki Familia stared at the powerful Valkyrie by the cliff in utter shock. So amazing. Tiona exclaimed, her eyes wide with admiration. Reveria glanced solemnly at Scathach, then turned slightly towards Finn and asked in a low voice, "Finn?" With years of mutual understanding, Finn knew what she meant even without her finishing the sentence. Finn solemnly nodded and said just 2 words, terrifyingly strong. It was clear who he was referring to. Reveria's eyes immediately showed a hint of shock. Finn was even more astonished than Reveria. Unlike the mage Reveria, as a fellow warrior, Finn sensed that the aura Scathach exuded in that instant was tens, even hundreds of times stronger than the mightiest person he had ever seen, Otter from the Freya Familia. There was only one word to describe it, unfathomable. After that, although Scathach stood there, Finn could no longer sense her presence at all. If he couldn't see her with his own eyes, he would have thought he was hallucinating from exhaustion. Her aura was powerful yet controlled. How high was her martial prowess? When did Orario have such a hidden super strong individual? While Finn and Reveria remained quietly vigilant, Ice's eyes were fixed unblinkingly on Scathach. Ever since Scathach effortlessly defeated Revis with a single kick, Ice had been staring at Scathach with shining, golden eyes, as if she had instantly become her biggest fan. Even Lefia, the lily elf who adored Ice, uncharacteristically showed no hostility towards Scathach this time. Instead, her gaze was filled with admiration, envy, and yearning, as if she were seeing an idol. Watching the Loki Familia become completely subdued, Ryu chuckled inwardly. If not for achieving this effect, why would he have arranged for his Shisho to make such a grand entrance? He wanted them to know that he, too, had powerful backing. Seeing that the desired effect was almost achieved, Ryu stepped out briskly. Everyone. Ryu's voice immediately drew everyone's attention. He made an exaggerated gentleman's bow and said, "Allow me to introduce her properly. This is my familia's goddess, my mentor, and the queen of the land of shadow, Scathach." The members of the Loki familia looked at each other in disbelief. Just then, a voice broke the silence. Impossible. If a god were to enter the dungeon would surely take notice. Upon discovering a god, the dungeon would immediately trigger a mutation and send the nearest floor boss to eliminate the invading god. Revis, her face covered in blood, glared at Scathach with intense eyes. The dungeon identifies gods by their divine power, but don't compare those powerless weaklings with my goddess. However, Ryu's sweeping statements also angered the Loki familia, as their goddess Loki was included in those weaklings. Having revealed his trump card, Ryu no longer cared about their opinions. My goddess achieved the great feat of slaying gods as a mortal martial arts master. Even without using divine power, she can easily kill other gods. Ryu's words left everyone in shock. Anyone doubting Ryu's claims only needed to look at the formidable warrior before them as the best evidence. Scathach, noticing Ryu's proud expression, curled her lips into a playful smile. In her long life, having a disciple leverage her name to intimidate others was a novel experience. Her previous disciples were all muscle-brained brutes with extreme machismo, never thinking to use her name for such purposes. Indeed, an interesting master, Scathach murmured to herself. Given the significant events, the planned joint practice was naturally called off. Revis, the captive, was forcibly taken away by Scathach at Ryu's subtle indication. It was evident that apart from the carefree Tiona and the confused Lefia, the other members of the Loki familia were not pleased. Especially Ice, who desperately wanted to ask about her mother. Finn and Reveria, sharing the same thoughts, wanted to take Revis back for interrogation to obtain the desired information, even if it meant resorting to severe methods. For Tion, who idolized the captain, whatever Finn said was law. Unfortunately, the one with the bigger fist gets to call the shots. Previously, the Loki familia had always dominated with their strength. Today, they found themselves on the weaker side, leaving the two leaders of the Loki familia with mixed feelings. On the way back to the familia castle, Reveria couldn't help but speak up. Finn, should we reconsider allowing that man to join the expedition? Finn, stroking his chin, offered a contrary opinion. Reveria, I think the opposite. If Ryu had malicious intent, he could simply hide his goddess in the shadows. His actions seem more like a display of deterrence to me. It's a strange feeling, though. We, the Loki familia, usually rely on our collective strength to intimidate others. This time, we were the ones being intimidated. It truly shows that in this city of infinite possibilities, anything can happen. Finn smiled wryly. But Reveria, ever cautious, wanted to say something more. Think about it from another angle. Ryu hiding such a trump card might be a great help for this expedition, Finn suggested. You're risking the lives of the entire familia. Reveria's eyebrows shot up in anger. Reveria, we are adventurers. There's never a 100% guarantee in any adventure. Since that's the case, why not take a gamble? We might reap even greater rewards. You're just as you've always been, such a small body housing such immense ambition. Reveria looked at the spirited Finn, her gaze complex. By the way, where's Ice? Finn suddenly noticed someone was missing from the group and asked in surprise. Lefia wore a mournful expression while Tiona teased her and said, Ice. She followed the pretty boy just now. Why didn't you stop her? Finn was both amused and exasperated. Ice told me not to tell you. She said she'd be back before dinner, Tiona replied with a carefree laugh. Idiot, Tiona, her sister Tion smacked her forehead in frustration. The Loki familia's castle isn't this way. Ice, Ryu, about to head back to his dorm, stopped and spoke with a helpless expression. Why is she so strong? Ice ignored his comment and directly asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. Though Ice's expression hardly changed, Ryu could hear the evident anxiety in her voice. I want to know that too. Ryu mentally grumbled but didn't say it out loud. Since he didn't answer, Ice kept her gaze fixed on him. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He thought of an interesting plan. If you want to know, why not ask her directly? Okay. Ice agreed without hesitation. Meet me on the south wall before sunrise tomorrow. Remember, you must come alone. Understood, I'll be there. Ice's eyes brightened, and she nodded firmly. Now, you better hurry back. If you stay too long, Finn will come looking for me. Ryu gently pushed Ice's shoulder, urging her to leave. Ice walked away, looking back every few steps. Returning to his room, Ryu encountered an unexpected surprise. A curvaceous body lay naked on his bed. Could it be that I'm having a streak of good luck with women? Ryu muttered to himself, wondering why people kept ending up naked on his bed lately. Resisting such temptation was truly a test of patience. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was Revis. The fierce warrior who could hold her own against the top members of the Loki familia now lay motionless on his bed like a lamb awaiting slaughter. Despite the enticing sight, Ryu sighed. Shisho, what are you playing at? A triumphant warrior enjoying wine, delicacies, and women. Isn't that natural? A teasing voice answered. Scathach walked out with an amused expression. Don't joke around, Shisho. You know I wouldn't do such a thing, Ryu replied with a bitter smile. Although Revis couldn't move, her vertical pupils were fixed on him. As he approached the bed, a chilling killing intent emanated from her, nearly overwhelming him. Ryu walked to the bedside, but instead of acting like a beast, he chose to act better than a beast. He pulled up the blanket and covered the voluptuous body lying there. Revis's gaze remained cold but softened slightly. For a fleeting moment of pleasure, sacrificing long-term plans was not the act of a wise person. Ryu was certain that if he gave in to his desires today, not only would his schemes be ruined, but they would also become mortal enemies, unyielding until one of them perished. Miss Revis, would you consider working for me? Ryu suddenly asked an unexpected question. A flash of surprise crossed Revis's eyes, but she quickly returned to her cold demeanor. Ryu could see a hint of disdain in her eyes, making her refusal quite evident. Shisho, could you lift some of her restraints? Just enough for her to speak, he asked Scathach, who was watching with a playful expression. Scathach raised her hand and snapped her fingers. Crack. An invisible wave of magical energy filled the air, followed by a faint sound like breaking glass. Revis's lips moved, and she spoke. If you're not afraid of me snapping your neck, I can work for you. Her expression remained unchanged, as cold as a lurking snake, and Ryu was certain she was serious. Though he expected her to refuse, such blunt hostility left him speechless. Even Scathach had a faint smile on her face. Miss Revis, you might hold a grudge against me for thwarting your actions, but I'm serious. Let's have an open and honest discussion, Ryu said earnestly. To recruit someone as skilled as Revis, Ryu had gone to great lengths, even risking offending a Loki familia. After all, Ryu wouldn't stay in Orario forever. One day, he'd move to another world, and he wasn't sure if he could return. But he couldn't just abandon the hostess of fertility and its numerous assets. Although he had the support of Mamma Mia and the hidden skilled waitresses, along with the backing of the Freya familia, Ryu wanted additional insurance. Revis was his secret insurance plan, but he had to convince her first. I can tell you're not entirely loyal to your current master, Ryu said, causing Revis's eyes to narrow. What do you know about me? Revis's tone was cold and firm, clearly keeping him at a distance. Ryu continued undeterred, but your eyes are resolute, and you're extremely dedicated to your mission. You go to great lengths, even risking your body and betraying your companions, to merge with magic stones and become a monster-like being. You'd even risk your own life to complete your mission. If it were for money or power, you wouldn't go to such lengths. You must have a strong belief that supports you. Revis didn't respond, but her gaze grew colder, confirming to Ryu that he was on the right track. This creates a contradiction. You lack loyalty but have a strong belief, so you must have a special reason for following your master. And it's likely not for yourself, but for someone close to you. Shut up. Revis's cold facade finally cracked, and Ryu could see her anger. But to achieve his goal, Ryu continued to provoke her. Since the descent of the gods, many things have become possible. Even previously incurable diseases can be treated with divine elixirs that can save those on the brink of death. With your skills, acquiring such an elixir would be trivial, but there's one thing mortals can't do, only gods can, the resurrection of the dead. Ryu spoke each word deliberately. But now, with the gods' powers sealed by their divine contracts, you're left with no choice but to seek help from a goddess who doesn't follow the rules, all to resurrect someone most important to you. As he finished, Ryu smiled faintly. If I'm wrong, you can laugh it off as a joke. But if by chance I'm right, perhaps you might consider my offer and think it over. Shisho, let's go, Ryu said, not waiting for an answer as he motioned for Scathach to follow him out. Before he reached the door, a voice called out from behind. Wait. Ryu didn't immediately turn around, but the corners of his mouth lifted slightly, feeling a sense of joy in his heart. Half the battle was already won. She promised me that if I helped her destroy all of Orario, she would revive my sister after we succeeded. Revis hesitated for a moment before finally confessing. She didn't reveal who her master was, but Ryu, knowing the original story, uttered a name, Enyo, the goddess of war and destruction. She is your master, am I right? For the first time, Revis showed a look of shock. I told you before, I know much more than you imagine, Ryu said, turning around with a confident smile. Enyo, though currently just a background character, had traces throughout the original work. Enyo, the goddess of war and destruction in Greek mythology, exists as Ares' subordinate wife or sister. Her actions align perfectly with this role. Although the original work didn't reveal the connection between Ares and Enyo, Ryu had reason to believe there was a very close link. This could be inferred from their actions alone. Ares established a military empire, attempting to destroy Orario from the outside through war. Meanwhile, Enyo sought to leverage the power of dungeon monsters to destroy Orario from within. With such coordinated efforts, it was clear they were connected. Revis fell silent, but Ryu continued, but even you know this is almost a delusion. A mere goddess thinking she can stand against all the gods who support Orario. It's pure fantasy. Ryu didn't underestimate her. Rather, he believed it was absurd for a minor deity, not even one of the 12 Olympian gods, to think she could destroy Orario. Would all the gods with vested interests in Orario allow her to mess with their domain? What a joke. Going against the tide of history and standing against all the gods was sheer folly. Even without knowing the rest of the original story, Ryu could imagine that Enyo wouldn't survive until the end. At best, she was just a pawn thrown out by the true mastermind to attract attention. In contrast, Uranus, who had infiltrated the revolutionary forces and stayed hidden within the guild, had more potential to be the final boss. So, the promise she made is one she can't possibly fulfill, Ryu concluded. Revis didn't speak, but the wavering and weariness in her eyes betrayed her. Perhaps deep down, she understood this truth. However, it was the only lifeline she could grasp, and she couldn't let it go. And, you've already seen the power I possess. Revis immediately recalled the scene not long ago where Ryu had quickly recovered from a severe heart injury. And this goddess, Scathach, who oversees the land of shadows, known as the Cemetery of Gods. Besides her supreme martial skills, she is also well versed in the powers of death. Revis's face clearly showed signs of struggle. And my demands are not high. You only need to work for me for 3 years, with the same treatment as other employees, and I will fulfill your wish, Ryu added, throwing down another heavy piece of bargaining. 3 years was not long for Revis. After making the deal with Enyo, she had been prepared to spend her whole life fulfilling this wish. 3 years was, in fact, a significant advancement. Revis thought for a moment and then answered. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Ri. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. The cover photo is not mine. Credit goes to the owner. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO, 25. Since you've taken a liking to this body, you can use it as you wish. Revis finally agreed to Ryu's terms, though the way she said it sounded somewhat awkward. Upon receiving Revis's definitive answer, Ryu felt a surge of joy in his heart. As for the 3-year agreement, hey, once you're on my pirate ship, do you think you can just leave? Not fitting in with the gods and their followers, betraying Enyo and the monsters, and carrying the burden of reviving her sister, there's no way she wouldn't end up staying obediently on Ryu's ship. It's not that Ryu was being insidious, his opponents were gods. Except for Hestia, who was more of a cute mascot, the other gods were all cunning and devious, having lived for billions of years. Ryu then gathered the female staff of the Hostess of Fertility. No, it was now more widely known as the Gudako Hotel in Orario, especially among the upper echelons. The female staff now mostly declared themselves members of the Shrine Maiden. After assembling all the female staff, including Mamma Mia, Ryu introduced Revis as the newest member. The older staff from the Hostess of Fertility, even including Hestia, looked at Revis with complex expressions. The veteran staff were mostly hidden experts who could sense the powerful aura emanating from Revis, comparable to Mamma Mia, a former level 6 adventurer. As for Hestia, the cute goddess likely sensed something unusual about Revis through her divine perception. Despite this, they all welcomed Revis's addition. And so, Revis took on her new role as the head of security. Having settled Revis into her new dormitory, Ryu finally returned to his room, only to find a purple figure sitting on his sofa. Huh, Shisho, you haven't left yet? Ryu asked curiously, knowing Scathach was usually elusive. Are you eager for me to leave? Scathach glanced at him indifferently. Ryu awkwardly scratched the back of his head. Although he had made bold declarations in front of her before, he always felt a bit uneasy and restrained when alone with Scathach. It was likely due to Scathach's overwhelming power and presence. After all, before his reincarnation, Ryu was just an otaku, while Scathach was the queen of the land of shadows, overseeing the god's graveyard. But Ryu would never admit to this. It was just a natural psychological reaction when a man faced someone he admired. Yes, that was it. Of course not. If Shisho wishes to stay, you can stay as long as you like. I just have a lot of questions about the primordial runes to ask, and I also need your help with something. HMPH, you're certainly not shy about asking. Scathach's tone was stern, but there was no impatience in her expression. Well, what can I do? You're my beloved Shisho, Ryu said with a playful grin. Seeing Ryu's face, a complex light flickered in Scathach's eyes. Her previous disciples were all rough, muscle-headed men. Having someone like Ryu, who could be mischievous and intelligent, was a novel experience. The key point was that, apart from her future, which she could foresee through the wisdom of Dunscaith, she couldn't obtain any information about Nguyen Ryu. Since acquiring the wisdom of Dunscaith, a cheat like noble phantasm, everything in the world had become known to Scathach. It was like knowing the end of a movie before watching it, utterly devoid of interest. Now, she found the joy of exploring the unknown again through Ryu, rekindling her long-dead heart. For the first time, the queen of the land of shadows felt intrigued by a man much weaker than herself. Let me answer your first question. First and foremost, considering the primordial runes as a mere magic system is a completely erroneous perspective. Her long-standing warrior mentality allowed Scathach to swiftly suppress her complex emotions, steadying her mind and patiently explaining to Ryu. The primordial runes represent the ancient text from the birth of the world, predating even the gods. They can even be traced back to the swirl of the root. Upon hearing this, Ryu couldn't help but feel a deep respect. In the Nasuverse, there is a golden rule. Anything related to the swirl of the root is invincibly powerful. So, you need to use it as a form of writing. Like a writer, you must compose the primordial runes into words, sentences, paragraphs, and texts. Because of this, each person's mastery of the primordial runes is unique, and how you use them depends entirely on your understanding. The insights of others will only mislead you. Do you understand? With this explanation, Ryu instantly grasped the concept. It was akin to how a top-tier author and a third-rate both write novels in the same concept, but the former's works become wildly popular, while the latter struggles even to get published. This is the charm of combining words. In essence, the use of primordial runes is the same, understanding them and combining them into more powerful and mysterious rune words. Seeing Ryu deep in thought, a hint of a smile flashed in Scathach's eyes. Her disciples were all accomplished in martial arts, but they were severely lacking in magecraft. Even her most prized pupil, Kuchulain, had only grasped the basics, and he was the best among them. If Ryu could inherit or even surpass her abilities, it would be an interesting development. The saying, a pupil outgrowing his master, only applies to those who lack confidence in themselves. Scathach wished for a disciple who could surpass her, even to the point of being able to kill her. Now, tell me what other help you need from me. Ryu's eyes flickered as he spoke. You need help for that. Fine, this sounds interesting. I'll help you, Scathach said with keen interest. Ryu's face lit up with joy. With his Shisho's help, it seemed like half the battle was already won. While Ryu was scheming against someone, a special guest arrived at the Hostess of Fertility. It was still a while before mealtime, and Hestia was listlessly wiping down tables. Suddenly, 4 hooded figures, their faces completely covered, walked into the pub. Welcome, what would you like? Hestia asked, her face habitually displaying a professional smile. It seems you've been doing well lately, Hestia, a clear and pleasant voice rang out. It's you. Recognizing the extremely familiar voice, Hestia looked up in shock at the cloaked figure. Even the hooded cloak couldn't hide her tall and voluptuous figure. As she moved, a lock of noble and mysterious purple hair flowed out, and her refined face, framed by sword-like eyebrows, looked heroic. However, all this was overshadowed by her golden eyes, filled with divinity and endless wisdom. Athena, why are you here? An ominous feeling rose in Hestia's heart as if her peaceful daily life was about to end with the arrival of her old friend. The woman Hestia called Athena sat down, and the 3 cloaked figures behind her remained silent. When Hestia sat across from Athena, one of the cloaked figures raised a hand, tracing symbols in the air while chanting a mysterious spell. An invisible wave swept through the room, causing the female staff who had noticed the commotion to turn away and go about their business as if no one was there. Athena crossed her legs elegantly on the wooden stool. Despite wearing an ugly black cloak, she managed to make it look like a regal and luxurious queen's gown. I think you know why I'm here. Do you need a reminder? Athena said with an amused smile. TCH, that's why you were the hardest to deal with in the heavens. With your superior intellect, you always took pleasure in toying with others, Hestia replied with a look of disdain. Is that so? But I like you the most. Compared to those hypocrites, it's people like you who are the most endearing, Athena said, licking her lips seductively, her eyes barely concealing her possessiveness. Hestia immediately felt like a rabbit being stared at by a poisonous snake, involuntarily shivering as she stammered a warning. You better not do anything crazy. This is Orario, not Olympus. So, that means I can do this and that to you once we're back in Olympus, Tilda? Athena said, deliberately speaking in a suggestive tone. Nowhere is acceptable. My sexual orientation is perfectly normal. I only like men. Hestia's twin tails even perked up in her agitation. Is that so? Then why do you still maintain? Athena suddenly leaned close to Hestia's ear. Your pure, virgin state? She then gently blew into Hestia's ear. Eek. Hestia jumped up like a startled rabbit. Your reactions are always so adorable, Hestia. Hee Tilda. Athena laughed with queenly elegance. While the 2 goddesses playfully bantered, essentially Athena teasing the youthful-looking Hestia, the 3 cloaked figures behind Athena stood still as statues. After the playful exchange. So, your purpose here is indeed about that child, isn't it? Hestia's expression suddenly turned serious. Athena's demeanor became as cold as a glacier. You should be well aware that Belcranel is a direct descendant of Zeus, yet you allowed him to join a rival pantheon. But that child is happy and free in Freya's familia now. His dream is to become a hero, not to be a pawn in your games. Hestia argued passionately. Athena remained unmoved, her eyes filled with the divine arrogance with which gods view mortals. He bears a mission crucial to all of Olympus. His fate no longer belongs to him. In any case, I won't help you anymore. Seeing no way to reason with her, Hestia resorted to stubbornness. However, to the cold-hearted goddess of war, Hestia's childish antics were utterly meaningless. So, I didn't come to seek your help. I came to inform you that your task is now under my control, Athena coldly declared. You can't do this. Hestia stood up angrily, leaning on the table, glaring at Athena. Hestia, let me tell you one more thing. Our dear father Zeus never trusted you from the start. Athena stood up, walked over to the stunned Hestia, and whispered in her ear, because you're too soft-hearted, Hestia. With that, Athena left with her 3 guards without looking back, leaving Hestia to slump back into her seat, dejected. Ding. As they walked out, one of the guards' cloaks fluttered slightly, revealing a glint of gold. The source seemed to be a golden sheep-shaped earring. Time flew by, and before long, it was the next day. The dawn in Orario was particularly chilly, the streets and alleys were almost deserted. The entire labyrinth city seemed to have truly transformed into a labyrinth. With the sun yet to rise, a thick mist enveloped the city, adding an eerie atmosphere. At the street corner, a golden tassel fluttered in the wind, and a slender figure swiftly rounded the corner, heading towards the distant, fog-shrouded, towering city walls. This figure was well known throughout Orario. She was Ice Wallenstein, a senior adventurer of Loki's familia, a level 5 adventurer renowned throughout Orario, bearing the title of Sword Princess, bestowed by the gods themselves. Fully armed, Ice ascended the city wall without a moment's hesitation. Yo, you made it, a man's voice greeted her. If anyone found out that the beautiful Sword Princess was secretly meeting a stranger at dawn, those who admired her would surely be shocked. Yeah, Ice responded with a single word in her usual indifferent manner. A hint of anxiety and longing appeared on Ice's usually indifferent face, her pale golden eyes fixed intently on Ryu. What is the way to become stronger? Tell me quickly. One look at Ice's eyes, and Ryu immediately understood her desperation. The weather is pretty nice today, Ryu remarked, deliberately changing the subject. The sun hasn't even come up yet, Ice replied coldly, her voice tinged with a slight anger. Well, that's good. We can enjoy the sunrise, Ryu said, seemingly oblivious to the anger in Ice's tone. Ryu continued to talk about everything except the main topic, knowing well that things obtained too easily are not cherished. Though his method of playing hard to get was a bit crude, it was highly effective. Besides, he had a small ulterior motive. Teasing Ice, who was a mix of stoic and genuinely naive, and watching her usually indifferent face grow more expressive, was an immensely amusing prospect. Indeed, even someone as emotionally reserved as Ice couldn't hide her growing impatience and anger, which Ryu could easily discern. What exactly do I have to do to become stronger? I'll agree to any condition if it makes me stronger. Ice grabbed Ryu's sleeve, her determination shining so brightly in her eyes that it made him feel a pang of guilt. He had truly underestimated her obsession with becoming stronger. Ryu couldn't help but think. With such a strong obsession, getting her on board was practically a done deal. But looking into those unwavering eyes, Ryu felt a twinge of guilt. Was it right to manipulate such a pure-hearted girl? He quickly pushed that guilt aside. I am not here to be a hero or a saint, but to become strong. There's no room for sentimentality now, it's laughable. With that thought, Ryu put on a warm smile. Do you want to become stronger? Despite his radiant smile, the pure-hearted and perceptive Ice sensed an odd feeling, something that made her instinctively uncomfortable. But for the sake of becoming stronger, a girl willing to risk her life would not be deterred by such feelings. So Ice nodded vigorously. All right then, words alone aren't enough. How about I let you experience it firsthand? Ryu's smile grew even brighter. For some reason, Ice felt that his smile resembled the wolf in fairy tales that lured Little Red Riding Hood, making her quite uneasy. Okay, Ice said, suppressing her negative emotions and striving to remain calm. You've already met my Shisho. She will suppress her strength to match yours and then spar with you, Ryu explained, glancing toward the shadowy part of the watchtower. Shisho, I'll leave it to you. Tap, tap, tap tilde. Accompanied by the sound of high heels clicking against stone, a purple-black figure silently emerged from the shadows. It was Scathach, who had been hiding nearby for some time. The queen of the land of shadow examined Ice with great interest. So, this is the little girl. She is indeed quite intriguing. Even the usually emotionless Ice couldn't hide her shock. When did she get there? Why didn't I notice her? A series of questions popped into Ice's mind, but she wasn't good with words. Instead, her pale golden eyes locked onto Scathach's, as if trying to see through her completely. Interesting little girl, I'm starting to like you. Let's not waste any time and begin. As Scathach spoke, she drew several mysterious runes in the air. Crack. With a light sound, a sprout suddenly emerged from the gap between the stone bricks, rapidly growing into a small sapling. Scathach gave the sapling a gentle tug, and the main trunk was immediately in her hand. She then lightly stroked the trunk, transforming it into a smooth, wooden rapier, its length perfectly matching the sword at Ice's waist, both in length and thickness. This skill of creating weapons from thin air left Ice and Ryu wide-eyed and unblinking. However, their focuses were entirely different. Ryu was fixated on his Shisho's unparalleled and effortlessly executed primordial rune techniques, while Ice was naturally concerned with whether she could learn this skill to strengthen herself. Let's start. Let me train, tease, you properly, Scathach said, a glint of excitement in her eyes. Ryu Long couldn't shake the feeling that when Scathach mentioned train, tease, her demeanor shifted from a proud and cold queen to a sadistic, cruel queen. Ice, you better do your best. Ryu glanced at Ice without showing any emotion, silently mourning for her for 3 seconds. Unaware of Ryu's thoughts, Ice only cared about becoming stronger. She obediently drew her, desperate, from her waist and attacked Scathach without hesitation. Scathach, however, stood still like an abyss, a stark contrast to her usual lightning-fast and aggressive style. She only slightly dodged when Ice's sword was mere millimeters away from her, causing Ice to miss and leave herself completely exposed to Scathach's blade. Oddly, Scathach did not seize the opportunity to counterattack, seeming instead to be observing Ice. A true sword princess, calm under pressure, changing her thrust to a sweep. But Scathach was even more skilled, seemingly predicting Ice's move, elegantly bending backward like a dancer, Ice's blade missing her face by a hair's breadth. Even Ryu, watching from the sidelines, could feel the bone-chilling cold emanating from Ice's blade. Failing to change her move, Ice, in desperation, lifted her leg, seemingly trying to create distance with a kick. But Scathach was faster, her foot subtly twisting, trapping Ice's leg securely in place. Ice attempted to swing her sword, but Scathach's arm blocked it, leaving her free to place her wooden sword against Ice's delicate neck. This round, Scathach won flawlessly. In Ice's eyes, a complex mix of unwillingness and astonishment flashed. If Scathach had overwhelmed her with sheer strength, it would have been one thing. But Scathach had suppressed her attributes to match Ice's level, even being notably slower and less agile. Since becoming an adventurer, Ice had always been praised, rapidly advancing from level 1 to level 2, earning the title of Sword Princess from the gods for her splendid and powerful swordsmanship. Even though Ice didn't care about these accolades, she had her pride. Her sword would not lose to anyone. But now, Scathach had schooled her, the disparity in their abilities leaving Ice feeling despondent and shaken. Scathach released Ice gently, watching her despondent expression in silence. Being highly adept at mentoring her disciples, Scathach understood that this was a critical juncture, a significant threshold determining how far a warrior could grow. Faced with an unbeatable opponent, would one submit and flee, or abandon their ego and fight relentlessly, even if only to leave a scar on their foe? Among her many disciples, most remained obscure because they couldn't overcome this initial hurdle. Only a few, like Cuchulainn and Fergus, crossed it and became world-renowned heroes. If Ice were to falter here, her future achievements would be limited, and Scathach would advise Ryu to abandon the idea of bringing Ice on board. But if Ice could emerge from this shadow, Scathach might consider taking this interesting girl under her wing. After a long silence, Ice slowly lifted her head. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Ri. Zero no game no life fate series. The cover photo is not mine. Credit goes to the owner. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO, 26. In Ice pale golden eyes, Scathach saw a flame called Indomitable. A look of appreciation flashed in her eyes as Scathach raised her hand and gently beckoned with a finger. Once more, Ice launched herself at Scathach again with reckless abandon. The two figures crisscrossed atop the city wall, occasionally letting out a few spirited cries that showed their determination. Watching from the side, Ryu was thrilled. In his eyes, Scathach's combat style had always been about speed, an unbreakable fast pace. However, today, her combat style completely overturned his impression. Thrusts, slow thrusts, rapid thrusts, light, heavy, slow, fast, sometimes continuous, showcasing the sheer brilliance of the word thrust. Moreover, while fiercely sparring with Ice, Scathach still had the leisure to offer guidance. The rapier in your hand is not a chopping weapon. Perhaps because Ice often fought against huge monsters, some habits were hard to break. Even though she wielded the lightest rapier, she often used wide, sweeping strikes. Missing the target isn't just because you're slow. From your footwork, the power of your body, to the force applied by your wrist, even the changes in the wind at that moment can affect the precision of your thrust. If you can't change the rhythm and force at will, then first learn how to thrust quickly and fiercely. If you can't hit the vital spot, don't blame the length of the weapon. If you want to hit the target, you will hit the target. Scathach seemed to notice the confusion in Ice's eyes. The wooden sword in her hand suddenly thrust into the air. Then, a shocking scene unfolded. Accompanied by a blood-red magical glow, the wooden sword suddenly refracted in midair, seemingly extending, and struck towards Ice's chest. Ah! Ice clutched her chest and staggered back a few steps, falling to the ground. However, her pale golden pupils remained fixed in astonishment on the wooden sword in Scathach's hand that had now returned to its original state. On the other side, Ryu's jaw dropped in shock. Shisho, just how skilled are you to use a wooden sword to perform, Guy Bolg? Indeed, the so-called pinnacle of heroic spirits each had a unique skill, far beyond what a mere mobile game could display. Want to learn? Scathach's lips curled into an amused smile, seemingly recognizing the deep yearning in Ice's eyes. Ice quickly nodded like a little squirrel. Unfortunately, I haven't acknowledged you as my disciple yet, Scathach mercilessly rejected. However, her refusal did not dampen Ice's determination to grow stronger. She immediately dragged her battered body up, assumed a stance, and stared intently at Scathach. Please teach me. How about this? Scathach pretended to think deeply. If you can manage to injure me, even if it's just my clothes or a strand of hair, by sunrise, I will take you as my disciple. How's that? Boom. Ryu seemed to hear the sound of roaring flames. Ice's pale golden eyes lit up with a brilliance that almost felt scorching. Yes. The simple answer conveyed an unyielding determination that anyone could hear. Awaken. Ice shouted, and a cyan whirlwind enveloped her. This was Ice's unique magic, a rare spell that comprehensively boosted offense and defense, speed, and even granted short-term flight capabilities. A bit interesting, Scathach's eyes narrowed, her demeanor becoming slightly more serious. With her magical prowess, she could easily see how much this magic had boosted Ice's combat abilities. I'm coming. Ice called out, immediately thrusting her sword forward. Compared to before, both her speed and momentum were worlds apart, with her destructive power having increased by at least 50%. Do you think that's enough? Naive. Scathach's eyebrows shot up coldly as she dodged Ice's thrust. Then, like lightning, she thrust her sword towards Ice's abdomen. Bang. The wind magic's protection was utterly ineffective against Scathach's attack. Her wooden sword easily pierced through the wind barrier and struck Ice's abdomen. Ah. Ice couldn't help but release her grip on her sword, clutching her abdomen and retching. Did you think that this level would make you worthy of being my disciple? Scathach looked down at the kneeling Ice with no trace of pity in her voice. Hearing this, Ice's stubbornness flared up. She propped herself up with her sword, standing back up with defiant eyes fixed on Scathach, showing no intention of giving up. A flicker of satisfaction flashed deep in Scathach's eyes, but her expression remained cold. Quickly, Ice launched another attack on Scathach, only to be repelled even faster. This time, a bruise appeared on her delicate, doll-like face. Again, Ice charged at her relentlessly, this time getting injured on the neck. Scathach showed no mercy, striking Ice's neck with her sword, nearly causing her to pass out. Ice staggered and took a long time to get back up. If this were an iron sword, you'd be dead by now. Or have you been so flattered by those weaklings that you think you're some kind of unparalleled genius? Scathach's strikes were merciless, and her words were filled with mockery. Seeing the battered Ice, even Ryu found it hard to watch. Just as he was about to speak up, Scathach shot him a glare. The meaning of that look was clear. Dare to plead, and I'll beat you too. Ryu immediately backed down, letting out a helpless sigh. However, Ice's resilience was terrifyingly formidable. Despite Scathach's heavy blows, she kept getting back up to fight again. Again. It seemed as if these were the only words she knew, being knocked down repeatedly, only to rise again and again. Whether it was Ice's stubbornness that angered Scathach, or whether Scathach's inner sadistic tendencies were fully awakened, her strikes became heavier, mercilessly battering Ice. Ice's delicate face was bruised and swollen, her swordswoman's outfit was in tatters, and her exposed skin was covered in bruises. If the members of the Loki Familia saw their princess, their treasured gem, being beaten like this, they would probably fight to the death. The sun is about to rise. You've done your best, so just give up. No one will blame you. Scathach unexpectedly softened her tone, gently advising. Ryu, however, couldn't help but shiver internally. Giving up is always an easy choice, especially towards the end when it's the easiest to give up. The saying, to travel 100 miles is to consider 90 miles as halfway, illustrates this very principle. Scathach's change in attitude wasn't out of genuine concern for Ice. Rather, she was setting a massive trap for her. People have their limits, and if Scathach had remained as cold as before, Ice would have persevered out of sheer determination. Instead, Scathach's seemingly considerate demeanor was a gentle knife, killing without mercy. However, she underestimated Ice's obsession with becoming stronger. Faced with Scathach's gentle trap, Ice seemed not to hear it at all and took her stance. Wind. With a sharp shout, the green wind surged around Ice, not forming a protective armor but instead wrapping around her sword. She completely abandoned her defense. Ice charged at Scathach like a hurricane, her pale golden eyes free of any distractions. I must become stronger. At that moment, a sliver of golden sunlight spread across the horizon, making it seem as though a golden battle robe had been draped over the determined girl. Scathach's gaze grew incredibly serious. She could feel that Ice had broken through her limits. Zing. The sword light flashed, and the two figures crossed paths. After a long moment, Ice suddenly collapsed to the ground. Ryu hurried over, letting her lean against him and administering a healing potion. In the golden sunlight, the unconscious Ice looked like a sleeping beauty, leaving him in a daze. A beautiful woman is like a painting. Ryu now deeply understood the meaning of this phrase. At this moment, Scathach slowly walked over, squatted beside Ice, patted her head, and then said to Ryu, "Tell her for me that she has passed. I accept her as my disciple." "Shisho?" Ryu exclaimed in surprise. Scathach didn't speak but pointed to her waist. There, a small tear had appeared in her purple battle attire, though it was unclear when it had happened. This child has very high potential, perhaps not less than. Scathach abruptly stopped. However, Ryu had already grasped her meaning. With careful nurturing, Ice's achievements might not fall short of the legendary hero Cuchulainn. For Scathach, this was a very high evaluation. Ryu couldn't help but look at the sleeping beauty before him with a complicated expression. Wanting to bring Ice under his wing was certainly due to Ryu knowing her potential from the original story, but there was also a bit of personal desire. Since he was recruiting talent anyway, why not choose someone who was also pleasing to the eye? Unlike the other members of the Loki Familia, Ice had her obsessions, which was her greatest weakness. So, Ryu directly used the unfathomable power of Scathach as bait to lure Ice in. And this pure-hearted girl took the bait. But unexpectedly, he had stumbled into receiving such a great gift. While he did feel a bit guilty for manipulating such a pure-hearted girl, Ryu did not regret it. Especially after his master personally said that her talent was no less than Cuchulainn's, Ryu was even more determined not to let her go. Feeling like you're being despicable? Scathach seemed to see through his thoughts at a glance and asked teasingly. Ryu, however, laughed. Despicable or not, I believe it's the right thing to do, and that's justice. What others think has nothing to do with me. Staying here might not allow her to grow to the height you expect, but following this might help her grow even more. My heart, my actions, I have no regrets. Before Ice woke up, Scathach once again demonstrated her elusive abilities, disappearing into the sunlight. When Ice woke up and didn't see Scathach, she thought she had failed, showing a dejected expression. Even her pale golden eyes lost their luster. Ryu couldn't bear to tease her any longer and quickly relayed Scathach's message to her. Upon hearing it, Ice's eyes lit up instantly, and she radiated vitality. She is an easy-to-read, pure-hearted girl, Ryu thought to himself with a hint of sarcasm. Seeing the enthusiastic girl, Ryu suddenly put on a wolfish grin. From today onwards, we are fellow disciples, so you should call me Big Brother. Come, repeat after me, Oni-sama tilde. Ice immediately showed an indifferent face and shook her head. TCH tilde, you didn't fall for it, huh? Ryu muttered under his breath as he turned away. Alright, let's get down to business. Ice, are you interested in? Ryu's expression turned serious. Upon hearing his words, even the usually stoic Ice couldn't help but look surprised. Go back and think it over. He wasn't in a hurry. The bait had been taken, and it was just a matter of reeling it in. Pressing too hard now could backfire. A skilled angler knows to be patient. So, Ryu led the somewhat dazed Ice back to the dormitory building. Although Ice's injuries had healed, letting her go home in clothes full of holes would likely result in the Loki Familia coming after him in full force. But who should I ask? Ryu scratched the back of his head. Although he had no regrets, Ice's current state was too suggestive. Suddenly, he thought of his recently recruited female security guard, Revis. Revis usually kept her distance from the tavern's female staff and wasn't very talkative. Plus, Ice probably had a lot of questions for her. She was the perfect choice. So, Ryu immediately sneaked Ice into the dormitory, heading towards Revis's room. Revis had chosen a room far from everyone else, seemingly not wanting to get too close to others. It should have been a place where no one would notice them. But sometimes, the more you worry about something, the more likely it is to happen. Just as Ryu and Ice were about to reach their destination, a suppressed gasp echoed from nearby, as if someone was about to scream but had their mouth covered. This is just. Ryu couldn't help but sigh, rubbing his forehead in exasperation. Come out, he said with a hint of resignation. Two graceful figures slowly emerged from the corner. It was Seer and Ryu. Seer initially looked embarrassed seeing Ryu, but her expression turned dangerous upon noticing Ice's disheveled state. Dark shadows seemed to emanate from behind her. Ryu, on the other hand, looked at him with utter disdain, as if he were a piece of large, flammable garbage. If I told you this isn't what it looks like, would you believe me? Ryu sighed deeply. What do you think, Mr. Pervert, who sneaks off before dawn with a vixen for a battle? Sir's face had darkened, and she looked like she was about to pull out a cleaver with one hand and a kitchen knife with the other. Scumbag, Ryu spat out succinctly. At this moment, Ice, oblivious to the situation, added fuel to the fire. None of your concern, she said calmly. Young lady, you realize this is all because of you. Ryu felt like shouting at her. After much explanation and promises of various sweets, Ryu finally managed to appease Seer. As for Ryu, Ryu had already given up hope of changing her impression of him. Knock, knock. Ryu knocked on the door twice. After a moment, the door opened, revealing Revis behind it. It's you. Ice's expression changed dramatically, and her hand instinctively moved to her sword hilt. Don't be impulsive, Ryu quickly pressed down on Ice's hand. So, it's you, Ice Wallenstein. Revis's pupils contracted slightly as she spoke calmly. Ahem, I think it's better if we talk inside, Ryu coughed dryly, glancing at the corner where a pair of light gray eyes were staring intently at them, making him feel immense pressure. Come in, Revis said, giving Ice a deep look before stepping aside. Once Ryu and Ice entered, she closed the door. Half an hour later, Ice emerged from Revis's room, looking dejected. She had changed into a simple, everyday outfit. As for why she was dejected, it wasn't hard to understand. The demi-spirit had targeted Ice because of the spirit blood flowing within her. The spirit that had merged with the monster had long lost its sanity, only knowing to devour its kin to complete itself. Ice's mother, Spirit Arya, was one of its targets. Naturally, Ice, who shared the same bloodline, had also become a target. But on the flip side, it was clear that the other party didn't know where Ice's mother was. Otherwise, it wouldn't have targeted a half-blood like Ice. After a while, Ryu also came out of Revis's room. However, he was soon blocked at the corner. The person blocking him was Seer. Seer stood there, puffed up with anger, staring intensely into his eyes. What's wrong, Seer? Ryu asked curiously. I saw it. Saw what? Ryu's head was filled with even more question marks. You took that sneaky cat in, and she came out wearing different clothes. You must have been doing this and that inside. Ryu's face turned dark on the spot, but Seer's imagination seemed far from over. And then that sneaky cat ran out first, and you stayed with that expressionless girl. Seeing Seer getting more and more agitated, Ryu had to cover her mouth with his hand. I told you, I just took her in to change her clothes and then let her leave first. I stayed behind to discuss some matters with Revis, Ryu explained. Even though Ryu had covered her mouth, Seer's eyes spelled out, I don't believe you. Ryu sighed, released her, and asked, what do you want, then? A date. Seer mumbled in a barely audible voice. What did you say? Ryu asked instinctively. I said, if you go on a date with me when you return from the expedition, I'll forgive you. Seer's face turned bright red as she ran off after speaking. Ryu rubbed his nose. Was he being pursued? But what did she mean by a date after the expedition? Young lady, are you sure you're not jinxing me? Meanwhile, Ice returned to her familiar castle, heavy with thoughts. For Ice, too many things had happened this morning. First, she did everything in her power to become a disciple of that powerful female warrior. Then, Ryu lured her with the promise of even greater strength and extended an invitation. After that, there was a conversation with Revis about her mother. When Ice returned, she didn't attract anyone's attention because she often liked to quietly slip into the dungeon to hunt monsters, so everyone was used to it. However, there was one person, or rather, an elf, who constantly paid attention to Ice's unusual behavior. The elf, Lefia, had noticed early in the morning that Ice had sneaked out and returned in different clothes, looking somewhat dazed. Lefia, who was skilled at jumping to conclusions, immediately imagined all kinds of scenarios. Such as her beloved Ice being toyed with by a man named Gudao, and then being abandoned. Or that man named Gudao had caught something on Ice and was now blackmailing and threatening her. I must ask Ice Senpai for the truth. Lefia grew more and more fearful as she thought. When she peeked around the corner, she found that Ice had already disappeared. You want to update your status now? The goddess Loki, who had just gotten up and still had bedhead, looked at Ice with a strange expression. Ice said calmly, I feel like I've made significant progress. This wasn't just talk. A warrior of Ice's level could sense even the slightest anomaly in her body. The battle with Scathach, although one-sided, made Ice feel as if she had undergone some sort of sublimation when she woke up from her unconsciousness. This situation could very likely be. So, upon her return, she immediately dragged Loki, who was still fast asleep, out of bed. You were desperate, aren't you? Didn't I tell you not to push yourself too hard? Loki's reproach was filled with silent concern. Please, Loki, Ice's eyes were resolute. All right, sit over there. Unable to refuse, Loki agreed to Ice's request, though she was quite skeptical. When Finn and Reveria, the three giants of their familia, had leveled up from LV5 to LV6, they had gone through a bloody battle with a powerful floor boss to break through and ascend to LV6. Ice had gone out early in the morning, at most to hunt small monsters. There was no time to challenge a floor boss. If hunting small monsters could raise one's level, why were there so many adventurers in Orario stuck at LV1, unable to progress? It was because breaking through oneself was immensely difficult, and a single mistake could mean death in the dungeon. Nevertheless, Loki diligently updated Ice's status. However, when she saw that the number representing Ice's level had abruptly jumped from 5 to 6, she immediately shouted. Ice Tan has leveled up to LV6. Her shout echoed from top to bottom, and almost the entire castle heard it. Thus, the morning calm of the Loki familia was thoroughly shattered. Congratulations, Ice Tan, Loki said with a smile, handing over the updated status sheet translated into the common language. But even the goddess Loki couldn't guess that when Ice saw the level change from 5 to 6, she made a silent resolution in her heart. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Ri. Zero No Game No Life Fate series. The cover photo is not mine. Credit goes to the owner. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO, 27. The news that the Sword Princess of the Loki familia had reached LV6 spread like wildfire throughout all of Orario. LV6 adventurers were a rarity. There was only one known LV7 in all of Orario, and even LV6 adventurers were few enough to count on two hands. Currently, only the Freya familia and the Loki familia are known to have LV6 adventurers. Every time an adventurer advanced to LV6, it was a monumental event for the guild, warranting a special announcement. When this announcement was posted, all the adventurers who saw it were abuzz with discussions, filled with admiration and awe, and rarely jealousy. After all, human nature is such that people first react with jealousy when a genius emerges. However, when the genius's growth reaches an unattainable level, to the point that even their shadow cannot be seen, ordinary people are left with nothing but reverence. Ice's advancement to LV6 was a cause for great celebration within the Loki familia, signifying new strength for the group. Almost every member was extraordinarily excited, especially Ice's little admirer, Lefia. However, the three leaders of the familia and the goddess Loki did not share this view. In the office of the Loki familia's leader, the three leaders of the familia, the goddess Loki, and Ice herself were present. Judging by the setup, it was a tribunal, and the subject of the inquiry was naturally Ice's mysterious advancement to LV6. Can't you tell us? Reveria, who had the closest relationship with Ice and was almost like a mother to her, sighed. A look of hesitation flickered in Ice's eyes, but she eventually shook her head firmly. I promised someone I wouldn't say. The three leaders exchanged glances. Finn appeared thoughtful, Reveria slightly furrowed her brows, and the dwarf shield warrior Gareth laughed heartily and reassured her, it's all right. It's not that big of a deal. The important thing is that Ice has reached LV6. She can help share the burden in our next expedition. Finn seemed to understand and nodded in agreement. Gareth is right. Ice, you must be tired. Go and rest. Sorry, Ice felt a bit guilty facing the elders who had watched her grow up, given her simple nature. Don't worry about it, Ice. If you have any problems, just tell us. Remember, we always have your back, Reveria said, showing a rare gentle smile and patting Ice's head, exuding motherly affection. Ice's body trembled, and she instinctively leaned into Reveria's embrace. Thank you, Reveria, came Ice's muffled voice from within Reveria's arms. After Ice left, the atmosphere in the office turned serious. Ice is completely incapable of lying. If she had advanced by killing a floor boss, she would have told us. There are other factors at play, Reveria said sternly, reverting to her usual calm and wise elven mage demeanor. Loki, is there anything unusual about Ice's status? Finn asked after pondering for a moment, turning to Loki. Nothing unusual. It's the most normal advancement, Loki replied, her eyes still narrowed in that inscrutable expression. No, being completely normal is the biggest anomaly, Finn said, adopting his classic commander pose behind the desk. Indeed, achieving a feat sufficient for advancement without killing a floor boss is highly abnormal, Reveria agreed. Reveria, have you heard of any potions or items that can allow someone to advance without any side effects? Finn asked, though his expression showed hesitation as if he didn't believe such a thing could exist. Orario is full of wonders, and there might be skills or items that could temporarily boost one's level, but advancing without any side effects seemed impossible. It should be, but for some reason, a certain person's image flashed through Finn's mind. Don't be ridiculous. You know it's impossible for such a thing to exist, Reveria, well-versed in knowledge, replied. Under normal circumstances, the amount of power an ordinary person can contain as a vessel is limited. That's why they need to break through their limits by achieving feats to make their vessel larger. However, this is under normal circumstances. Don't forget, that child has the blood of a celestial spirit. Loki's sudden statement strengthened Finn's suspicions. So, the issue lies with that man? Finn couldn't help but bite his thumb. Are you talking about that man named Gudao? Reveria immediately understood the meaning behind Finn's words after years of working together. No, I'm more inclined to believe it's the work of the Queen of the Land of Shadow, Finn replied. Indeed, the powerful Queen of the Land of Shadow had left a lasting impression on them. At this moment, Gareth, who had been silently listening to their discussion, suddenly spoke up. Regardless of who did it, it's clear the other party has no ill intentions. Finn, aren't you being a bit too cautious? This isn't like you. Normally, only those annoying elves would be this verbose. Gareth's words instantly silenced the office. Ha 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 Tilda. Loki suddenly slapped the sofa beside her and laughed heartily. Gareth is right. Being overly cautious can make you timid. Who are you calling verbose, you barbaric dwarf? Reveria immediately glared at Gareth with a cold expression and an angry look on her face. Watching the almost daily conflict between the elf and the dwarf, Finn could only shake his head helplessly. After some playful banter, Finn, as the captain, made an official decision. Since the other party has no ill intentions, it is very important to maintain a good relationship with them. Besides, it seems he has a good impression of Ice. No way, I would never allow anyone to take Ice Tan away. Loki immediately shouted, looking like a love-struck old man. Loki, I didn't mean to give Ice away. Finn explained, looking speechless. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Ice Tan is mine, and no one can take her away. Loki began to act unreasonably. Give it up, Finn. When Loki is like this, no one can persuade her, Reveria said, both amused and exasperated, watching their goddess throw a tantrum. Thus, from a distance, the members of the Loki Familia could hear various noisy sounds coming from the captain's office. Today, the Loki Familia was as lively as ever. At this time, the culprit who had caused quite a stir within the Loki Familia, Nguyen Ryu, was setting out for the dungeon. Recently, his life had become regular again. Every day, he would head to the dungeon, kill monsters, and collect some rare ingredients that could only be found there. Since equipping the giant, Goliath Mystic Code, Ryu's efficiency and safety in killing monsters have greatly improved. Previously, although he had combat power comparable to an LV5 adventurer, he couldn't sustain it for long. Once the magic generated by his noble phantasm couldn't keep up with the consumption, his strength would significantly decrease. Now, with the Mystic Code, things were much better. He could safely endure damage, and the damage could be converted into magic, further enhancing his strength. In gaming terms, his sustainability had greatly increased. Thus, Ryu descended below the 30th floor in one go, where the monsters gradually turned into undead skeleton types. From the 31st floor onwards, ordinary skeleton soldiers were the most common. The further down he went, the more he encountered skeleton warriors wielding weapons, and occasionally, skeleton archers hiding in the distance with bone bows for sneak attacks. What Ryu hated the most were these skeleton archers. These guys had no shame, only knowing how to ambush, and their bone arrows came with a weakening effect that could continuously stack. For him, who relied on taking damage to convert it into life recovery and enhance his attack power, they were practically his nemesis. Ryu even suffered a great loss at their hands. Once, he became overconfident and advanced rashly, getting surrounded by skeleton shield warriors, with a dozen skeleton archers on the periphery. Bone arrows rained down instantly. At first, Ryu didn't pay much attention since the skeleton archers' attacks barely broke his defense. But after a while, he felt like he had caught a cold, with his limbs feeling weak and dizzy, drastically lowering his combat power. Even worse, as the weakening effect stacked, his defense significantly dropped. Whereas the skeleton shield warriors could barely scratch his skin before, they could now easily make deep cuts. Ryu hurriedly exchanged a bottle of purification potion from the system, drank it while enduring the skeleton's attacks, and narrowly escaped danger. He had almost become a laughingstock among the transmigrators, nearly dying not at the hands of a boss but at the hands of a bunch of small fry. After this lesson, Ryu dared not be careless again. He quickly spent a full 50,000 energy points in exchange for a purple necklace, the Tear of the Saint. This necklace increased his durability by 2 points, enhanced his resistance to curse-type negative effects by 50%, and boosted his resistance to abnormal statuses by 20%. In total, it increased his resistance to curse-type effects by a full 70%. Having a lot of energy points, money allowed one to act with impunity. The previously significant threat posed by the skeleton archers was greatly reduced. The only cost was a significant reduction in his energy points, leaving him with just over 70,000 left. Originally, he had been close to amassing enough to buy a pair of gloves worth 150,000 energy points that he had his eye on. Now, he had to slowly save up again. At the same time, Ryu also learned from the system that his equipment was almost ineffective against noble phantasms. Applying a phrase from Type Moon series, mystery becomes nullified before a higher mystery. However, the system not allowing Ryu to purchase noble phantasms revealed this point. If one could achieve the effects of a noble phantasm just by buying equipment, what would be the point of pulling? It seemed that even the lowest rank E-class noble phantasms were of a higher grade than equipment. With the Tear of the Saint, Ryu embarked on a monotonous monster grinding journey to quickly gather enough energy points. This time, he didn't return to the surface. Instead, he resupplied food on the safe 18th floor and, after a brief rest, dove back below the 30th floor. With the skeleton archers no longer a threat, Ryu's efficiency in grinding monsters soared. He directly used the experience he had learned in online games. Exploiting the skeleton-type monster's sluggish movements and fear of fire, Ryu tanked the skeleton archers' attacks, gathering over 100 skeleton warriors into a large space. He then continuously drew F in the air with his finger, releasing large amounts of magical fire and implementing a burn them all to death strategy. 10 minutes later, the sound of items dropping filled the air. Over 100 magic stones and materials littered the ground. If other adventurers saw his insane grinding method, it would surely cause a sensation. The deeper one went, the more crucial teamwork became. Unless there was an overwhelming level difference, adventurers typically operated in small teams. The standard monster grinding method concluded by adventurers involved the vanguard holding off the monster horde, assassin or archer type adventurers maneuvering or luring monsters, or killing any that slipped through, while the mage, protected, chanted powerful magic to deliver fatal blows to the monsters. However, Ryu handled all the processes alone, luring, holding off, and finally using large-scale magic to annihilate the monsters. With his crazy grinding method, Ryu soon found that the dungeon's monster respawn rate couldn't keep up with him. Helpless, Ryu had to keep moving downward. The difficulty of the dungeon increased significantly every 10 to 12 floors. Unless Ryu descended to the 40th floor in one go, the monsters on the 30th floor wouldn't suffice for his grinding needs. When Ryu reached the 38th floor, an unexpected monster blocked his path. He had just killed another large batch of skeleton monsters and, noticing the dungeon hadn't respawned yet, unconsciously moved downward. Suddenly, he entered a vast, open space. It was like the bottom of a massive canyon, with only a faintly visible narrow crack overhead. The canyon walls on both sides were ashen white, like stone walls made of piled up ashes. Boom. Suddenly, the ground began to shake violently, and a massive black stone mountain rose from the ground. Ryu instantly realized he had accidentally entered the floor boss's room. He saw the conical stone mountain suddenly split open in the middle, and two gigantic skeletal arms stretched out, tearing the stone mountain in half. It was a giant skeleton with its lower body embedded in the ground and its upper body exposed. It had ominously black bones and horns on its head. In its chest, a magic stone larger than a person was embedded. Amazingly, it was already as tall as the 17th floor boss, the giant Goliath, despite only revealing its upper body. This was the monster Rex of the 37th floor, Udeus. Should he retreat? This thought flashed through Ryu's mind for a moment. The skeleton-type monsters on the 30th floor averaged at level 4, so as the boss of this area, Udeus would be 2 levels higher, at level 6. This was a level he couldn't contend with at the moment. Let's give it a try first. Ryu's eyes sparkled with excitement as he looked at Udeus's massive figure. Udeus was a very unique floor boss. It had a wide attack range, strong attack power, decent long-range attacks, and, like other skeleton-type monsters, strong resistance to piercing and slashing attacks but a weakness to blunt attacks. But these weren't the main issues. Its greatest weakness was that it couldn't move. Anyone who has played games knows that immobile bosses are the easiest to deal with. No matter how high or abnormal its attack power, as long as it couldn't move, the attacker could easily withdraw from its attack range, regroup, and launch another assault, while the boss could only stand there like a target waiting to be hit. If it were any other floor boss, Ryu might have turned and left, but facing a stationary boss like Udeus, he decided to give it a shot. Roar. At this moment, Udeus had just crawled out from the stone mountain and was howling at the sky. Ryu pushed off the ground with force, causing it to crack, and shot forward like an arrow. His legs unknowingly emitted a bloody magical glow, indicating he had used Mana Burst. Ryu went all out from the beginning to deal with Udeus. Udeus immediately noticed this tiny creature daring to challenge it, and a gigantic hand descended fiercely toward Ryu's head. Boom. The giant hand struck down, causing a small-scale earthquake and filling the air with dust, obscuring the view. Whoosh. The dust suddenly bulged out, and a figure leapt out like lightning. It was Nguyen Ryu. Taking advantage of Udeus not retracting its hand, Ryu climbed up along the wide bone arm, which was large enough for a carriage to drive on. The red light in Udeus's eye sockets suddenly intensified. It retracted its arm while mercilessly striking Ryu with the other. But it was too slow. With a boost from Mana Burst, Ryu's speed was now comparable to that of level 5 ice. Crack. Udeus struck its arm, sending it flying, while Ryu agilely leapt onto Udeus's shoulder. This position was almost a blind spot for Udeus's attacks. Ryu wouldn't miss this perfect opportunity. He immediately demonstrated the high-speed hand movements he had practiced for months, drawing symbols rapidly in the air. A flash of magical light was replaced by raging flames, enveloping Udeus's giant skull. Even a floor boss couldn't escape the undead monster's weakness to fire. Udeus roared in rage as it burned. Taking advantage of the situation, Ryu drew 2 more primordial runes, causing the flames to burn even more fiercely. Then, magical light shone from Ryu's arm as he punched Udeus's face hard. Crack. The incredibly hard bones of Udeus's face split open. At that moment, the red light in Udeus's eye sockets brightened, and an unusual magical wave emanated. Sensing danger, Ryu instinctively leapt off its shoulder. While still in midair, he saw a sharp mountain of swords suddenly rise from the ground, thrusting straight at Udeus's shoulder. This mountain of swords was pitch black, forged from an unknown material, and from a distance, it looked like a gigantic obelisk. Had Ryu moved a moment slower, he would have been skewered like a kebab. As soon as he landed on the ground, he felt the earth beneath his feet start to shake. Ryu instinctively pushed off with one foot, leaping to the side. Just as he left his original spot, a dense cluster of sword mountains shot up from the ground. It seemed Udeus didn't want to give him any rest. Every time Ryu paused for even a moment, a large cluster of sword mountains would immediately sprout from the ground, aiming straight at him, barely giving him a chance to catch his breath. Ryu had no choice but to keep retreating, and in the blink of an eye, he was already 30 to 40 meters away from Udeus. Just as Ryu was forced back, Udeus made another move. A massive black bone sword, inlaid with several blood jades, rose from the ground. Udeus grabbed the hilt with one hand and lifted it. Visible blood red magic power surged wildly from the bone sword. Udeus raised the bone sword high, howling skyward, looking every bit like an invincible demon king. Damn it. Faced with Udeus, who had suddenly entered a second phase, Ryu couldn't help but curse. Most adventurers encountered Udeus barehanded, but now, facing Ryu alone, it had summoned the bone sword. His luck was exceptionally good today. Before Ryu could think further, Udeus raised the bone sword high and slashed down toward his position. The ground immediately shook violently, with a powerful shockwave spreading from Udeus toward Ryu. Along the way, the hard stone ground cracked and lifted, and large and small stones flew like bullets in all directions. Unable to dodge in time, a piece of rubble grazed Ryu's cheek, leaving a deep cut on his face. Ryu couldn't spare a moment to wipe it. He desperately dodged to the side. Barely managing to evade Udeus's earth-splitting sword move, Ryu was now covered in scrapes. Fortunately, the wounds were not deep, and with the powerful recovery ability of his mystic code, the wounds were healing at a visible pace. In just a short while, Ryu could be fully recovered. However, Udeus clearly would not give him the chance. Udeus's eye sockets flashed red again, and without any visible movement, rows of sword mountains began spreading from its side, forming a path bristling with thorns. With no other choice, Ryu, exhausted, could only dodge to the side. Maybe he should retreat. This thought involuntarily surfaced in Ryu's mind. But in the heat of battle, such a distraction would come at a heavy price. In that brief moment of distraction, the sword mountains caught up with him, lifting him into the air. Dozens of sword mountains then shot toward the airborne, defenseless Ryu as if to pierce him with 1,000 swords. In this life and death moment, for some reason, a memory flashed in Ryu's mind, the day he, out of jealousy, impulsively said to Scathach, "One day, I want you to admit that I, Nguyen Ryu, am your most outstanding disciple." She seemed to laugh then, and that smile, it was so beautiful. Ryu, covered in blood, was sent flying, crashing heavily to the ground, motionless as if dead. A large pool of blood quickly formed under him. At this moment, Udeus ceased its attack, its jaw moving up and down as if letting out a silent laugh. P.S. Ryu, Shisho, you know a lot of reader hates your attitude. Scathach, no matter what I do, the world will forgive me. Why? Because I am beautiful. Ryu, I see, Shisho needs Strudel begs correction. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolute code. FGO, 28. Ryu's fingers twitched, and then he slowly climbed up while downing a bottle of healing potion. Looking at Udeus, who seemed to be mocking him, Ryu sneered, "What are you laughing at? Your father isn't dead yet." Seemingly recognizing the sarcasm in his tone, Udeus paused and launched another attack. A series of sword peaks instantly spread from Udeus' side. However, this time, Ryu neither dodged nor evaded. He simply covered his head and face with his hands and charged straight at the sword peaks like a tank. Upon closer inspection, his entire body was enveloped in a crazily flickering blood-colored magical aura, as if it was burning his life force to the brink of exhaustion. Crack, crack. A series of metallic shattering sounds echoed as the sword peaks, as hard as steel, were shattered one by Ryu. The sword peaks left numerous wounds on his body, but instead of halting his steps, they seemed to fuel his ferocity, making the blood-colored magical aura around him even more dazzling. Seeing Ryu approaching, Udeus raised his bone sword and slashed down at Ryu's head. Even before the sword arrived, the storm it whipped up blew away the surrounding debris and dust. Just being grazed by the storm inflicted several shallow wounds on Ryu. The power of this slash was terrifying. However, a fierce gleam flashed in Ryu's eyes. Instead of dodging, he raised his fist and punched hard. In response to his determination, dense black magical energy suddenly appeared on his arm, forming intricate circuits. Boom. With a loud bang, the large and small figures collided head-on, followed by a slight cracking sound. Udeus's bone sword shattered with a clang, and the tip flew out, embedding itself heavily into the stone wall. Ryu leapt out of the dust cloud, his body covered in countless wounds of various sizes, bleeding profusely as if he might die at any moment. However, Ryu's face was filled with excitement and frenzy. He roared and charged straight at Udeus. Faced with Ryu, who resembled a blood-soaked war god, the once imposing and demonic floor boss showed a hint of fear in its red glowing eyes. It continuously sent out sword peaks to try and block his advance. Ryu's wounds grew more numerous, but his aura became increasingly terrifying, eventually surpassing Udeus, the floor boss, entirely. Die. Ryu's punch landed hard on Udeus's head. In an instant, bright white magic circuits lit up on his arm, followed by a burst of dazzling white light at the impact point. This white light, like the sun, purified all evil and darkness. Udeus didn't even have time to scream before its skull was shattered to dust by Ryu's punch. Decapitated, Udeus collapsed as if its spine had been removed, then exploded into a sky full of white starlight. A magic stone, twice the size of Ryu's fist, fell to the ground with a thud. Having finally slain the formidable foe, Ryu didn't want to move even a finger now. Tap, tap tilde. At this moment, the sound of light footsteps suddenly came from afar. Someone was arriving at the floor boss's room at this time. Ryu immediately forced himself to stay alert and downed a high-grade healing potion worth 1,000 energy points without any hesitation. Among adventurers, behavior can be quite varied. On one hand, there are groups like the Loki Familia, who are positive and full of energy. On the other hand, there are teams like the one Ryu previously encountered, such as Canoe's gang, who enjoy robbing and killing, acting as temporary bandits. One must be cautious when dealing with unknown adventurers. The phrase, "you get what you pay for," holds true, as the high-grade healing potion proved to be incredibly effective. Combined with the effects of his mystic code, within a few minutes, Ryu's near-fatal injuries were almost fully healed. At this moment, the silhouette had already entered from the entrance. Golden hair that seemed to glow, a slender figure clad in light, agile battle armor, and a face as exquisite as a goddess. Seeing the newcomer, Ryu immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Although his wounds had fully healed, the mental fatigue from the intense battle was not so easily recovered. It was a great relief that the person who arrived was an acquaintance. "So, it's you, Kohai," Ryu greeted, raising his hand. "Are you referring to me as Kohai?" Isa's cool voice echoed in the spacious underground chamber. It seemed that the term Kohai confused her a bit and made her slightly uncomfortable, so she instinctively tilted her head. Unbeknownst to her, this action, combined with her expressionless little face, was irresistibly adorable. Ryu felt increasingly convinced that his decision to bring her onto his team deserved the highest praise. "Of course, if you don't like being called that, I could call you Ice-tan," Ryu said, looking very accommodating, though he was secretly amused. Ugh tilde. Isa's delicate little face immediately puffed up. Though she didn't know how to express her emotions, it didn't mean she couldn't detect the teasing tone in Ryu's words. Seeing her reaction, Ryu instinctively wanted to pat her head but suddenly felt weak in his legs and began to collapse. Without thinking, Ice rushed forward and caught him. "It seems the exhaustion is greater than I thought. Sorry, Kohai, I need to rest for a bit," Ryu said with a bitter smile. "Wait." Ice began to speak but realized Ryu had already fallen asleep. Helpless, Ice could only support him and let him lie down. At this moment, Ice recalled the action Reveria took when she was sleeping and immediately mimicked it, placing Ryu's head on her lap. The sleeping Ryu felt himself surrounded by a faint fragrance, and the back of his head rested on something soft and comfortable, making him instinctively shift his head slightly. Ice, who had mimicked Reveria's lap pillow, blushed deeply. Ryu's head unconsciously turned, facing her abdomen and that embarrassing area. Feeling the warmth of Ryu's unconscious breaths, Ice experienced a strange tingling sensation from that spot. This unfamiliar sensation made her both scared and curious. Ryu slept for a good 2 to 3 hours. When he first opened his eyes, he saw a flat, firm stomach under a tight battlesuit. Instinctively, Ryu moved his gaze upward and saw a face as beautiful as a water lily. Such a beautiful scene made him breathe cautiously, afraid to disturb this precious moment of a beauty's serene sleep. However, his slight movements upon waking eventually roused Ice, who soon opened her eyes. Her pale golden pupils looked at him with a complex expression. Given that she had allowed him to rest on her lap, there was at least a hint of affection. Thus, Ryu reached out his hand, moving at a pace Ice could easily evade, and gently touched her cheek. A trace of unease seemed to flash in Ice's eyes. She instinctively wanted to pull away but ultimately did not move, allowing Ryu to caress her cheek. "Kohai, thank you," Ryu said sincerely. Ice said nothing, merely shook her head. Ryu noticed that the skin he was touching was noticeably warming up. Knowing the principle of moderation, he only briefly felt the smooth and tender skin before moving his hand away and standing up. Ice also stood up, but perhaps because her thigh had been pressed down for a long time, it felt numb and she involuntarily started to topple over. Careful, Ryu quickly supported her. Ice's face blushed again. After her thigh finally regained feeling, she hurriedly broke free from Ryu's embrace and stood firmly on her own. Ryu smiled lightly, sensing the awkward atmosphere, and changed the topic. "I remember the Loki Familia is currently preparing for an expedition. How do you have time to come to the dungeon alone?" Upon hearing this, Ice's eyes became a bit evasive. Finn's order was for her to rest well and conserve energy for the expedition. However, having just leveled up and with nothing else to do, she thought of coming to the dungeon to get accustomed to her newly upgraded state. Seeing her slightly guilty expression, Ryu immediately understood. This girl had sneaked down here alone without telling her Familia. He quickly realized that her usual leisure activity was solo monster hunting in the dungeon. If this girl were born in modern times, she would either become a shut-in or a master in some field. Her focus was so intense that it made Ryu feel a bit sorry for her. Ryu quickly suggested, "It's always better to have someone to watch your back. How about I accompany you? But tomorrow, you have to go shopping with me to relax. How about it?" Ice's eyes brightened, and she immediately nodded. Monster hunting in the dungeon was her favorite thing. As for Ryu's obvious invitation to a date in the second half of his suggestion, the naively ignorant Ice only saw it as normal interaction between friends. To her, her relationship with Ryu was at most that of senpai and Kohai, nothing more. Since I took down Udeus, how about we try challenging the floor boss on the 48th floor, the Lava Lord? More fight? Ice immediately nodded. Challenging a floor boss was the best way to test one's strength limits. Ryu collected the magic stone and the broken sword tip dropped by Udeus into his storage space. Unfortunately, this time, Udeus was quite stingy and didn't drop any equipment, only contributing nearly 50,000 energy points. Ryu turned around and saw Ice's face full of curiosity and envy. He immediately knew what this girl was thinking. She was undoubtedly eyeing his ability to store a large number of items in his storage space. For a monster hunting enthusiast like Ice, the most painful thing was wasting a lot of time going back and forth to replenish supplies. Expeditions were fine because there were dedicated supporters, and she only needed to fight. But every time she hunted alone, she had to return to resupply before she was fully satisfied. Ryu pretended not to see her expression, but he decided something in his heart. Passing through the canyon where Udeus was located, Ryu and Ice entered the domain of the 39th floor. Here, every view was dominated by steep rocky mountains, jutting into the sky like unsheathed swords. The sky, however, was covered with thick, leaden clouds, seemingly about to collapse at any moment. Rumble. With a loud noise, the rocky mountains came to life. A stone golem, about 5 meters tall, crawled out of the rock pile and attacked Ryu and Ice without a word. Just as Ryu was about to act, Ice, without hesitation, drew her sword and charged. Seeing Ice's sword pierce the golem's head, Ryu was left speechless. Young lady, you're too diligent in your monster hunting. You're leaving no monster behind. Seeing Ice fighting so fiercely, Ryu had no choice but to switch from tank to support, using primal runes to buff Ice with a series of enhancements. Watching Ryu continually drawing primal runes, Ice's eyes once again filled with envy. Ryu patted her on the head, saying, "Don't be envious. If Shisho thinks you're ready to learn the primal runes, she'll teach you." Ice quickly nodded like a pine tree. So, Ryu and Ice, relying solely on their cooperation, quickly advanced to the deeper levels. To gain Ice's trust, Ryu no longer kept some of his small secrets from her. For example, he revealed his storage space in the system produced potions that were of much higher quality than the healing potions sold in Orario. Ryu's ultimate goal was to bring Ice back to Chaldea, so naturally, apart from the system and his identity as a transmigrator, he didn't hide much from her. By the way, the space Ryu had just transmigrated to was almost the same as the Chaldea in the mobile game and anime, so he simply called it Chaldea. It was also a way to commemorate his life before transmigrating. Moreover, Ryu removed the mask of the deceiver in front of Ice, revealing his distinctly Eastern features. Compared to the magically disguised, featureless Western face, Ryu's face was quite handsome, mainly due to the hardened aura from numerous battles, making him appear more rugged than his peers. This kind of aura, however, was often more attractive to a girl like Ice, who admired strong individuals, than a frail pretty boy. Ryu felt that after he removed the mask, Ice glanced at him more frequently. Although Ice was still in a state of emotional ambiguity and only had a slight fondness for Ryu, most likely due to curiosity. But Ryu didn't mind. Excluding that rabbit with a harem aura, he planned to bind Ice to his side. First as senpai and kohai, then as siblings, and finally as a couple. The thought was a bit exciting. Remember, my name is Win Ryu. This is a little secret only you and I know, Ryu said to Ice with a smile. Ice obediently nodded her head. As for Scathach, Ryu selectively forgot about her. And the Ishtar familia, who had a deep grudge against him, only regarded him as a slave. Slaves did not need names. The two continued to advance, and as they went deeper, the monsters became stronger. First, there were ordinary stone golems, followed by elite stone golems capable of using earth magic like rock throw. As they approached the 48th floor where the floor boss resided, most of the monsters turned into lava golems. These formidable monsters not only had thick skin and flesh but also possessed a unique magic called Flame Shroud. Anyone within a certain range of them would be burned by magical flames. This was very troublesome for melee class. However, for Ryu and Ice, it wasn't a big problem. Ice had her unique wind magic for protection. As long as she fully defended with the magic wind, the level 5 lava golems couldn't harm her at all, given her high level 6 status. As for Ryu, his high defense and fast HP recovery allowed him to do as he pleased, directly cutting down the lava golems. Soon, the two of them, unstoppable, fought their way to the 48th floor. What greeted them was a sea of lava, with only a large island made of volcanic ash isolated in the center. Be careful. Ryu cast various buffs on the two of them while spending energy points to redeem 2 bottles of fire resistance potion from the system. At first glance, the potions looked like ice crystals contained within. Just holding them made Ryu's palm form a thin layer of frost. Drinking it felt like gulping down a big bottle of icy soda on a scorching summer day, a cooling sensation. In addition, there were potions for increasing attack and defense, agility, damage absorption, and injury recovery speed. Altogether, they cost more than 5,000 energy points. However, the system-produced potions were highly effective. Ryu felt his overall attributes approaching level 6, and for Ice, even without using wind magic, she was nearing level 7. With this setup, Ryu felt like he was about to fight a boss in a game. However, he quickly dispelled this feeling. This was not a game. There were no save points and no way to resurrect. If they died, it would be a death without a burial place. They couldn't afford to be careless. Ryu and Ice exchanged a glance and simultaneously stepped onto the stone island in the center of the lava sea. Splash. Just as they reached the center, a huge whirlpool suddenly appeared in the lava sea beside the island. The surrounding temperature soared, almost to the point where a single breath could scorch their lungs. Had Ryu and Ice not taken the resistance potions in advance, they might have been injured right from the start, reducing their effectiveness. Then, a colossal figure leapt out of the whirlpool. It was a gigantic version of a regular lava golem, magnified 4 or 5 times. Just standing there, it was as tall as a 5 or 6-story building. It had 2 huge, ferocious heads, and lava flowed along its body like veins emitting an orange-red glow. The Lord of Lava, Malphite. Ryu gazed solemnly at the enormous figure. Roar. As if responding to him, Malphite suddenly raised its heads, both opening their massive mouths and roaring. With its roar, the previously calm lava began to boil, rolling and surging, creating waves of burning hot lava. Ryu quickly moved his fingers, drawing a rune resembling an H in the air. This was Hagala's, the rune symbolizing hail in the runic alphabet. A sudden cool breeze blew through the scorching air. Immediately, a hailstone materialized out of thin air and smashed down towards Malphite's head. The magical hailstone, enduring the intense heat of Malphite's flames, struck its body, creating black patches on its dark red stone skin. Given the Malphite's enormous size, such minor injuries were nothing more than scratches. As the ruler of flames, its already volatile brain felt provoked. Without hesitation, it climbed out of the lava sea, taking giant steps towards Ryu and Ice. With Malphite's massive size, it could reach them in just a few strides. Ryu immediately said to Ice, "Let's split up. I'll hold it off, and you look for an opening." Ice nodded, instantly activating her wind magic. With a light step, she leapt to the side like the wind. "Come on, big guy," Ryu sneered, launching another hailstone at Malphite's head. Malphite roared, enduring the hailstone as it lifted its foot to stomp down on him. If that foot landed, he would be squashed flat. Ryu had no choice but to channel magic into his feet, using the burst of speed to dodge to the side. Boom. A thunderous crash shook the ground. After Malphite withdrew its foot, a huge, red-hot footprint remained, and the surrounding stones began to crystallize, soon to turn into glass as they cooled. Ryu knew his attacks were unlikely to harm Malphite. Moreover, Malphite's flame shroud was 10 times stronger than that of ordinary lava golems. Even from a distance, and with the fire resistance potion, Ryu still felt his hair and clothes were about to catch fire. He dodged to the side and immediately began using hail again. Ice, in perfect sync, used her wind magic to fly directly to the spot where Malphite had been hit by the hailstone, and she thrust her sword fiercely. The combination of extreme cold and heat would make any material brittle. With the destructive power of wind magic, Ice's sword acted like a giant drill, creating a huge gash in Malphite's shoulder. Malphite screamed in pain and instinctively swung a massive hand at Ice. She dodged the attack gracefully, like a nimble bird. Already severely injured, Malphite's heavy slap immediately knocked off its left arm. Ryu, who had been continuously pelting Malphite with hail, was about to breathe a sigh of relief when he saw this. Suddenly, Malphite's eyes, like fiery orbs, erupted with a blinding light. Next, it grabbed the injured part of its body, tore off a large chunk, and hurled the magma-laden tissue at him. Ryu, disregarding his image, clumsily rolled to the side to dodge. Boom! The chunk of Malphite's body exploded upon hitting the ground. Hot fragments and magma flew everywhere. Although Ryu had dodged in advance, he hadn't anticipated this move, and his body was instantly riddled with burning holes. Gravely injured, Ryu shouted excitedly, "Ice, now!" Ignoring the searing pain from his burns, he drew another hail rune. This time, his target was Ice, who was in midair. Upon hearing Ryu's shout, Ice lightly cried out, "Wind!" The wind magic enveloping her surged dramatically, and at that moment, Ryu's hail arrived. The blue-white hail was immediately caught up in the greenish whirlwind. Ice, now like a drill, aimed at the connection point between Malphite's two heads and bore down fiercely. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary: An FGO player named Win Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world: Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolute code. FGO 29. Crack. A series of shattering sounds suddenly erupted. The sword in Ice's hand, like a giant drill, fiercely split Malphite's body in two. Watching the wailing Malphite, Ryu laughed. From the beginning, they had devised a strategy. Ryu continuously cast hail magic to cool Malphite down, specifically targeting the area between Malphite's two heads. Initially covered by a thick layer of magma, that area became cold and brittle under the relentless hail. Finally, combining the ice magic with Ice's wind magic, they easily pierced through this vital spot. Under Ice's thrust, Malphite was nearly split in half, and the sword of despair in Ice's hand quickly reached the location of the magic stone. Ping! A crisp sound signaled the attack on the magic stone that symbolized the monster's heart. Malphite's massive body instantly turned into white dust. Thud, thud. Two heavy objects hit the ground. One was the magic stone, and the other was a heart-shaped, black crystal of unknown material, covered with bright red vein-like patterns. In addition, Ryu also gained 60,000 energy points. Unfortunately, no Mystic Code dropped this time either, leaving Ryu somewhat disappointed. It seems that the drop rate for Mystic Code is very low. But then again, given how remarkable the effects of Mystic Code are, it's naturally hard to obtain. Ryu drank a healing potion and put away the magic stone. When he was about to pick up the heart-shaped stone, he suddenly froze and stopped moving. "Are you okay?" A concerned voice came from beside him. At some point, Ice had returned to his side, her eyes fixed on him. Although Ice's facial expressions were subtle, Ryu could still detect a hint of concern. He quickly waved his hand. "I'm fine, but there's something I need to discuss with you." Ice tilted her head in confusion. Ryu forced himself not to be distracted by her unconscious cuteness and said seriously, "I want to give you all the magic stones, including the one dropped by Udeus. I'll keep the materials dropped by Malphite." Ryu knew that even with this arrangement, he was still getting the better deal. Unfortunately, aside from the magic stones, he didn't have many Valis on him. It must be said that the drop rates in the dungeon are truly abysmal. Except for the guaranteed drop of magic stones, equipment rarely drops. To get equipment, you have to rely on blacksmiths. Good equipment requires materials dropped by monsters. And the drop rate for materials is equally pitiful. Except for floor bosses, normal monsters drop materials roughly once every few hundred kills. Even floor bosses don't always drop materials, so Ryu was indeed getting a great deal this time. "It's okay, I can't carry the materials anyway. You can have them. Let's split the magic stones evenly," Ice said calmly. Ryu was instantly moved. What a simple and kind-hearted girl. He recalled how, in the original story, she had also selflessly handed over materials worth millions of Valis to the adventurers on the 18th floor. "You can take all the magic stones. Your familia is preparing for an expedition, right? You need Valis urgently now." Ryu instinctively patted Ice's head. Ice's face turned slightly red, but she didn't stop him. Feeling the silky smoothness of her hair, Ryu couldn't help but marvel in his heart. This girl, with the bloodline of a celestial spirit, truly seemed like a masterpiece of the heavens. After enjoying the moment briefly, Ryu quickly withdrew his hand, pretending nothing had happened, and said calmly, "It's getting late. Let's head back." "Okay." The two of them quickly set off on their way home. Before heading back, Ryu put his mask back on, instantly transforming his distinctly Eastern face into the very ordinary face of a Westerner. Since even the floor boss on the 48th level was no match for them, the wild monsters on their way back to the surface were even less likely to impede their progress. In less than 2 hours, they had returned to the surface. Looking at the sunset's afterglow, Ryu felt a sense of having been through another life. A lot had happened today. First, they went to the guild to exchange the magic stones for easier to carry diamonds. Then, Ryu escorted Ice to the entrance of the Loki Familia castle. When the two guards at the gate saw their princess being escorted back by Ryu, their expressions changed dramatically. They looked at him with envy, jealousy, and resentment. "Please open the gate," Ice said calmly. The two guards glared at Ryu before opening the gate. "See you tomorrow," Ryu said. Ice nodded and turned to walk inside. Just then, the ground began to shake as if a war chariot were speeding towards them. It was the Familia's goddess, Loki, who was kicking up a cloud of dust as she rushed to the gate. "Ice Tilda." Even before reaching the gate, Loki shouted, her voice echoing far and wide. Ice immediately adopted a cold expression, as if to say, "I don't know this person at all." Loki started circling Ice as soon as she reached her. "Ice Tan, where on earth did you go? You ran off without a word for a whole day. I was so worried, Tilda." "I just went to the dungeon." Even the usually stoic Ice couldn't handle Loki's clinginess and answered. "The dungeon? Did you get hurt?" The first part of Loki's question was normal, but the second part revealed her true nature as her face contorted into that of a lecherous old man. "How about I give you a thorough checkup, Tilda?" As Loki's hand slowly reached for Ice's shapely derriere, Ice swiftly dodged and, in one fluid motion, used the sword of despair still in its sheath to whack Loki on the face. Ouch. Even from a distance, Ryu felt a twinge in his nose. At that moment, Loki seemed to suddenly notice Ryu and shifted her attention towards him. "I remember you, you're that cook." As expected of the mischievous god Loki, her sharp tongue knew no bounds. "You came back with Ice." Loki's squinting eyes suddenly widened, her face showing the expression of a father who just discovered his precious daughter dating a street punk. "Ice Tan is mine, don't think you can take her away from me." Loki suddenly screamed, lunging at Ice, who quickly subdued her. "Sorry about that," Ice said, bowing to Ryu before dragging Loki by the collar into the Familia's headquarters. "Ice Tan is mine, I will never hand her over to you." Even while being dragged by her collar by Ice, Loki continued to shout incessantly. Feeling a surge of mischief, Ryu suddenly yelled at Ice in a voice loud enough for the entire Loki Familia to hear, "Ice, don't forget about our date tomorrow." When he said the word date, Ryu deliberately emphasized it to ensure everyone could hear. Upon hearing this, Ice nodded slightly, clearly not yet grasping the seriousness of the situation. The entire Loki familia suddenly fell into an eerie silence. The goddess Loki wore an expression of utter despair. In the next moment, the entire Loki familia came alive. What did he just say? I think he said he's going on a date with Ice. Is that for real? The world is ending. With Ryu's shout, the flames of the Loki familia were instantly ignited. The female members of the Loki familia blushed as they looked at Ryu, clearly captivated by his boldness in the romantic scenario. Of course, this excluded a certain Yuri elf girl. Lefia wore an expression of despair and breakdown, with dark energy swirling behind her, scaring her good friend Tiona, who quickly stepped aside with a look as if she didn't recognize her. As for the male members of the Loki familia, not to mention the many single ones, even those with girlfriends glared at Ryu with expressions of resentment, as if they wanted to burn him alive. A particular silver-haired werewolf was even gritting his teeth, looking as if he wanted to devour Ryu. Facing their gazes, Ryu waved his hand dashingly and turned to leave. Disturbed by the commotion, Finn, standing by the window of the captain's office, looked at Reveria with a wry smile and said, "That guy sure knows how to cause a stir wherever he goes. Should we call Ice over?" Reveria frowned deeply. As half a mother to Ice, she was completely opposed to Ice associating with Ryu, an outsider of unknown origins. Gareth, holding a cup of wine, sighed, "Youth is something." The commotion caused by Ryu and Ice gradually subsided by the evening. However, when Ice handed over the magic stones she exchanged today to Finn, it once again triggered a strong reaction from the top three. After a series of questions, Ice, being an honest child, roughly recounted today's events to the three. When they heard that Ice and Ryu had jointly slain the floor boss on the 48th floor, they were speechless. Although Ice has reached level 6, I think we still need to reassess Ryu's strength, Finn said gravely, biting his thumb. I agree, although he doesn't seem to have any malicious intent towards us for now, we can't rule out the possibility that he's trying to gain our trust first, said Reveria, the most cautious among them. Thus, a brief monster hunting trip between Ryu and Ice once again stirred up quite a commotion within the Loki familia. On the other side, a rumor about a monster rampage and migration on the 24th floor was gradually spreading among the adventurers. The next day, the sun was shining brightly. It was a perfect day for a date. Dressed in clean, new clothes, Ryu appeared at the gate of the Loki familia's castle. Facing the murderous glares of the Loki familia members, Ryu stood there for about 10 minutes before Ice appeared in front of him. Pure water emerging from a lotus, naturally uncarved. At that moment, Ryu deeply understood the meaning of this poetic line. So, there exists such an extraordinary person in this world. Ice was wearing a simple blue and white dress, her delicate and fair face showing no traces of makeup, completely resembling an unpolluted natural white lotus, fresh and pure. At that moment, a strong desire to possess rose in Ryu's heart. This pure white lotus could only be picked by me. It could only bear my mark. Is there something wrong with my face? Perhaps Ryu's gaze was too blatant, as Ice asked in confusion, instinctively checking her attire. No, you look very beautiful today, Ryu praised generously. This straightforward compliment made even the naturally dazed Ice blush. Shall we go? Okay. With Ice's response, Ryu glanced around the Loki familia's courtyard and gave a meaningful smile to a particular statue. Then, as if deliberately provoking, Ryu took Ice's soft, white hand. Faintly, he seemed to hear the sound of teeth grinding. Ryu chuckled lightly and led a slightly shy Ice towards the street outside. After the two figures disappeared, three people suddenly emerged from behind the statue. It was the goddess Loki, Tiona, and Lefia from the familia. Damn it, how dare he hold Ice Stan's hand? I haven't even held it myself. He must be killed. The goddess Loki, biting a handkerchief, looked tearful. No, we should use magic to blow him to pieces. The Yuri elf Lefia mimicked Loki's actions exactly. The elf and the goddess seemed like inseparable partners in mischief. If not for Tiona, who was holding them back with a sweaty forehead, they would have rushed out already. Private Lefia. Loki suddenly stood straight, calling out seriously. Yes. Lefia immediately stood straight and gave a military salute. I now order you to follow those two. If you find them doing anything too intimate, stop them immediately. Yes, ma'am. And you, Tiona, you go too. This is the goddess's order. Loki continued, addressing Tiona, who looked speechless. Seeing Tiona's reluctance, Loki, true to her origins as a trickster god, leaned in close and whispered temptingly, Tiona-chan, don't you want to know how far they'll go? If it were the mature and steady elder sister, Tion, she probably wouldn't fall for it. But the younger sister, Tiona, was carefree and playful, and Loki's words immediately piqued her curiosity. Well, following them might be interesting. I can also go shopping on the street. Tiona's eyes started to twinkle. Seeing that she had convinced the guardian sent by Reveria, Loki exchanged a conspiratorial smile with Lefia. After Tiona and Lefia had followed, Loki suddenly opened her trademark squinted eyes, flames burning in them as she muttered to herself, damn brat. Don't think you can take away my eyes. One day, I'll tear you to pieces. At this moment, the goddess Loki was entirely like a foolish father whose obedient daughter had been taken away by a delinquent boyfriend. On the other side, walking down the street, Ice and Ryu unknowingly gained two shadows following them. Unfortunately, one was a berserker and the other a mage. Their clumsy tracking skills were so poor that even the naturally oblivious Ice noticed them, let alone Ryu. Just as Ice was about to turn around, Ryu stopped her. Ignore them, let's just enjoy our time. If they want to follow, let them follow. Pointing at a nearby stall, Ryu said, I remember you really like the fried potato balls from that place. How about we get some? Okay. Ice immediately forgot about the stalkers. Indeed, the fried potato balls from that stall were quite special. Even without the presence of Hestia, the place was still bustling with business. Ryu took a bite, savoring the rich aroma of the oil, which was not overly greasy. The exterior was crispy while the inside was tender, and the black pepper filling added a distinctive flavor, truly a remarkable snack. At this moment, Ryu glanced at the fried potato ball in Ice's hand, which exuded a rich milky fragrance mixed with the unique aroma of red beans. An idea struck Ryu, and he said to Ice, who was focused on her snack, how about I make a dessert with cream and red beans for you when we get back to the Gudako Hotel tonight? After a slight hesitation, Ice nodded. Okay. However, the scene 10 meters behind them, where Lefia and Tiona were hiding behind a stall, was entirely different. To them, it seemed like Ryu and Ice were enjoying their snacks together, deeply in love. Especially for Lefia, who had completely entered a delusional mode. In her mind, the scene had transformed into the two of them ignoring her objections, feeding each other flirtatiously and walking farther away. Even though they hadn't eaten anything, Lefia and Tiona felt their stomachs swell with the metaphorical dog food they were being forced to consume. Lefia, who had already turned dark, repeatedly tried to pull out her staff to cast a spell at Ryu, only to be stopped by Tiona each time. Naturally, the passers-by on the street also suffered, enviously watching Ryu and Ice, their eyes almost burning him to ashes. Ryu, however, remained oblivious, continuing to lead Ice around to various clothing and accessory stores. Personally selecting items, Ryu bought Ice several fresh and cute dresses that wouldn't hinder her movements, as well as some inexpensive yet adorable and unique accessories. Although Ice's face showed some shyness, she still accepted Ryu's gifts. While the two of them were happily shopping, it was tough on the two followers, especially Tiona, who was constantly worried that Lefia might rush out at any moment. When Ryu and Ice reached a rarely frequented fountain, he suddenly stopped. Last time, you seemed very interested in how I store things, so I decided to give you this. As he spoke, Ryu took out a beautifully wrapped, palm-sized box from his pocket and handed it to Ice. What is this? Ice asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. Open it and see, you might like it, Ryu said with a slight smile. With a slight effort, Ice opened the box, revealing its contents. The moment the box was opened, a soft white light flashed briefly, revealing a uniquely designed ring resting quietly on black silk. The platinum ring was crafted into the shape of a blooming white lotus, with a flawless white gemstone embedded in the center, emitting a pure white glow. The ring exuded a sense of purity from beginning to end. Ryu had searched the system shop for most of the day and finally selected it at first sight, spending 50,000 energy points to redeem it, even postponing the purchase of a pair of gauntlets he had long wanted. Ice instantly fell in love with the ring that matched her temperament, instinctively reaching out to take it and playing with it carefully. This ring slightly enhances the wearer's overall attributes, provides 30% resistance to curse-type skills, and can use the Purification spell 3 times a day. Most importantly, it has a built-in storage space of 1 cubic meter, though it cannot store living things. Ryu explained the ring's properties in detail. Thank you, I like this ring. Ice's eyes showed a hint of reluctance, but she still put the ring back in the box. It's too valuable, I can't accept it. Indeed, this was true, not to mention its overpowering attributes. The fact that it had a unique built-in storage space in all of Orario made this ring worth a fortune. An initial estimate placed its value at 1 billion Valis, and that was a conservative figure. If it went to auction, it could fetch 2 or 3 times that amount. Even though Ice didn't care about such things, she understood the value of the ring. Being kind-hearted and not one to covet luxury, Ice was adamant about not accepting the ring. However, Ryu was prepared for this. He directly placed his hand over Ice's, gently but firmly making her hold the ring box. Meanwhile, his other hand instinctively patted her head. Consider this a gift from a senpai to a kohai. Besides, this ring is mine. I can give it to whomever I want, and no one can object. Before Ryu could finish speaking, he was immediately interrupted. I object. Lefia shouted, storming out with a fierce expression, dragging Tiona along with her. Tiona was surprisingly overpowered by Lefia in terms of strength, showing how love can indeed double one's power. I object. Lefia charged up to Ryu, her eyes blazing with anger as she glared at him. You've been following us all day, and now you finally show yourselves, Ryu said with a playful smile. Lefia, naturally shy, was only emboldened by her love for Ice. Being called out by him made her falter slightly. Stalking someone was already disgraceful, and being caught made it even more embarrassing. Anyway, I object. Lefia, unable to argue rationally, resorted to the classic tactic of stubbornness. Lefia. Ice tried to intervene, but being tongue-tied, she didn't know what to say, her face full of distress. Ice, please stay out of this. This is between him and me. In this critical moment, Lefia couldn't care less. If her beloved Ice accepted what she imagined to be an engagement ring from Ryu, it would be all over. Tilda. The aura Lefia emitted was so intense that even Ice was momentarily taken aback. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolute code. FGO 30. However, Ryu remained calm and said, You must be mistaken. This is a matter between her and me. As for you. Ryu deliberately looked Lefia up and down with a challenging tone and asked, On what grounds are you here? Are you her parents? Lefia awkwardly shook her head. Are you her sibling? She shook her head again. Or perhaps her guardian? Lefia hung her head, feeling powerless. Her slightly calm mind finally remembered that in the entire Loki familia, only the 3 captains and goddess Loki had the authority to intervene. Or are you merely speaking as a friend or a fellow familia member? Even if you were Ice's best friend, what right or reason do you have to stop her from accepting someone else's gift? At this moment, Ryu's figure seemed to magnify infinitely in Lefia's eyes, like a giant, making her instinctively retreat under his imposing demeanor. Moreover, Ice and I are now fellow disciples. Ice is now my kohai. In terms of closeness, I should rank above you. Lefia finally succumbed to his verbal assault and overwhelming presence. She suddenly turned and ran away in tears, shouting, Miss Ice is being taken away. Lefia is completely defeated, Tiona said awkwardly, wiping sweat from her forehead. Ryu shrugged. Well, I should get going too. Goodbye, Ice, pretty boy. Tiona waved. Just as she was about to turn away, she stopped and smiled. Almost forgot. I wish you happiness. Goodbye. Before Ice could react, Tiona ran off with a smile in the direction Lefia had gone. Ice pouted in frustration as Tiona teased her and then ran away. Ryu found it amusing and patted Ice's head. Don't mind them, let me put the ring on you. After Lefia's interruption, Ice didn't refuse this time. When Ryu took her hand to put the ring on her, Ice's expression subtly changed. Though it wasn't very noticeable, her cheeks flushed, and her eyes darted around, not daring to look at him. Clink. Just as Ryu placed the ring on Ice's left middle finger, a sudden noise came from the street corner. Ryu and Ice instinctively turned their heads. They saw Seer standing at the street corner, looking at them in shock. In front of her lay a bag full of fruits and vegetables she had dropped. The elf girl, Ryu, beside her, frowned slightly as she looked at the two of them. You two. Seer suddenly noticed the ring on Ice's finger and Ryu's hand that hadn't yet been withdrawn. Her lively light gray eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of dust named despair and sorrow, becoming dull and lifeless. Without saying a word, she turned and ran away. A single crystal clear tear fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Watching Seer run away, Ryu's gaze towards Ryu turned icy cold, as if she wanted to pierce him with sharp blades. Ryu met her gaze calmly. After a moment, Ryu sighed lightly, nodded as a form of greeting, and picked up the fallen items to chase after Seer. Ryu watched Ryu's departing figure and sighed deeply. He had been prepared for this but hadn't expected it to come so quickly, catching him off guard. He hadn't even secured one relationship yet, and already he was plunged into a chaotic situation. It was indeed. It can only be attributed to the writer's twisted sense of humor. However, Ryu had no regrets. Ever since he changed from being a homebody to a harem ex-transmigrator, he was destined not to be a man of single affection. The only thing he could do was, so long as she doesn't betray me, I won't betray her. At this moment, Ice seemed particularly understanding. She didn't say anything, just held onto the corner of Ryu's clothes and silently watched him. It's all right, Ryu encouraged her, patting Ice on the head. However, the plan to bring Ice back to the Budako Hotel for a dessert offensive affection that evening fell through. When Ryu and Ice returned to the Loki familia, the entire familia, especially a creature known as the single male dog, harbored an almost tangible resentment towards him. Ryu seemed oblivious as he directly held Ice's hand and walked into the castle. As a result, the resentment became even more palpable, almost readable. Burn him to death. Ryu found it odd that the person who resented him the most didn't immediately rush out, which was somewhat perplexing. After scanning the courtyard briefly, Ryu quickly saw Goddess Loki talking with a young man with flowing blonde hair, dressed like a medieval noble. So, there's a guest. That explains it. Ryu mumbled to himself and, without any hesitation, held Ice's hand and walked over. Would a son-in-law feel timid meeting his father-in-law for the first time? Impossible. The two gods stopped their conversation immediately. Loki, who had intended to maintain her composure in front of the guest, couldn't bear the provocation and immediately jumped up, pulling Ice behind her protectively and glaring fiercely at Ryu. You. Don't ever think of seeing my Ice tan again. Ryu shrugged indifferently. Her legs are her own. Are you planning to lock her up? You. I suggest you mind your image, Goddess Loki, Ryu said, nodding towards the male god. Loki followed his gaze and saw the god watching with an amused expression, his mouth slightly curved, and his eyes almost squinting into slits. Loki, don't mind me, he kindly advised when Loki looked over. At this moment, Loki felt a surge of intense desire to beat up Ryu. Though she had felt it earlier, this time it was especially strong. Dionysus, let's continue our discussion and ignore this guy, Loki said, sitting back down and addressing the blonde male god. Ryu's eyes flashed. So, it was the Greek god of wine. Then the person behind him must be. He glanced at the elf girl standing behind Dionysus, dressed in white, with black hair and blood-red eyes. She seemed sensitive to others' gazes. As soon as Ryu looked over, she sensed it and glanced back. Ryu smiled and nodded, but the elf girl only gave him a cold look. Meanwhile, the two gods at the table resumed their conversation without any reservation. As we were discussing, the accumulation of monsters on the 24th floor is now affecting adventurers' regular activities, Dionysus said seriously. Has the guild taken no action in response to this situation? Once the serious talk began, Loki's playful demeanor disappeared, and her squinted eyes, which usually concealed her thoughts, revealed the wisdom of a trickster god. That's the strange part. Despite the severity of the problem, the guild has taken no action, which is unlike their usual behavior. It sounds like the guild is deliberately avoiding something, Loki mused. What's so strange about that? Ignoring what needs to be managed, either to protect oneself and preserve strength or because one is the mastermind behind it, Ryu remarked casually. However, this comment immediately silenced the surroundings, and the two gods and two girls stared at him in astonishment. It's just a casual joke, no need to take it seriously, Ryu said nonchalantly. No, that's a very interesting perspective. Both Dionysus and Loki couldn't help but show thoughtful expressions. Dionysus suddenly seemed to remember something and asked Ryu, may I know who you are? Gudao, a nobody from an unknown familia. Dionysus's eyes suddenly shone with scrutiny. You are the chef of the Gudako Hotel, the culinary magician, Gudao. I didn't expect a nobody like me to catch the eye of the wine god. No, you are no nobody. All of Orario is abuzz with the name Gudako, said to be the top hotel in Orario, where only the most distinguished guests can enter its doors. It's only because of the favor of you gods that Gudako has gained a bit of fame. I've heard that you, god Dionysus, are Orario's top wine connoisseur. Seeing Dionysus and Ryu exchange endless flattery, Loki irritably knocked on the table. It seems we've angered Loki. I do enjoy various pleasures, so I will visit the Gudako Hotel in person someday. I have some expertise in mixing drinks as well. I look forward to your visit, Dionysus. Ending their pleasantries at the right time, Dionysus said seriously, regardless of the internal details, we need to send people to investigate. What do you think, Loki? Loki thought for a moment and replied, indeed, Freya has been busy training her little rabbit recently, so it falls to me to handle this. She then turned to Ice beside her and said, Ice, can I trouble you to go? Ice nodded. Wait, Loki, how about taking my Philvis along? Only by acting together can trust be built between us. Dionysus-sama. Philvis exclaimed in surprise from behind him. Don't worry, everything will be fine, Dionysus said, holding Philvis's hand tenderly. Dionysus-sama. Watching the elf and god staring at each other affectionately, Loki quipped helplessly, I don't recall agreeing to this. So, it's settled. Take my child along, Dionysus said sincerely. Loki was hesitant but then heard Ryu say to Ice, I understand. I'll go with you. Loki immediately became furious. You don't need to go. Since Ice had accepted Loki's order, she had been staring at Ryu without speaking. Ryu, having his plans, quickly gave in under her gaze. I agree, but I'll send another child with yours. Although Loki was addressing Dionysus, she glared fiercely at Ryu. Such childish behavior is pointless, goddess Loki, Ryu sighed. Since Ice is already aware of this, do you think she wouldn't sneak off on her own? Ice, looking adorably clueless, nodded in agreement. Loki felt a surge of frustration, having raised a daughter only to see her side with an outsider. Damn it, then Lefia, where are you? Come here. Loki gritted her teeth, thinking for a moment before shouting. After a while, Lefia arrived. Loki, what is it? Lefia's eyes were red, indicating she had been crying, likely distressed by previous events. But upon seeing Ryu beside Ice, her face immediately clouded. It's you. Lefia, first-class soldier, you are now assigned a difficult mission. Accompany Ice to the 24th floor to investigate. Your mission is to prevent this scoundrel from doing anything inappropriate to Ice. No, not even overly intimate actions like holding hands. Yes, I guarantee the mission will be completed. Lefia glared at Ryu with burning eyes, her resolute gaze seemingly saying, you won't have any chance. Watching these two play house, Ryu found it amusing. Loki, no matter how much you calculate, you never expected there would be a traitor in your ranks, did you? Don't blame me for not warning you. When this lily elf, on whom you have high hopes, neglects her duties to pursue her fantasies, I won't miss this opportunity. Thinking of this, Ryu sneaked a glance at the cold-looking Philvis. Who would have thought that this seemingly cold and beautiful black-haired elf would have such deep psychological trauma, which just so happens to trigger Lefia's maternal and sympathetic instincts? Before setting off, Ryu returned to the Gudako Hotel, but Seer began avoiding him. Having no other choice for now, Ryu decided to let her cool down for a while. Next, Ryu went to Revis's room, and finding that she had already gone out according to plan, he headed to the Tower of Babel with peace of mind. After the four of them met in front of the tower, they entered the dungeon together. Among them, except for Lefia's lack of battle experience, the other three were very strong fighters, sweeping through the dungeon with ease. Seeing that Ryu was skilled in both close combat and magic, Lefia's face grew increasingly resentful. She had placed herself in the position above Ryu in terms of magic, but now seeing that his strength surpassed hers, she naturally felt anxious and unwilling. Ryu couldn't be bothered with her and, along the way, continued flirting with Ice, spreading dog food everywhere. As for the black-haired elf Philvis, she remained completely detached from the team, even deliberately keeping a certain distance while walking. Knowing her background, Ryu intentionally ignored her, and Ice, being naturally aloof and inexpressive, wouldn't actively talk to Philvis either. This, however, was something Lefia couldn't stand. Despite her lily tendencies, Lefia was otherwise quite admirable. Although she lacked battle experience and seemed delicate, she was brave, responsible, and compassionate. Seeing Philvis so isolated, Lefia took the initiative to talk to her. Naturally, at first, she was met with rejection. Philvis bluntly stated that they were merely heading to the same destination and were not companions. This only triggered Lefia's stubbornness. She grabbed Philvis's hand and delivered a heartfelt confession, making Philvis blush and significantly raising her affection for Lefia. Watching Lefia's successful approach, Ryu was astounded. This is like cheating. Raising affection so easily, who is the real protagonist of this harem story? Ryu felt that Lefia was far scarier than Belle, the timid rabbit. Fortunately, Lefia was a bit reserved in front of Ice. Otherwise, Ryu feared he would be NTR. Ryu sweated inwardly. If he were to be outdone by a woman, he would become the biggest joke among transmigrators. When the four of them reached the 18th floor, they learned from a talkative Cyclops about Philvis's past, where she repeatedly joined teams but ended up as the sole survivor, earning her the nickname, the Banshee, among adventurers. Lefia's maternal instinct surged, and she completely ignored her beloved Ice, launching a fierce attack on Philvis. Thus, Ryu witnessed the birth of a lily master. In just one day, Philvis's attitude towards Lefia shifted from cold and indifferent to neutral, then to natural, and finally, she occasionally initiated conversations and sometimes shyly glanced at her. Master, please accept my meal. If it weren't for their opposing roles, Ryu would have had the urge to do so. Unbeknownst to him, while Lefia watched Ryu and Ice's display of affection and felt a surge of jealousy, she also couldn't help but feel a bit of envy. How nice it would be to be this close to Miss Ice. From the moment they set off, the team was superficially united but inwardly divided. However, although Ryu and Lefia still appeared to oppose each other on the surface, the team's tacit understanding had grown significantly. In this manner, the four of them, amidst banter and tussles, quickly reached the 24th floor. This floor featured both sheer cliffs and dense forests, resembling a miniature primeval kingdom. As they proceeded, they noticed a large number of monsters gathering and migrating en masse. Such a vast number of monsters would be a nightmare for lower-level adventurers. According to information from other adventurers, it seems there's been an anomaly in the monsters' food storage rooms, causing the monsters to accumulate and migrate, Leffia explained, opening a map of the 24th floor. There are 3 food storage rooms on this floor, located here, here, and here, she said, pointing to 3 areas on the map that appeared to be large spaces. Can you sense it, Ice? Ryu turned to ask Ice. Ice closed her eyes and sensed the direction for a moment, then pointed to one of the areas. This way. The direction she indicated led to one of the food storage rooms marked on the map. All right, we'll head in this direction and clear out the monsters along the way, Ryu said. Trusting Ice, Leffia naturally had no objections, and since Leffia didn't object, Philvis also silently agreed. Although there were many accumulated monsters on this floor, for Ice, a level 6, they were easily defeated in one strike, the only difference being how many she could take down with each strike. Soon, they cleared out hundreds of monsters, leaving behind a ground littered with shining magic stones. When they reached the entrance, they found it blocked by a disgusting, mucus-like substance. What's this? It's so gross, Leffia, who was always tidy, said with a look of disgust. It looks like we've found the right place, Ryu said, his eyes hinting at a deeper meaning. It sounds like there's fighting inside, Ice suddenly remarked. Ryu immediately understood and quickly raised his hand, beginning to draw an F in the air. A scorching magical flame appeared out of thin air, rapidly burning a large hole through the green, vine-like plants blocking the entrance. The sounds of fighting inside became clear. A group of adventurers was surrounded by a large number of man-eating plants. Among the adventurers was a dark-skinned beastman girl whom Ryu had met before. She and her companions were protecting a short-haired, blue-haired woman wearing glasses, who was in the center of their formation. The woman with glasses had a bloody wound on her abdomen and lay motionless on the ground, clearly severely injured. I told you, you're all going to die here today. A middle-aged man with white hair, dressed in a manner full of philosophical flair, stood before a massive red crystal pillar, spouting threats. Behind him, a giant man-eating plant, 3 times the size of an ordinary one, roared continuously. The commotion from the burning of the entrance naturally didn't escape the notice of those inside. When they saw who had arrived, their reactions varied. The adventurers displayed expressions of joy at being saved, while the white-haired man with the philosophical air arrogantly shouted, "Who's come to die now?" Ryu couldn't be bothered to argue and immediately started giving orders. Ice, you handle the big one. Leffia, release a large-scale spell. Philvis, you protect her. As for that lunatic, leave him to me. But as soon as Philvis saw the middle-aged man, her delicate face twisted with endless hatred. Olivaz Oct, how are you still alive? Philvis bent her knees slightly, clearly ready to charge at any moment. Ryu quickly grabbed her shoulder with one hand. Calm down, let's deal with the monsters first. As for this pervert, I'll leave him alive just enough for you to get your revenge. Philvis slapped Ryu's hand away, her expression still filled with hatred, clearly not taking his words to heart. Miss Philvis. At this moment, Leffia's voice, full of concern, came through. Philvis gradually calmed down. Seeing this, Ryu was speechless. Indeed, no amount of words from others could compare to a single word from a lover. Clearing his mind of distracting thoughts, Ryu pulled out a pair of uniquely designed gauntlets and slowly put them on. These gauntlets subtly shimmered with a rainbow glow, as if a rainbow was flowing across them. They seemed to be intricately carved from transparent crystal, resembling exquisite works of art. Their texture was exceptionally soft, more like gloves than gauntlets. These were the premium purple gauntlets, Elemental Fury, that Ryu had exchanged for a hefty 150,000 energy points from the system shop. Encounter, Nikki reference. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Win Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO, 31. Ryu's plan was reasonable and appropriate. Furthermore, there wasn't anyone else skilled in commanding here. His arrangement also perfectly suited the inclinations of the young ladies. There was no need to mention Ice, the monster-slaying fanatic. Leffia was eager to showcase her magic in front of Ice, and Philvis, ever since experiencing the total annihilation of her previous teams, had developed an obsessive determination to protect her teammates. Guarding her dear friend closely